There we go. You guys should be able to hear me now. I don't know why my microphone property changed, but we're back with some more KAIZO IRONMON because I had a lot of fun playing earlier and I wanted to play more. Now, there wasn't a lot of people in chat and I got a little bored. So we're going to be watching some YouTube while I play because, why not? So I'm just going to be knocking out videos on my watch later list, starting with, an over-analysis of Cuphead boss design in the base game. Meaning it won't be the DLC. So let's go ahead and play. I'll probably turn up the volume for you guys just a little bit. Or maybe I won't. I don't know. I'll leave it as it is.
Many games that put their focus on challenge often drop the player into a dark, world.
Excuse me. All right, let's go.
Void of hope, with muted brown and red color palettes, scored with melancholic orchestral pieces that deliver the weight and danger of their world. On the other hand, Cuphead.
Cuphead. Goated game, by the way. If you never played Cuphead, what the frick is wrong with you?
Visually one of the most incredible games I have ever played. Everything in this game is inspired by an animated-like classic rubber hose animation, particularly Fleischer Studios, which began its life as Inkwell Studios, a name that's now endured into Cuphead as the game's
I could add a bronze on?
Enemies are hand-drawn and inked to create a series of extraordinary boss fights, each of which strive to tell their own individual, short, animated story as these bosses grow, warp, and brutally and repeatedly beat the absolute hell out of you through lightning-fast, bullet hell-inspired platforming. Cuphead is hard, really hard, and then, after you've beaten it, it asks you to beat it again, but harder this time. So, today, I want to dive into the bosses of one of my personal favorite games of all time, looking into how they tell their stories through music, animation, and mechanics. If you see Cuphead fighting a boss, that means it's on regular. If Mugman is fighting a boss, then they're fighting the expert version. You can also play the entire game as Miss Chalice, who has an entirely different moveset and interacts with everything differently. Any footage of her that you do see is also going to be on expert. Also, this video is only going to cover the base game of Cuphead. For those new to my channel, I'll also give every boss a letter grade. An F grade boss is a boss I believe makes the game actively worse, one that fails in what it sets out to do and then detracts from the space around it. A D grade boss stumbles,
good luck finding that.
Exactly fun.
Why not?
It doesn't ruin anything around it by its mere presence. A C grade boss is average. It isn't incredible, but there's nothing bad about it. A B grade boss is solid. There's a lot to like, but a few aspects in my opinion do hold it back. An A grade boss is a great boss fight, the kind of boss you're excited to face again every single time. The S grade bosses, meanwhile, are the bosses that stick in your mind long after the game is done. With that said, these were some of the hardest grades I've ever given. There's only a small handful of Cuphead boss fights that I would struggle to see as someone's favorite encounter, so these grades in particular are likely going to be a lot more subjective and uniform than usual, since a large part of how the boss lands comes down to the player's personal sense of humor and their personal difficulty tastes. So, let's get ready for a swell battle.
No.
Cuphead bosses can be fought in a pretty flexible order, but within Aisle 1 of Cuphead there is a pretty clear structure. The game opens with 2 tutorial encounters that introduce basic dodging mechanics, the first of which is Goopy Legrande, in Ruse of an Ooze. Goopy focuses his tutorial education on awareness of where the boss is moving next and making sure the players position themselves to dodge that upcoming threat. The first and second phase only have 2 attacks each, and the final phase only has 1 attack. At the beginning of the battle, Goopy leaps around the arena, with the vertical and horizontal difference of each jump varying randomly as he does so. Occasionally, he will stop in place and give a huge telegraph before he inflates himself into a boxing glove. The player can try to jump over him or move far enough away from him, but they're rewarded in a big way by learning to duck underneath the boxing glove in order to keep shooting throughout the entire animation. The second phase starts with Goopy popping a pill, creating a few question marks that are effectively 3 free parries. Neither of these tutorial bosses are too interested in making sure you know how to parry, so this ends up being more present for the
Alright, I'm just gonna reset because I'm not gonna win this fight and it's just wasting my time.
And does the same thing he did last time, albeit now with less screen real estate for the player to work with. The animations here also change his characterization in a really fun way. The first phase Goopy is smiling constantly, whereas the second phase Goopy has a much more sinister grin, baring his teeth while trying to punch out the brothers. Though not nearly as insane as many later transformations, it does still make the 2 phases feel distinct, despite the fact they're virtually identical. The biggest change from the first to the second phase is that you can't really dodge behind Goopy whenever he decides to punch forward, now wearing an actual boxing glove. Since the punch takes up so much more of the screen, it means it's easy to have no way to dodge other than...
Not a Magnezone? Wait, hold on, isn't that a favorite? No, that's Electivire. Crap.
Players to be aware of where their hurtbox is a great skill to test this early on in the tutorial, and in this simple of a fight, it's a pretty easy way to ease players in. At the end of the second phase, Goopy spends a long time spinning around for the player to get more...
Why do they all have
before his gravestone comes crashing from the sky. This phase focuses on teaching new players about aiming, and is usually the easiest of the 3 to dodge. The previous phases, outside of mid-jump, were both locked on the ground, meaning holding down the shoot button while pointing in Goopy's general direction would eventually lead to a win. But with the gravestone's much smaller airborne hitbox, the player does need to more intentionally chase after Goopy in order to deal damage. Goopy will stop and smash into the ground, forcing the player to dash out from underneath him. Usually, a single dash in either direction is enough to escape, which leaves this phase pretty harmless once the player is comfortable with the game's controls. Goopy lacks the spectacle and replayability of the best fights of Cuphead, but he does well enough as one of the game's tutorials. The emphasis on attacks coming one at a time stops the fight from ever becoming overwhelming, while also ensuring that the player knows how to duck, position, aim, and dash their way to victory. Because of that, I think Goopy earns a high C grade. With more complexity or something in expert mode that helps him keep pace with the rest of the game, I think he'd stand a lot better, but he just isn't very satisfying to refight.
Stab
Also, this video
or
will be
attack, I
including
guess.
pun appreciation time. Whenever you die in Cuphead, you see how far you made it in the fight, and you get some death quotes. I'm going to call out my favorite in each fight and then rank them at the end because these puns are amazing. My personal favorite pun for Goopy is in his third phase. I'm very smashing, even in grave situations. The second tutorial encounter, being the root pack in Botanic Panic,
Should I try to run this?
stand on its own legs,
Probably not.
even without legs, as a
Not very
tutorial
fast.
boss fight much more than Goopy did. Rather than a single evolving enemy, the root pack is a
Makes attacker more on the special side.
each of which attack the player in their own unique way to enforce specific aspects of the player's movement capabilities. The first of the trio, Sal's Sputter, focuses on the player's jump. He spits 4 times, with the speed increasing until the attacks come out 3 times.
Ooh,
At that
Crobat.
point,
Yeah, we want to go for Crobat.
speed. At the end of each set of 4 is a parryable worm, serving as the main moment to get parries within this fight. The goal with Sal is pretty clear. Teach the player to time their jumps while keeping their finger on whatever they've chosen to be the attack button. Even next
I
to
didn't
Goopy,
do.
this
Oh,
is
I do have.
probably the easiest phase within
But
the
still,
Goopy
that
fights.
that was super
After Sal
effective.
goes down, Ollie Bulb rises up and starts nervously looking around. Once the player attacks him, he starts to cry, dropping tears from the sky as an attack. Some are occasionally parryable, but it's rare to be fully worth the risk with how unpredictable the
Do I see
tear
the
pattern can be. There's not a realistic way
the
to switch
weakness?
which side of Ollie the player is on either, meaning that once Ollie rises, the player is trapped in just a third of the screen while still keeping the whole screen visually
I don't know.
interesting. Cuphead really likes using these visual flares to restrain the player without making them feel trapped or claustrophobic. Especially in the game's first bullet hell-esque phase, using this visual trick keeps things easy to digest by lowering the number of factors the player ever needs to worry about. The direction of projectiles
Why do I kinda wanna run this draft
ring?
ring?
Screen space means that the player only has to really look at a very small portion of the screen. Finally, the carrot overlord Chansey Chantenay rises to finish the battle with his psychic powers. Like with the final phase of Goopy, Chansey's hitbox is lifted off the ground, forcing players to aim up or diagonally as they dodge his attacks. He summons destructible carrots that home in towards the player before switching to a new pose and shooting psychic rays 3 times. Interestingly, the rays shoot twice in expert mode instead of 3 times, but less attacks means less time to get rid of the waves of carrots before more begin spawning again, making the entire phase feel a lot more chaotic. On top of all these phases, the root pack introduces what might be my favorite mechanic in Cuphead, the secret phases. When Ollie rises up, he doesn't start
Really,
attacking
that's your favorite
like
mechanic is the
his
secret
so if
phases?
The player decides to sit and wait
More
instead
of just a
attacking,
bonus
Ollie
than an actual
smiles at
mechanic, if I'd say
Cuphead's
so.
kindness and leaves. However, when Chansey rises
Zangoose is
faster,
pretty
he
cool.
brings Horseradish with him to join in with the final phase, making it a lot more challenging. Horus always spins towards the player on the ground, and with the ground now having an added danger, the player is often forced into the air.
Go get
which is
Crobat,
where all
because
the
we knew
bosses
Crobat's faster than
It makes for a
draft ring,
really
so
engaging
worst case
fight.
scenario, I
It's
just have a
pretty
better point
realistic
to run
for a
from.
player to run
But
into it and then realize that there might be tons of these phases tucked away. The root pack, like a lot of my favorite bosses in Cuphead, is packed with references and details that also make them a ton of fun. The most obvious is that the root pack's name is a reference to the Rat Pack, a group of entertainers from the 1950s like Frank Sinatra, Humphrey Bogart, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, so on and so forth. On top of that, we can notice that the fertilizer in the background is Acme Grow. Here's a fun fact about Acme. It was a company name used as a placeholder in lieu of actual references that would potentially lead to copyright infringement. Since then, it's become a name and brand in and of itself. On top of all this, all the vegetables that appear are
Bro's got, like, only
the root pack
dark
and the
moves.
attacks are direct references to what
For
the
some
vegetables
reason.
are known for. Potatoes are known for being covered with dirt and worms, and onions make you cry. Carrots are supposed to be good for your eyesight due to beta carrots.
Mix
So
attacker.
Chansey has incredible eyesight with his third eye, hence his psychic powers. It is such a perfectly dumb pun that makes nonsensical psychic
don't know.
powers in a vegetable-themed boss into the butt of a great joke. Chansey also wins
Got a
by
lot of
projectiles
HP. Let's go see what
because
the
of
lake
it.
encounters are real
I'm
quick.
lean,
And if they're not
big,
anything special,
and
we'll
full
run
of
this
beta
Crobat.
carotene. And all that before getting to the music. There isn't a single bad boss theme in Cuphead, but Botanic Panic just goes so absolutely wild for a tutorial theme, especially as the song progresses. It's easily one of my favorite tracks. The root pack for me is Cuphead's big
But
selling
no, I'll just go with
It's
Crobat.
simple enough to be accessible,
Good typing.
providing a challenge for a new player.
Well, I got 2 weaknesses, I'm pretty sure. Again, I don't know why I can't check the weaknesses of Crobat.
The player can't help but fall in love with. The root pack earns an A grade. Though they similarly lack the complexity of later fights, they cover way more tutorial ground than Goopy does, have more engaging phases with a variety of jokes and Easter eggs for players to discover, and they do serve as more of a real challenge for experts since their framework is easier to build upon in a way that creates a satisfying challenge. Stepping out of the tutorial and into slightly more complicated boss fights, the game really kicks off with Ribby and Croaks in Clipped Joint Calamity, who both play with the gambling theme of Cuphead while also being a massive love letter to the Street Fighter franchise of all things. Starting with the references this time, their opening poses are lifted
Of course, you have Ice Fang.
Strike, and Ribby's first phase attacks shoots Hadouken-like projectiles. There's a lot more
Yo,
small
Lauren, what's
details
going on, dude?
behind, like the inhale from Croaks before spitting fireflies, potentially referencing Dalsum, or each of the slot machine phases, potentially being additional references to other characters, but those have always felt less direct than the Hadouken and the taunts. Each of the frogs have one attack in the first phase. Ribby will do the aforementioned Hadouken attack barrage, with the punches following a predictable pattern that the player has to dodge through. One of the first 3 Hadoukens is always parryable, with every third one after
Hadouken!
pink. It provides a great opportunity for a player to get their parries in and predict what's coming next once you know what to expect.
Licky Licky! I forgot about Licky Licky! I gotta add that to my favorite.
They move really slowly.
I completely forgot about Licky Licky.
Brothers do nothing.
Wow, look at that moveset. Holy crap.
Across the stage. The fireflies die pretty quickly too, so they really don't pose any major risk at all here, which brings down this first phase a lot. With that said, the phase works a lot more effectively in expert mode, where both these attacks overlap. Ribby's barrage becomes much shorter, making the parries harder to abuse, and Croak spits out fireflies at the exact same time. Since the player is constantly dodging barrages, the firefly's slow movement lands in a much better place, providing a solid threat without drawing the player's focus too much from Ribby's more direct attack. After their health gets low enough, Ribby crosses the screen and you get one.
We're gonna run this Dusclops actually.
With your ability to move. Croaks turns into a giant fan, blowing the player towards Ribby, while Ribby starts to release a diagonally moving orb that bounces between
Really
the top and
bulky,
bottom of the
decently
screen. Though most
fast.
of the player's movement
Yeah, I like this
always
thing a lot.
versus frustration, these
Interesting
attacks
moveset.
don't ever usually create that. In fact, the fan being on has always felt like it made it easier to dodge the orb. Since the objects aren't affected by the wind in the same way the player is, the player can often just let the fan wind dodge the attack for them rather than needing to reposition in any way. Expert makes a lot of improvements to this phase as well as the first.
I don't usually run Pokemons either, so I'm excited for it.
To be much more threatening. Getting the parry with the wind active can be pretty tough, and with the attacks coming out faster, the player really needs to watch their positioning. Before I dive into the final phase, though, I do want to shout out this.
Working on my music when I release some stuff for late note. Ooh, sounds good, dude.
His utensils. I don't know if this man is hoping
That's
they
nice.
win and he gets to eat the frogs in some long-awaited and horrific role reversal, or if he's just really hungry and willing to eat a cup. Whatever it is, I'll have what his date's having because she is loving life right now. The entire background and music here is so much fun. It's chaotic and there is so much motion that keeps this room feeling so alive, especially when combined with the absolute fire that is the Clipped Joint Calamity track. That said, this lets me bring up one of my biggest universal issues with Cuphead's soundtrack. It's too good. Clipped Joint Calamity specifically has a shout chorus that starts its build up around 2 minutes and 48 seconds into the song, and it doesn't hit the final chorus until 3 minutes and 10 seconds into the track. And that shout chorus is one of my favorite parts of the Cuphead soundtrack.
Yo, that is kind of fire.
The fight, however, is usually over in less than 2 minutes, which means unless players go out of the way to listen to the music, they've probably never heard this absolutely incredible piece of music in its entirety, which is a shame. In other news, watch this animation of Ribby's foot stepping back into the arena after he crashes into something off screen. I don't know why this step back into frame is so funny to me, but it is. The third phase is the most demanding in the game thus far, though it does start to get eclipsed pretty quickly. Ribby rolls back across the screen into Croaks' mouth, transforming into a giant slot machine, which fits with the dive bar vibe of the fight, but also feels like there's a joke here that I'm missing. They start spitting coins that track the player pretty well, eventually dropping their crank. Once the player parries that crank, they randomly get one of 3 attack patterns as the machine spits out chips with a unique threat. The snake chips move across the ground, speeding as they go, having the player leap between them to avoid being pushed to the ground and taking damage from the side of the chips. The bull creates hovering discs that signal whether they'll shoot fire up or down, forcing the player to move vertically among them. Finally, the tiger has slower moving chips with bouncing balls, all moving at their own individual speed that the player needs to jump through. This one is easily the hardest of the phases, as the player needs to balance the distance of the chips with different vertical dodges, all one after the other, rather than just playing floor is lava or moving up and down. The brothers can only be damaged here when there is an active attack, which does a great job forcing the player to focus on their directionality as they're dodging whatever came up on the slot. Turning the crank, however, is the part that, for some reason, I always seem to struggle with. Especially on Expert, the chips come out incredibly fast, and being so close to tracking projectiles while landing a parry is the first time the game really tries to get the player to
we get like Shadow Claw or something.
Put them after they regain the ability to take
that move would be really nice.
A lot of small things with
especially considering I don't have great
coverage
against ghost types.
Solidly sit in the B grade. Mostly because Expert mode fixed all the larger problems I had with the fight on the regular difficulty. Their death screens aren't my favorite though, as their first and second lines are just rhymes. So my favorite death line goes to the machines, "You went for broke, and now you're croaked." Once the player has started to get the basic mechanics of Cuphead, they're thrown into a far more brutal tutorial level as they get their first taste of plane combat, facing Hildebird in Threatenin' Zeppelin. The plane levels in Cuphead are often considered by the community to be the harder level type, as the player gains the ability to move up and down at will, which means more complicated bullet hell patterns. Personally, I've always found that though they're harder to learn, they're a lot easier to master than the rest of the Cuphead combat. Even among them, though, I consider Hilda the easiest of the plane levels by a pretty decent margin, even if it doesn't feel easy at all on a first playthrough. Her design begins as a mix of a lot of women from classic cartoons. She has Betty Boop's color scheme and combines that with Olive Oil's body shape and absurdly long nose. She eats a cloud to start the fight, turning herself into a hybrid Zeppelin human riding on a unicycle. This Zeppelin is she's very obviously modeled after Betty Boop, at least with the hair. Hilda's first phase is also one of the most unique in the game, as it ends up becoming a combination of multiple phases all bundled together, as she alternates between her Zeppelin form and constellation phases. In the Zeppelin phase, she'll move up and down, summoning smaller Zeppelins that evolve as the fight progresses. She can also conjure a tornado that chases the player down for a while, or laughs, creating the word "ha" as a physical attack that moves horizontally across the screen, which is a contender for one of my favorite attacks in the game. Twice during this phase, Hilda will inflate herself and fly across the screen, creating a zodiac sign out of stars. There are 3 she can transform into, with her options being based on the player's difficulty selection. The Taurus is the simplest, and thus appears first in both simple and regular, while not making an appearance on expert mode. It moves up and down, and occasionally does an attack that covers a horizontal stretch of the screen. Gemini is the next most complicated, appearing second in
on behalf of Gemini,
50 option as the second in regular, or first in expert. Gemini floats in place and occasionally summons a sphere in the center of the player's space of the arena, starting a bullet spread that draws a full circle around.
It was a good move to finish a move.
Neither of these two, however, are too intense, and personally, I find them even easier than her normal Zeppelin phase. The Sagittarius constellation, which appears in the 50-50 in regular or as the second transformation in expert, is a lot more engaging. He pulls back his bow and releases an arrow as a projectile, spawning 3 stars that track the player and last for a long while if not destroyed alongside it. If the player doesn't take the time to handle the stars, they can last back into the Zeppelin phase, and the bleed over of these phases is one of the things that can make Hildebird stand out so much. It also takes advantage of one of the hardest parts of plane levels. The player can only shoot to the right, which means a lot of tracking objects that can end up on the player's left are a lot more dangerous than they'd usually be. After the player empties her 3rd Zeppelin health bar, she screams and turns into the moon, taking up most of the screen. Unfortunately, this is one of the only phases in Cuphead that I almost constantly run into a glitch with. For some reason, she just doesn't change sometimes. And since she's invincible in the transition, I have lost so many good S-rank attempts from Hilda burning through enough time that I miss my 2-minute deadline. The phase itself
kind of tempting, actually.
Great, though, especially as a climax. Stars fly.
I feel like Confuser is too luck-based, but also could come in clutch.
Or occasionally parry some of them. Hilda will burst out her face from within the moon, laughing hysterically, while UFOs fly out from behind where her face used to be. The UFO color telegraphs if the player needs to stay behind them after they activate, or rush immediately through them while they do. It gives a great horizontally avoided threat versus the stars vertically.
Maybe I should forget superpower.
A grid that players have to weave through as they move through the phase.
I think I'll forget superpower.
I also have a personal theory that the moon is a pun based off a niche comic history fact. Olive Oil, one of the women who Hilda's appearance was based on, is most well known as Popeye's girlfriend, but she didn't start as that. In her comic's introduction, she was originally dating Harold Hamgravy, with the joke being that both of them were, by the ideals of the time, bad partners. Eventually, that relationship fell apart in a pretty long series of comics, leading to an eventual relationship with the later introduced Popeye. But the main plot point leading to their breakup was Olive contracting lunophobia. The comic defined lunophobia as Olive getting so angry at Harold that she'd go loony. Lunophobia, by that definition, isn't a real thing though, but it is an alternative word that can be used in lieu of selenophobia, which is, as anyone playing Hades 2 right now could tell you, a fear of the moon, leading to this final phase's
Fear of the
design.
moon?
Now,
You
that
could
may
feel
be
the
a
moon? Wow, that's kind of
coincidence, but
crazy.
it's one I enjoy.
I mean, I guess it makes sense.
Overall, Hildeberg is another A-grade fight. I wish the astrology phases had a little more depth, especially Taurus and Gemini, as their simple nature does hold back that first phase a bit for me, as does that frequently frustrating bug. Beyond that, the animation and evolution of Hilda over the course of the battle and that incredibly satisfying second phase
Nice
makes her
crit.
a great introduction to the plane levels. My favorite of her in-game death lines is fitting, isn't it? I'm a blimp, you're a wimp. According to the wiki, though, one of her cut death lines in an old demo was, gotta be nimble, gotta be quick, when you mess around with this lunatic, which plays even harder into the moon puns with the Luna lunatic. But that same wiki also says that Hildeberg's design was very largely inspired by Pearl from Steven Universe, and I can't find a second source of that quote, so the I'm a blimp, you're a wimp line is still getting the official vote. As I mentioned earlier, bosses in Cuphead don't really have a set order to fighting them outside of the aisles as a whole, but each aisle still ends with a boss that has always felt like the clear final boss of their respective island. These fights focus on taking a lot of the concepts that the aisle taught and putting them all together, with the final boss of Aisle 1 being Cagney Carnation in Floral Fury. Before we even touch the rest of the boss fight, we have to talk about the titular song, though. Despite being the only boss theme in the base game that isn't your classic big band jazz sound, featuring more of a samba rhythm, this song is iconic for a reason. The unique instrumentation, the heavy drum rhythm that matches with Cagney's dancing, and the fact that the unique piece of the song is immediately introduced really makes the track stand out. When people think of Cuphead music, Floral Fury will often come to mind within the first couple of tracks. It's just so much fun, and joins along with the rest of the fight to help Carnation feel like a culmination of the island. Difficulty will always be subjective, but Cagney has always been the hardest Aisle 1 boss to me. His first phase is broken into smaller sub-phases that change based on your difficulty, with each unique sub-phase pulling from a shared collection of attacks. The simplest of these attacks features Cagney pulling back and then covering either the top or bottom half of the screen for a short time, forcing the player up onto the platforms or down onto the ground. If the player has a high damage short-range weapon like lava or spread, this attack is incredibly exploitable. The other two attacks carry
We need sword
First,
dance or
he can
something.
clap his hands together and spawn either a
Or
boomerang
bulk up.
that covers the platforms before looping
Bulk up
back
would be
around
pretty
the
good
ground,
too.
or he creates a set of nuts that each release on a slight delay, targeted at the player's location in a straight line. On Expert, the number of nuts here increases, and they end up being the largest threat of these two. If the player is ready for it, the boomerang often struggles to catch them off guard. It can remove some escape options depending on what moves follows, but it's pretty rare. He does usually perform the summon attack 2 to 3 times in a row, so the RNG here can play a slight factor, but never enough to be frustrating, just enough to keep it dynamic what kind of solutions you need to have available. The final of his attacks turns his face into a Gatling gun, dropping a collection of 3 types of seeds.
I think I know how to handle a gap.
And this is the attack that really defines his first phase for me. The purple seeds are a non-issue, summoning bitey plants that sit on the ground unmoving, where the blue seeds create a vine that releases a gnashing.
Yeah, flying types are a big problem for me too.
The pink seed can be parried, though where it spawns can occasionally make this unrealistic. If this seed manages to root, it grows into a flying creature that spits out more parryable projectiles. The most
Grass types. Ooh, yeah, grass and flying types are my biggest weaknesses right now, I think.
Especially on Expert, where Cagney can summon 2 of these enemies instead of just 1. It's really satisfying to weave among the seeds while trying to position yourself in a way that deals with the minions as quickly as possible before Cagney moves to his next attack. With that said, I think that the single hardest Expert phase in Aisle 1 is the very beginning of this fight, where all Cagney does, without pausing, is shoot out blue and pink seeds. This phase gets out of hand fast in a way no other boss on Aisle 1 is able to do, though his other sub-phases in Expert are much simpler as he just starts alternating between his summons and lunge. But with each of these attacks testing different skills, Cagney serves as a final challenge by using lingering attacks that force the player to constantly think of their positioning and how they'll handle whatever comes next. The chaotic samba also works perfectly for this type of phase, and the evolving movesets within these sub-phases keeps what is a 2-phase boss from feeling as static as you'd expect. I personally believe that the second phase isn't quite as strong as the first, but it does still work as a pretty solid climax. Digging into the ground, the bottom half of the arena is cut off and Cagney starts to perform 2 attacks at once. First, vines will sprout out around 2 platforms with a slight delay, forcing the player onto the safe one, while Cagney's tongue grows fingers and starts to throw fuzzy dandelions towards the player, some of which can be parried.
Ooh, rare candy, nice.
By these, the screen becomes fuzzy and out of focus, making dodging the
I'm glad we get at least one more move for the gym later. I hope it's good.
But like the first phase, the fight
Honestly, I'd take Shadow
simple
Ball.
unless you lose.
Even though our special defense is, our special attack is awful, but the stab would make the move actually somewhat decent.
It's pretty easy to find yourself struggling to find anywhere.
I probably, no, I don't know if I could learn over Skull Bash, because it's like,
the dandelions are also
I don't know.
a cute little reference
Maybe.
to fuzzies in Super Mario World 2. When you get hit by a dandelion,
I probably wouldn't even come to that though.
The achievement Touch Fuzzy Get Dizzy. which is the name of the level that introduced Fuzzy's.
Wait, did I get the? Did I get the super potion?
The Gatling gun transformation is also another collection.
I did. Okay, just making sure.
Cagney's second name, Carnation.
We're getting pretty good heals.
That he doesn't really look like, but his first name comes from the actor James Cagney. Cagney was an early film actor known for his films like Public Enemy, which is a film that cemented him as the iconic film gangster, which could be one source for the gun. But on top of that, as any botanists in the comments section would know, the part of the plant that produces the seeds is called the pistil. I just love this game.
I thought it was a pistol.
Cagney's second phase is my favorite of the two death quotes here. With so many puns and jokes, there is something hilarious about Cagney just screaming extreme pollination and total domination. There's no pun here, but it's still a great death scream. Overall, Cagney's going to be the first boss in Cuphead that earns.
I was hoping to get to level 22 before the gym later, but or before the gym. PB Oh, that's a godsend. PB is an absolute godsend. We're using it on Earthquake immediately, no hesitation.
Opening up Aisle 2, we have Beppy the Clown and Carnival Kerfuffle, a boss who wears his inspiration, Coco the Clown, on his sleeve even more than other bosses. Beppy features 4 completely distinct phases, and alongside the other 2 bosses immediately accessible in Aisle 2, helps communicate the escalating difficulty moving into the middle of the game. With that said, out of Beppy's
Alright, it's
phases,
gym time,
really
gym time.
I feel are completely successful.
Do I have any berries I want to hold?
I'm not a big fan of, featuring Beppy jumping into a bumper car and moving forwards and backwards randomly before occasionally stopping and charging across the screen. While he's doing this, ducks will start to move along the top half of the screen, each able to be removed as an obstacle in a single hit. Some are parryable, while others will carry light bulbs that drop either when the player moves underneath the duck or destroys it, leaving a small lingering flame as a hitbox. I've never personally liked the way that the bumper car moves here. Sometimes it stays pushed back against the wall and provides absolutely no threat.
Oh no, I was poisoned. That might be the end, guys.
The biggest issue with this phase for me is that it doesn't really
kind of
play
risky.
into anything with the rest of the boss fight's main challenge, balancing 2 major threats at once. For the entire rest of the boss fight, Beppy's attacks are designed to be very simple, but complicated by a looping roller coaster that the player.
I don't know if I have anything to heal that.
The first phase doesn't, and so it ends up feeling way slower than the rest of the fight. Weapon selection can also play a big role here. Weapons like Spread or Lobber struggle with the unpredictable.
Yeah, I think I'm screwed.
Whereas weapons like Roundabout reduce the phase to a single dodge.
Yeah, it's gonna be a miracle if I get out of this fight. I'm gonna have to like use all my potions in order to win this.
Pennywise here moves on to his next clown trick: balloons. He inflates himself and watches over the player as balloon dogs gnash their way towards them, spawning 2 to 4 every couple of seconds. They lightly track the player at first, but
we're gonna have to have really easy gym Pokemon to win.
The roller coaster introduction is also done really smoothly. When Beppy falls off the stage, he takes a while to inflate himself, and the player is introduced to the sound cue of the roller coaster as they see it cross in the background. Then it spawns before the dogs.
They did like nothing.
Meaning it avoids ever blindsiding a player even on the first attempt. Jumping over Beppy's prisoners/guests and keeping your gun aimed upwards eventually moves into the third phase, which is the only other phase that never really clicked for me. The roller coaster continues uninterrupted.
Oh yeah, we lost.
On the left,
GG.
right edge of the screen on a yellow or green horse. The yellow horse spits out a row.
Paris was like one of the worst Pokemon we could have faced. Literally resisted every single one of my moves.
Green horse spits out 2 horseshoes.
And the combination of that and of me and Ori being poisoned, it just was not a good combo.
Here is how RNG dependent this phase is. Sometimes the horses just don't line up with the roller coaster, meaning you can stand under them and the phase poses less than no threat. Other times, you end up with a horse spawning in an inconvenient place that can make moving around the horseshoes incredibly precise, especially when there are specific places you need to stand that might not be safe to stand in, or need to jump over something right as the entire middle of the screen becomes dangerous. The transition into his final phase is also really long, almost 16 seconds of dead time where the boss does not attack and cannot be damaged. The roller coaster is still running, however, which can kill an unobservant player, or a player who hypothetically were to get distracted despite having played this game multiple times, who just stands there and lets themselves die like a moron, hypothetically. After the final phase does finally begin, Beppy transforms into a carnival ride, giving the player rotating platforms to leap between while the roller coaster increases in speed to just be a solid obstacle rather than a series of people that the player needs to leap over. Between every time that the roller coaster rushes through, he spits out 4 penguins, 2 on each side of his body, that begin to throw baseballs at the player. This assault can be pretty overwhelming as the attacks come from multiple angles at once, move decently fast, and there's not much space to maneuver around them in the air. They'll keep going until the roller coaster reappears, destroying the penguins as the player is forced back onto the ride and beginning the cycle again. I like this phase a lot, The theming is great with the carnival and penguins and baseballs, and the rhythm of the penguins with the roller coaster is really satisfying to learn.
Let's see.
Pepe's huge hitbox
It's not a favorite though.
makes it incredibly
I gotta
satisfying
remember
to
add
destroy
Licky Licky to my favorites.
The biggest struggles I have with Beppy are the unpredictable RNG in phase 1 and 3, and how long every transition between phases takes. Rather than the randomness of the attacks being the challenge, the issue is often the way that attacks overlap, which has a lot more potential for frustration. His theming is great, and his music is one of my favorite implemented tracks in the game. The gimmick of the song, which is everything but the piano dropping out, is introduced early enough that the cool parts of the song get a chance to show off during the fight, which I love. On top of that, all the instruments dropping out alongside a phase transition, if it times out correctly, is really cool. I think Beppy earns a low B grade. He's got some great highs, but the few disappointing phases really drag the fight down for me, especially with the simplicity.
Licky Licky's one of my favorite Pokemon, and it's actually good too, so I can't believe it didn't add me up.
Are the most beautifully corny in the game. Every one of these is gold, but I think my favorite death quote has to come.
Wait, what was that? What did that one say? With the balloon.
Beautifully corny in the game. Every one of these is gold, but I think my favorite death quote has to come from my least favorite boss phase. Why'd the clown drive over the cup? You wanted to crack him up. Once the player has reached Style 2, they receive an upgrade to their plane, allowing them to swap between the classic
Like the worst joke.
and a slower
That was the worst,
bomb
like,
drops
quote-unquote
down.
joke that I've ever heard in my entire
Right
life.
after getting it, they also get the opportunity to use it on the second plane boss.
I say the odds are
Jimmy
1 in 20 we get out of this fight.
Despite featuring 5 unique phases, I've always found Jimmy to, like Hildeberg, lean towards the easier side of the plane boss.
Or 0.
Especially considering the 3 plane bosses that are still yet to come. In the first phase, there's a random roll between 1 of 3 attacks as Jimmy pulls out a treasure chest. First, a barrage of random jewels and gems flies towards the player, with some of them being parryable. By keeping their distance, this isn't too hard to dodge on its own, but Jimmy layers a huge skull blast with each of these attacks, and that blast can combine with this to create a few nasty traps for the player. Second, 2 cat sarcophagi are sent towards the player.
Sarcophagi! That's a fun word.
Smaller homing cats, one of which is often parryable. The biggest issue I find here is that the cats often start in a big pile, meaning they immediately overlap.
Oh, it's legal. I didn't mean to pick that.
On top of
Well,
that,
I'll take it, but I'll... No, it's too slow to be worth pivoting into. Should I even count that as an attempt? I'm not gonna count that as an attempt because I misclicked. I didn't even mean to do that.
Has 6 instead of 4 cats. Expert is always harder, but this move in particular just really went nuts here. The final of the first phase options is a series of 4 swords that fly to the top, left, or bottom of the screen before homing towards the player in a straight line 1 at a time. Like the cats, one of these is often parryable, and it ends up being the easiest attack by a pretty wide margin, especially since the player is able to watch Jimmy more effectively to avoid the skull blast rather than the more chaotic alternatives. Though RNG plays a part in how simple Jimmy is, I prefer this kind of
good mon.
fight RNG that doesn't screw the player
Bad
with
stats.
positioning, and
Even
instead
worse
just
moveset.
provide a unique challenge in each attempt. And putting it at the beginning as 3 wholly unique attacks means players can quickly reset if they absolutely do not want to deal with a particular move. After that phase, Jimmy teleports away and the pillar phase begins. Like Hildeberg, this is another plane boss with an incredibly unique
Just kill me
boss
already.
phase. There are a set number of pillars every time, each of which have 1 or 2 pieces made out of Jimmy's face.
I actually would have won if I was
Points, and
allowed
the
to use
player needs
Giga Drain, but
these pillars. However, any damage
Bye-bye.
done here carries to the next phase, encouraging players to destroy every face rather than take the easiest path. Or it would be if the third phase wasn't my personal vote for the easiest plane level phase. Jimmy climbs out in a sarcophagus and starts moving vertically up and
Or
down.
at the very
If you
least, the
stand in front of
simplest
him,
one.
He's got a lot going on. There is a brutal barrage of ghosts that fly out really quickly. He's shooting his eyes at these hard to track projectiles that meet past the middle and then extend out a variable amount. And you have to be moving up and down to try to hit what's a pretty small hitbox. Alternatively, if you switch to dropping bombs, you can just stay up here and never have to worry about the eyes and pretty much avoid every single ghost while not ever thinking.
Ooh,
too hard about it.
Togekiss.
Kind of disappointing. It's very possible that
The only problem
this
with
phase
Togekiss
as
is
easy as
it's
it is to
good,
make
but
sure
it
players
it
have,
doesn't
like,
learn any
it
moves.
is
So whatever you
technically
got, you're
less
stuck
of a
with.
fucking NPCs after all.
Permanently.
Not having it makes this phase a really big obstacle. Once it drops though, the sarcophagus does start crying as it hops away. Jimmy finally reappears after, fun fact his feet are lamps, and focuses on the player here. His body turns into a puppeteering hand as he raises a puppet version of Cuphead. This phase is the hardest of his 5 phases for me, but it's also my favorite. His turban will chase the player around, eventually stopping and spitting out bullets in a spiraling pattern, while the puppet Cuphead moves around before eventually stopping and shooting a pea shooter inspired set of projectiles, with the last set of each usually being parryable. Jimmy really starts to press into the player's personal space here, with where the player guides the hat combining with the puppet's movements to occasionally trap the player to half the screen with 2 sets of projectiles moving at unique speeds and shapes. It's a lot, but really satisfying. and also features the game's second secret phase. Shrink your plane, and the Cuphead Jimmy creates will be a baby, which skips the phase entirely in exchange for that baby Cuphead joining in on the last phase, which, again, is just so much fun. The baby Cuphead is incredibly cute, and this is just one of my favorite secret phases, because it just does such a massive shift to the fight's pacing, provides a unique challenge, and is one of the easiest to find and mess around with.
I can transform before you back, man.
Space. Jimmy does take up a third of the screen himself, but creates 3 pyramids that circle around Cuphead. Jimmy shoots off some psi waves that move incredibly slowly and cut off a huge space, while a random pyramid grows an eye and creates a moving cross the player needs to be ready to avoid before it explodes out. If the baby Cuphead is present, he sits in the center of this space, spinning his head and shooting a single projectile. It's predictable, and it adds just enough chaos to be exciting, while also amplifying the specific challenge that this phase tries to present. On his own, Jimmy would probably earn a high B grade, but the entire secret phase makes the entire ending of the battle so much fun that I think he does earn an A grade. His death quotes are also the only one I'm going to give a direct honorable mention to. If the player uses Jimmy's wishes to give themselves more hit points and then still dies, he says, "You foolish cups could not best me, even with my wishes 3. Which I love. Hidden details like that are just incredibly fun to run into, and give a little flair to players who are struggling enough to need to use the wishes. In terms of my favorite death quote proper, that has to go to the puppet. That beating was for free. No strings attached. Though, "Do you need to borrow my sarcophagus" is close just because of how little of an actual joke there is. The final of the 3 immediately accessible bosses in Aisle 2 is Baroness Von Bonbon and Sugarland Shimmy, who, like Jimmy's first phase, uses a collection of random phases to vary each encounter, which can lead to some extreme variation in difficulty, but still never feels unfair. This fight is 4 phases long, the first 3 phases each pulling from one of 5 possible mini-bosses: a Jawbreaker, Gumball Machine, Waffle, Candy Corn, and Cupcake. As the fight continues, the Baroness starts to add in small attacks.
Special attacker, no special
before
moves.
eventually having her own final phase. I'm going to go over the mini-bosses from my least to most favorite, and though these bosses don't have any official names, Keenan Araki, one of Cuphead's animators, did name them all in an old tweet, so I'll be using those names today. Throughout each of these phases, there is a moving platform about halfway up the screen the player can use to get up off the ground, but it is fairly limited. The Cupcake, Mufsky Chernikov, flies diagonally upwards, then smashes into the ground, leaving a slow-moving series of hitboxes that spread from him before he does the same diagonal jump again. My issue with this phase is twofold. First, the way that Mufsky moves makes it hard to both get close or to punish his attacks, leading to a lot of dead time compared to the other mini-bosses. The second and larger issue is that it's kinda hard to make out where the edges of these hitboxes land, especially when combined with Bonbon's attacks. It can get pretty frustrating as the player has to keep more distance than they actually need. Cuphead usually provides an extraordinary visual clarity within its animation, but this is one of those few attacks that's just never read clearly to me. Interestingly, this mini-boss never shows up on the simple difficulty, but I've always thought the Cupcake was about in the middle of the difficulty pack, with both the Candy Corn and the Waffle being tougher foes. Up next is the Weaselly Waffle, who flies around the screen randomly before pausing and exploding into damageable pieces.
I didn't get out of that just so I can pivot, because...
Though the unpredictable movement does have the potential to lead to frustration, like with Beppy's car, the Waffle always slows down for the moment right after it turns, meaning it never feels like she darts in random or unfair directions. There's also a lot of flexibility between the difficulty modes here. In Simple, the Waffle never explodes, and in Expert, the cardinal directions explode at different times, leading to more time spent with more of the screen being dangerous, but less random movement. The biggest problem is that the projectiles go a little too far, often moving off screen, and thus not being able to be punished as I feel they're supposed to be, but there's nothing nearly as frustrating as the Cupcake. The greedy Gumball is in the middle of the pack due to his simplicity. He runs to cut off most of the stage and then runs back and forth while raining gumballs down. It's a slightly more complicated version of Ollie Bulb's phase back against the Root Pack, but with the added complication of a mobile boss and the potential interference of Bonbon on top of the attack, which works really well to make the game feel like it's evolving as you progress. Lord Gobpacker is another simple enemy, but with a much more unique premise than Gumball. Gobpacker follows the player, gaining 1 follower on regular and 2 on expert. He doesn't ever stop or use any other attacks, but the player needs to turn and attack him while they're moving away, which makes for a fun back and forth that encourages experimenting with other types of weapons. Roundabout, Chaser, and Spread work especially well, and now that the game's beginning to open up, a phase like this, where the pea shooter is violently outclassed, is great. Finally, the Conniving Candy Corn is the most complicated of the mini-boss fights, but is still a really satisfying mini-boss to master. There's 2 bosses in the game that feature mini-bosses prior to the boss proper, and the Candy Corn honestly fits in with a level of challenge that the second one has. The Conniving Candy Corn forms a figure 8 on the screen, only ever turning at one of the corners or the midpoint of the stage, flying around and releasing smaller Candy Corn enemies that fly directly upwards. This and Gobpacker are the best at using the platform on the stage to their advantage, using height to control Gobpacker's movement or to move around the candy corn, which gets really satisfying and plays with the environmental piece in a way that the other 3 bosses really don't. Bonbon's interfering attacks are also pretty minimal. After one boss is beaten, she'll send jelly beans walking along the ground. They're slow moving, easy to predict, and don't have much health, but their small size means the player has to specifically duck to hit them unless they're using one of those aforementioned weapons. After 2 bosses are down, she'll pop up out of her castle and shoot a candy cane shotgun at the player, creating projectiles that are pretty easy to destroy but do take away the player's focus for a moment. They're small enough not to feel as frustrating as getting stuck between Beppy and the roller coaster, but just large enough that they can complicate mini-bosses in interesting ways. Once the final phase starts, the castle comes to life, turning into a moving hitbox as the screen begins to scroll to the left, forcing the player to keep on the run. Bonbon starts to throw her head, sometimes 2 of her head, and they'll continually move towards the player, pausing intermittently, and occasionally she'll release a huge peppermint that rolls along the bottom of the screen but can be parried. On top of that, her hitbox is only her body, meaning the player needs to be on the candy platform or aiming to hit it with a pea shooter or, like Gobpacker, experimenting with mixing their weaponry. It's an intense phase, but I love how it all comes together. It works really well guiding the player in the more complicated fights that are still to come, while still having each attack be incredibly easy to understand. The mini-bosses are unique and also introduce the concept of mini-bosses prior to a boss proper, a concept featured in a major way in the game's penultimate fight. Now this doesn't necessarily affect my opinion of the game boss, but I also have to mention the Cuphead show's version of Bonbon. She is so delightfully unhinged throughout the run of her entire episode, and the spindly design gets used to an amazing effect. I also love that the candy boss isn't an overweight slob, but instead this Marie Antoinette actress mix. Also, that's why her head keeps coming off. The wrongly attributed let them eat cake line combined with her head being less than tied to her shoulders is a fun design concept. Now this may be more love than a mini-boss gauntlet should have, but I think Baroness Von Bonbon earns an A grade. The animation is so much fun, and though I really don't like the cupcake as an enemy, it's not enough to ruin the rest of the battle. The death quote line has to go to Lord Gobpacker's "How's the jaw, old chum?" I just love how silly the suggested accent going on is, especially from this Pac-Man parody jawbreaker. The first bosses in Isle 2 are certainly tougher than most the Isle 1 foes, but even they pale before the boss that, prior to the DLC, won my vote for being the hardest fight in the game. Wally Warbles and Aviary Action. Specifically on Expert Mode, this boss is a ridiculous challenge. He was the last boss I beat when I did my first loop around Expert, and even this go around, the only bosses I died to more were in the DLC, which for most of them was the first time I'd ever fought them on Expert. Beating Chef Saltbaker on Expert for the first time took
physical attacker
in this run. I'm not going to tell you
Yeah,
how
run
many
it.
times it took Wally Warbles on my first, but I promise
Good
you
defenses.
it was way
This
more.
this almost has the
Wally
same
Warbles
exact
is
stat
a
spread
very
as that
talented plot, which is a bit of an obvious joke, but the fight ends up really
as the
good
dust
because the setup
flops that I had,
is
but it has a better
unexpected
BST, so
built
it's
to its limit. The first phase
better.
is pretty straightforward on the regular difficulty.
Oops, that's
but is
awful,
proof as
though.
to how a single small detail can make an easy boss become a horrifying gauntlet. 3 things happen throughout this phase. These little nail birds appear at the same vertical level as the player, slowly flying across the screen, with the last one being parryable. These aren't too much of a risk on their own, but they do make moving around slightly more complicated, something necessary due to Wally's constant up and down movement. The other 2 things are Wally's direct attacks. He'll turn his head into a hand and shoot a few bullets in a predictable pattern that the player can slip through without much of a challenge. Finally though, he'll spit
Oh
up
boy.
eggs. Usually if
Crap!
when they hit the back of the screen, they'll explode into 3
That sucks.
eggshells
Yeah,
that
no,
burst
my
off
moveset
the
was
base
awful.
base.
In my text, that
However,
wasn't
if they stay
anything
just above
amazing
or below
either,
the
so.
egg, it can't hurt you on regular, encouraging the player to
What are you
stay
gonna
out
do?
of the central space in the arena. After all,
That's why I didn't get
it
too
gives you the most
excited.
space to dodge the finger gun and the nail birds, which is why Expert takes that away. The eggshell now breaks into 5 pieces, with one going directly up and the other directly down, which makes the entire screen become dangerous all the time. The player is constantly put into situations where they need to use their small form a lot more frequently, weaving around this huge barrage of eggs while still trying to keep pressure on Wally, who's been moving around and shooting more eggs in this almost non-stop onslaught.
Ugh.
Dealing enough damage, Wally
Delibird,
blows his
I
top
would-
like a steam train. He's steaming mad after
No.
all, and starts a more traditional
Really?
bullet hell phase. He stays in place, feathers fanning out and forcing the player to move slightly up and
Thank
down.
you.
Small birds
Get out of my
continue spawning
misery.
here, and between bouts, Wally will reposition. Though it requires some solid focus, this phase always felt less intense than the one that came before, especially on the expert difficulty. My favorite part of this phase, though, is how it sets up the fight's big punchline. Wally is shooting out his feathers, and at the end of the phase, falls out of his birdhouse completely naked, revealing his Machiavellian son as the next phase of the fight. Willy Warbles flies around in a figure 8 with a series of eggs around himself that bullets cannot get through. The eggs will spread away from him while spinning, then press tightly enough that only the dropped bomb splash damage is able to connect him. He'll occasionally pull out his gun and shoot a parryable shot. It's not too hard to deal with, but the movement of the eggs combined with his movement can get
glass
pretty
cannon.
bizarre to feel out. The music here also deserves a shout out. Around this point of the fight,
Hopefully I outspeed. I doubt it, but
suddenly blast the main line
frick.
from Flight of the Valkyries, which is such a bizarre and hilarious music.
I outsped. I
up with an evil baby bird
probably wouldn't have won. Let's be honest.
Destroy you perfectly. Once Willy goes down, throwing his final temper tantrum, Wally makes a grand return, though he is still completely nude, missing teeth and in a stretcher guided by 2 nurses. This phase is just so funny to me. He's spitting up old and rotten food as a sentient garbage can. The nurses will spit up pills towards the player, and Wally can even spit up his own heart that attacks the player and moves his hitbox, which leads to Wally temporarily dying as his heart leaves his body, which is just so funny. And then when Wally finally goes down for the final time, the nurses turn on him, seasoning his body with salt and pepper while licking their lips. Freaking gold. Though Wally on Expert is one of the most brutal bosses in the game, the story of this fight is one of my favorite yet. You face a bird, forcing it to lose its feathers in a home in desperation. Its son comes out of the destroyed nest, you beat it up, and
Really
then
bulky
the bird
physical
returns
attacker.
despite his injuries and tries to keep fighting. It's funny, and it tells such a direct, clear cause and effect story through the mechanics and
What's
animation of the
do
fight
again?
that it's just so memorable. There are so many visual gags throughout every single one of Wally's transformations. The music is spectacular, and that last phase, I just can't help but love everything about this fight. I think Wally handily earns a next S grade in my book. I think the Death Court Award is going to go to the final phase. Even without my feathers, you're in for stormy weather. Wally's grin from the stretcher always makes me laugh here, and the fight's just so much fun. Though Wally pretty confidently holds the spot for the hardest boss on Expert for me, Grim Matchstick in Fiery Frolic was the first real wall that
Grim Matchstick's actually one of the easiest bosses on Expert, in my opinion.
On our first playthrough, which is a
I actually think he's easier than his regular form on Expert.
Grim not only has a decently complicated moveset, with a first phase focusing on overlapping attacks, a second phase that's hard to predict, and a third phase that requires some of the most accuracy with your shooting in the game thus far, but it does all of that while the player is also on constantly moving platforms with no floor below to catch them.
No speed at
Clouds
all.
pulling the player away from Grim in the first phase, Grim will occasionally wiggle his tail at the bottom of the screen, then burst it up a few moments later to create a wall. Then, of course, he combines it with his 2 other attacks. The first is Psybeams, the last of which is always parryable, and serves as the only parryable attack within the fight, meaning Grim is a really hard fight to get a perfect score on, especially depending on attack randomness. The other attack has Grim spit out a meteor that forms a sine wave, starting either going up or down, or occasionally having 2 meteors that cover a massive amount of space, especially when combined with an unfortunate tail placement. Even then, there's nothing too insane happening here. Attacks come out slowly and are all well telegraphed, which means the main challenge is making sure you're well enough positioned on the clouds to be able to dodge whatever it is that comes next. With the cloud's direction, this usually means that the player just needs to keep pressing forward and they're able to avoid running out of space. Phase 2 is the first jump in difficulty, and also my least favorite of his phases. Grim flies to the other side of the arena, which means the clouds now carry the player.
Special attacker with only physical moves.
Massively increases the challenge. With the right shot, like Bonbon, this phase becomes a lot easier. Lobber especially is perfect here, but constantly
Of course you have a grass move. Of course you do.
Really nasty situation.
Wow.
Grim extends his tongue along the ground, and these small flames wander across the bottom, a few occasionally jumping up.
That might be the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Of course you have a grass move against my Pokemon that, guess what, only has a weakness to grass. Welcome in, Cam. That was so dumb.
In terms of which flames won't jump and if they'll be jumping left or right, but those are all small enough that between the cloud movement and dodging the previous flame, they aren't visually clear. Some of them I didn't even realize until I looked up more details about this fight. But the third phase
That's a favorite.
Notorious player killer. The player is still being pulled towards
Our first favorite of the day, and probably our last, honestly.
Aren't too intense on their own, but in the moment, it can become a violently stressful phase. Each of the heads will randomly spit.
Oh, we got the flinch, nice.
Fireball, and if that fireball gets hit, it breaks
Wow,
into
double
four
flinch.
tiles, and it
We're on
keeps
fire.
moving faster than the
We're at the
fireball.
lab with a favorite. You love
Combine
to
this
see
with
it.
the chaos of needing to be running from Grim while turning around and
We're a special
attacking
attacker,
and
so
making sure you don't fall off the clouds, and it becomes
That's
really
any
tough to avoid
reason to use
enemy
protect?
fireballs. Lobber, charge, or roundabout
Yeah.
are all great here. Though roundabout will very
let's not learn
reliably break
revenge.
fireballs open, making it a lot riskier than the
Should I try to run it?
Occasionally, the main head will turn
That's
to
tempting.
fire, covering the middle of the screen.
It
This
is
section in
tempting.
particular
Our only
really
really
pushes
good
the
move
base
is
Lobber, because it's effective
Bug
to do
Buzz.
damage with that weapon during one of
But
the
you know
only
what?
times
Screw it, I'll try to run it.
easily attack. Grim is a hard fight, but
I like
think it still
Porygon Z,
manages
so.
to stay fair. The cloud pattern is always random, but there's always at least one cloud at any version.
Who knows, maybe we'll get like Hyper
There's
Voice or something.
always
That'd be nice.
to escape to, even if where you're escaping to isn't quite
We're gonna
as
get Hyper
easy
Voice,
to
Shadow
do.
Ball, and Nasty Plot.
Grim
Those are the
Matchstick is
moves
also
we're gonna
a
get,
really
guys.
boss on Expert.
Don't worry.
In addition to the increase to speed and health, the cloud direction changes, and this honestly makes Grim a lot easier. In the first phase, you're now having to run away from Grim, but with Roundabout not having the same.
Oh, Sandville. That just increases my accuracy or my evasion in Sandstorm.
It turns into a
It's actually pretty good, I guess, but not. It's not useless, I guess. I mean, it's not anything exceptional.
Aim either at the player or to the right, which means
Dear Lord, this part takes forever.
Move to keep your positions is now safe, unlike in the regular version where you'd regularly put yourself back into danger dodging away. Then, in the last phase, it's so much easier to watch exactly where your shots are going to make sure you're breaking as few fireballs as possible, while still keeping on the pressure in a way that you really couldn't do.
Physical attack's not awful enough to where Crunch and Zen Headbutt can still have use, but
honestly, always felt
I'm a bit of a mixed attacker, more on the special side now that I'm looking at it. So, Crunch isn't bad. Please don't tell my game just froze.
Especially when it combines with his personality, which features Grim being a nervous.
My game just crashed.
This actually comes to the second part of the pun.
Crap. I don't remember what ROM I was on. Crap. One close combat, it's over. Well, it's over already. I don't know what happened. My game just crashed. That's like never happened before. Shoot, I have no idea what ROM I was on. I guess I'll have to look up real quick. I'll have to look up what attempt I started on and use some math, I guess. Why not? So I'm just gonna be knocking out videos on my watch later list. Okay, so 1743. I'm on 1763. So I'm assuming, let's assume I'm on ROM. I was on ROM 20. Yeah, I don't know why I've never like had it crash before. That's crazy. Yeah, let's assume I was on ROM 20. Maybe 21. 20 or 21, I think. Because I think I skipped one of them. Yeah, I have no idea why it's crashed. That's so weird.
Grim Natway
Alright, hopefully I can
get
back.
White, who was well known for having a stutter. Grim Matchstick plays on the name with a little fire pun added in for Dragon Measure. My favorite death quote plays on this in phase 2. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you in the hot seat. It's got a stutter and a pun, and the stutter kind of sounds like someone panting with the ha, which is potentially another pun on hot. I think Grim Matchstick earns an A grade. There's a lot going on, and it's a demanding fight at the best.
Either this ROM or the next one, I think. I think it's gonna be the next one.
And the phases are all straightforward enough to stop it from feeling like a hindrance to the rest of the fight.
Okay, it wasn't this one.
Aisle 3, meanwhile, opens up with the game's other auto-scroller, Rumor Honeybottoms in Honeycomb Herald. She is also the only
Rumor Honey, ooh, Rumor Honey.
I'm gonna start with my biggest issue here, platforms. Whereas Grim's battle is horizontal, Rumor's battle is vertical, and the platforms are spaced such that the player can jump.
Wait, what did he rank the... Give it an A.
It's a demanding fight at the best of times, but the clouds never feel unfair in their placement, and the phases are all straightforward enough to stop it from feeling like a hindrance to the rest of the fight.
Excuse me.
Aisle 3, meanwhile, opens up with the game's other auto-scroller, Rumor Honeybottoms in Honeycomb Herald. She is also the only full boss encounter in the game that I actively dislike.
No, isn't that wrong?
I'm gonna start with my biggest issue here, platforms. Whereas Grim's battle is horizontal, Rumor's battle
I think it was this ROM, because I remember losing Swampert right before I got this thing, so...
2 levels at a time. The screen moves about at the same speed, which, since the screen is shorter vertically, means the player's movement is a lot more limited here than it was with Grim. But my
Watch it lose to the rival this time, yeah, for real. I'm not gonna... Well, actually, yeah, I'm gonna have to have it win to the rival, because... I could have the same amount of experience as I had before. I'm just trying to replicate the run. I probably will lose, actually. I got really lucky with the double flinch there on that first run, so I probably will lose to the rival, actually, but we'll see. This is the only rumor has it, ooh, rumor has it. Yeah, I need a flinch here. Even when luck plays a huge part in what attack or mini boss the player has to fight. Well, at least I know what. Yo, what's going on, Ziza? We're gonna have to keep going until we win again. But at least we know what ROM it is. So
it means you have to completely stop what you're doing and reorient yourself. To start off the Rumor Honeybottoms fight, Rumor leaves and calls the police on you instead. Worker bees occasionally fly around the space as a police bee flies in a straight line towards you, randomly stopping to drop a bomb that explodes a few seconds after into spikes, half of which can be parried. It's another phase like the cupcake that is just a little too simple for my taste, and it also has nothing to do with the rest of the fight's two big themes. He serves the queen bee, but it doesn't have anything to do with the magic transformation guidebook that leads the rest.
Double flinch was clutch. Yeah, it really was, honestly. It really was.
Rumor does appear, she has 3 magical attacks she rotates between. She either drops her head as a ball and chain before spitting bullets that ascend in an S-shaped pattern, summons 2 parryable orbs that follow the player for long enough that they'll bleed into the next attack, or summon 2 triangles that rotate and shoot off smaller parryable triangles. The difficulty of the spitting bullet attack is probably my favorite of the bunch. The unique hitbox she has, combined with the predictable movement, can be satisfying to move through, though it, like all the attacks, has the potential to be massively disrupted by bad platform luck. The other attacks are both okay, but pretty uninspired. Being attacked by a circle or a triangle compared to the other
IVs are going to be a little bit different every time, but I can't really control that.
Just isn't exciting, and the circle lasting into the next phase has always felt more irritating than anything. In regular, she rotates through these 3 moves in a set order, where she alternates doing the chain and summoning every transformation on expert. This
might take a while. I just need to get at least 1 flinch and not miss, and I should be fine.
Means that if the player is just able to get Rumor at the edge of phase 2 when she starts one of her transformations, then keeps on pressure through that and her transformation into the 3rd phase, it is incredibly easy to skip past the 3rd phase entirely. That said, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the 3rd phase is also her toughest phase, and often frustratingly so. After an incredibly long phase transition,
I have to freaking open up the tracker every single freaking time I...
Once she transforms, she rests at the bottom of the screen as a plane.
Start again.
This
is annoying. I don't have it automatically set up because I do my non-KAIZO IRONMON series on this emulator, so better attack and defense, I think.
Making it easy to die to the spawn of the attack. Her other attack is a buzzsaw, covering most of the arena and forcing the player onto one side. This attack does leave plenty of time.
This is so stupid. And what's dumb is my game never crashes. It's never. I don't think it's ever crashed before. That's the first and only time it's ever done that. So I have no idea what in the world went on there, like at all.
If you've done a lot of damage prior, this phase can end in almost an instant. Otherwise, it joins the first phase.
Wow, that's an awful nature.
As I mentioned, Rumor Honeybottoms is the only boss.
Watch this be the attempt I win.
The randomness in the platforms is way more disruptive than the occasional misfortune facing Peppy.
Be good, because those were awful IVs.
For what frustrations can exist. None of the puns or jokes go quite as far as the rest of the game too, which makes Rumor the only main boss in the game to earn a D grade. With that said, I do enjoy the final death quote: "Dominate and bominate. That's how I be." That's a pretty solid line.
You're a solid line.
Next, we have, alongside Cagney, one of the only 2 bosses in the game that boasts only 2 phases. Captain Briny Beard.
Gotta scroll down a bit for the Pokemon folder.
Visual mix of Bluto from Popeye and Davy Jones from the 1934 cartoon Davy Jones's Locker. Briny Beard opens with a phase that complicates as the player progresses through it. Throughout this entire
what's going on?
A barrel that moves its way across the entire top of the arena.
Oh, that's weird. The game's not loading.
It smashes down,
One.
staying inactive for a short time as it continues to move. The tell as to when it returns to aggression is incredibly easy to read at a glance, even when the fight is at its most chaotic. The first phase layers that threat with Briny Beard standing there and taking it like a champ. He has 1 attack at the start.
There's a feature where I can open the most recent ROM, which is actually pretty nice. I gotta use that for now and save me a few seconds from having to search for the ROM.
In regular mode, only a random 1 of these.
Alright, let's try this for like the 6th time.
The long delay on the squid occasionally does feel like it can make for an awkward moment, as even when other attacks unlock, it's
talk about Trey
when
awkward.
the squid's not out, since the barrel needs to move across the entire stage, it often leads to long stretches where the player is just attacking Briny Beard at absolutely no risk. Though the fight does get busy, I feel it doesn't get quite hard enough to justify how much of a non-issue this opening phase is, which is why I believe Briny Beard is often seen by the community as one of the easier bosses on Isle 3. After the first health gate, Briny Beard gains a whistle attack that summons 1 of 3 sea creatures, each of which attack in a unique way. The shark slams from the far side of the arena, covering most of it as it slides back away. Honestly, this works as a delayed pressing to push the player in towards
Just
the
need 1
which can also
flinch.
make dodging the barrel or eventually ship attacks more complicated. And
Frick.
though it can't get complicated if Briny Beard decides to pull out the
Oh, I
sword
didn't mean to
right
do that.
after, I've never personally seen it come out fast enough to be a problem. You can technically kill the shark too, but it's usually gone fast enough that I don't really see the point. The second sea creature, the purple squid, is something that it makes a lot more sense to target. When it rises up, it starts flinging ink projectiles around the dock. When the player is hit by one, they won't take damage.
This isn't annoying
It's
whatsoever.
not too bad on regular, but on expert,
This really just shows how freaking lucky I got. What is going on?
The damageless ink, or killing the squid while avoiding briny
This
beard
just
and
really shows how freaking lucky I
like
got
this complication a lot.
on that
It doesn't
first
deal damage, so the hard-to-dodge nature
attempt.
never feels
But I
like it.
cannot for the life of me win.
Is a parade of dogfish, hilariously
The thing is, I didn't even need
literal dogs.
the double flinch the first time. I just needed one flinch. I just need one flinch and I'm golden.
The same kind of threat as the next attack that's getting added in, which makes this often feel underwhelming. That said, it's also the only attack alongside Briny Beard's hand squid that's able to get the player to move away from
I got
Briny Beard.
like overly looking. I just need like slightly above average look. I don't need average look. Wait.
So it ends up
I only need slightly above average look. I don't need excellent look. And the first time I got excellent luck, so.
The ship begins to join in, chewing cannonballs like gum that it spits regularly along the bottom of the arena. Honestly, this is one of my favorite phase complications. It adds just the right amount of visual noise while still being charming and building towards the final phase, and the attacks are regular enough that they serve as a constant problem while not ever trapping the player. At the end of the first phase, the ship screams, throwing Briny Beard off
Frick.
the ship looks huge and impressive here, but
I don't even, the thing is, I don't even need to flinch him either. I just need him to miss too. That'd be great. Flinch or miss. The only problem is that I can miss too.
He stays there in the ocean, whereas even bosses like Wally Warbles who leave are still the final.
All right, I'm gonna stop opening the
shooting out spheres in a strange circular pattern
thing until I can win, just so I can get through these attempts faster.
Honestly feels I'm a fire in my laser reminiscent that stays on screen for a long time. The pattern is satisfying to learn, and being able to stay
I'll let you know, guys know when I finally get it done.
Ridiculously satisfying. The laser feels
This is taking forever, and if I keep loading the tracker every single time, it's just gonna take me 5 years.
Nothing is stopping you from just getting out of the way, and that means you can fake out the barrel to stay pressed in, or just need enough space that you can still dash to dodge it. Once you've learned that, the phase leans towards too simple. Having not touched the game,
Well, I gotta flinch, but my attack EVs must be so bad that I can't.
The Briny Beard died on the first try on regular and the second try on expert.
All right, well, I finally did it.
Down from some of the Isle 2 bosses overall, even if
it took way too long.
Personally, I think Briny Beard earns a B grade. Though he presents far more of a threat than Goopy did and doesn't have anything he does wrong, he ends up feeling like a standard or expected boss fight. There's no chaotic mechanics to learn, and nothing is huge in terms of spectacle or story as some of the other easier Isle 3 boss fights. In terms of his death quotes, Briny Beard will sadly lose to his ship's heartfelt
Alright, finally.
Quote, ha ha ha, ha ha. He's got a cute berry treasure line, but I love it when the usual
We are
joke
back
is twisted like it is with the
where we
ship
were,
literally just
kind of, almost.
laughing at you for dying.
Yeah, that was so weird that it like did that. I don't know why.
In high seas hijinks.
Oh, you freaking.
Her name serves as somewhat of a calamari pun, but I've seen a lot more theories about other levels of pun that may exist within the name. Calamaria is a genus of snakes, which might be hinting towards the Medusa part of her design, and Calamaria is also a suburb in Greece, which, especially with her accent in the Cuphead show being Greek, might have been an intentional pun there, especially with Medusa being a Greek myth. The Greek connections go even further than that, though, as her body turns to stone at the end of the second phase, specifically into the pose of the Venus de Milo, a famous Greek statue, especially once the arms fall off the body first to leave her in the same state that we found the statue in. All that aside, her characterization is also absolutely iconic. She's constantly flirting with Cuphead, exerting herself with attacks, turning her face into a bullhorn, doing this little arm wiggle thing when she goes underwater. She gets shocked when she loses her grip on the fishes she uses as a weapon, and the octopus that forms her hair coming back to life whenever she summons more animals is just, it's always been hilarious to me. Her fight
I've never noticed that.
and progresses in a great way. At the beginning of the fight, her design focuses on overlapping attacks even more than a lot of earlier bosses. She summons a creature to help, then doesn't attack herself to bombard you with 2 threats at a time. There are 3 sea creatures. Pufferfish, which I find the easiest to deal with, travel the screen vertically. Some can be parried, and all of them die to just a few hits of damage, which means using the bomb to clear a path is heavily rewarded, and it provides plenty of chances to charge up your super meter. Next is a turtle that moves forward, stopping 3 times to shoot out a spread. I find that this is either a non-issue in terms of combining with Kala's other attacks, or creates a brutal onslaught. The last animal is the strangest of the bunch. A seahorse, literally, using his lifesaver to
don't miss, thank you.
Water upwards while moving towards the player. This doesn't do any damage, but pushes the player upwards whenever they're in the water stream, which can either be a total non-issue or the most dangerous of the animals, depending on the attack it mixes with. Maria herself either blows out a few groups of ghosts that rush towards the player, or dives underwater to pull out a red or yellow fish. The red fish creates waves of bullets, some of which are parryable that the player has to dodge through. Both it and the ghosts are pretty simple overall. The most dangerous has always felt like the yellow fish, especially on Expert. It shoots an electric dolphin that tracks the player's path very quickly.
God forbid I get a trainer where they're not resisting bug.
Is fairly simple. Even more so because the yellow and red fish both jump out of Maria's hands as a huge damage box at the end of the attack, which means the player can really not reliably dodge anywhere in half of the screen, well tracked by two fast-moving obstacles and dodging bullets. Though there are these occasionally frustrating pairings, I still love the design of these simple attacks overlapping to create complicated and dynamic patterns. It helps keep the fight fresh regardless of how many times the player dives in, and each attack is simple enough to understand that, having made it to aisle 3, the main threat is being overwhelmed. The threats also work with her hurt box really well. Only her face takes damage, meaning the player's goal is to minimize their vertical movement. Meanwhile, every single attack encourages vertical dodging. Entering into her second phase, Maria is flanked by two electric eels that bite her hips.
Strict? Frick off, I'm not wearing
her head to reveal her true nature as Medusa. I love the scream and animation of this phase change. It is hilarious to me. And the phase serves as a great contrast to the first. Electric eels begin to emerge from the water around her, each spitting out bullets. A few aren't a problem, but in a horde, they absolutely cover the screen with damage, which ties really well with Maria.
Get in the freaking Pokemon Center.
The player can use their attacks and supers to keep the eels at bay, meaning the bullets are less intense. Meanwhile, Maria introduces the attack that defines her second and third phase, a green wave that covers most of the screen, petrifying the player. They can't shoot, they can't dodge, and they can't move, but once they press 22 buttons, they're able to move again, meaning the way to react is mashing violently. Ironically, I often find myself getting hit right after I unfreeze, throwing myself into a projectile more than actually being hit while frozen. There's also a great skill ceiling here. The gaze beam doesn't hit a player in the corner next to Maria's face, but that's a horrible spot to be in to dodge the eels. Keeping the eels in check in order to make the gaze nothing but a stalling tactic, or to be able to dodge more reliably in this corner, is incredibly satisfying, and it introduces the gaze's mechanic without it being too intense. The final phase is the one that has the greatest potential for frustration, but also feels like a really good climax to the encounter. Her body, as I mentioned prior, turns to stone, and her head begins to float into a reef, limiting the player to about a third of the screen at a time, a little bit less on Expert. There are 3 threats here, the first being a new variation of her gaze attack. This time, it comes out just in front of her face, meaning the player can push right up against her to avoid it, but that makes it harder to dodge her 2 more traditional attacks. The first being occasional vertical pillars, cutting the already restrictive space even further down, and easily trapping the player into damage if they stay too far back to avoid the gaze. The other attack are these toxic bubbles, which move forward abnormally slowly while also moving vertically to try to catch a player. This is the one place where luck can feel like it occasionally enters the equation, often working alongside the pillars to form a wall that the player doesn't have time to weave past before Maria sends out her next freezing gaze. But it's never enough to ruin the phase for me. The entire fight feels like it progresses through this story as the sea animals are chased away, and Maria becomes more and more feral and monstrous as she tries to escape. Overall, I think Maria is another S-grade boss. She's iconic for a reason. Her fight evolves from this chaotic mess to a clear, unique, and characterizing threat in a battle with a ton of animation Easter eggs, a great soundtrack, and generally exciting story thread, which makes it feel satisfying all the way through. Her death quotes are another batch that aren't my favorite, which seems to be a pattern in aisle 3, but I think I'd give it to Holy Mackerel. Is that your best effort? Mostly because I enjoy saying Holy Mackerel.
Bruh.
Oftentimes, when I hear people discuss boss difficulty, when the easiest boss in aisle 3 comes up, Sally's stage play in Dramatic Fanatic often enters into the conversation. And though I do think that she, Brineybeard, and Werner Vermin all have a shot at the title, that's never held Sally back as an encounter for me in the way it seems to hold her back for others. Namely, because Sally features one of my personal favorite battles. I've mentioned it in a few other fights going. If
we didn't miss that, I probably would have died.
But one of my favorite parts of a multi-phase boss fight is the progression of story throughout each phase. How the progression in the fight becomes more than a gameplay challenge, but an evolution of the themes of the fight, both aesthetic and metaphorically. Slave Knight Gale renewing his sanity to change the tempo of the boss fight, or one of my other favorite examples that I haven't spoken of yet, Kefka at the end of Final Fantasy VI, a boss that uses 4 phases to invoke an ascension from hell to purgatory to heaven to Kefka himself, who has now deigned himself as a god above it all. Though Cuphead doesn't exactly try to reference Dante's Inferno in the same way, my favorite boss fights makes it feel like you're going through an animated short film. And Sally uses the theater gimmick and combines it with my personal favorite hidden phase in the game to an extraordinary effect. The fight begins with Cuphead interrupting.
Wow, I missed twice in a row.
At least the performance of her wedding. She destroys her wedding dress while the priest and groom panic in the background. Then, as the first phase ends, she drives away with her groom, becoming a stay-at-home mother as her 2 children join in the fight and her husband puts on a sweater. After that ends, the fight evolves to a giant cardboard version of her using announced cardboard attacks, a phase that also ends up being very intentionally evocative of Final Fantasy boss design with the way attacks are called. Then, finally, with her Deus Ex Machina destroyed, she comes out for her bows, the cast bowing in the background, while the audience throws roses on stage. It just feels like a complete package. But the fight can also go in a completely different direction. If you stand on these cherubs in the first phase, an activity I have a bizarrely hard time doing when I'm not playing as Miss Chalice, then the chandelier in the background falls and kills her husband. She cries over his body, before moving to a nunnery, where nuns throw rulers at the player while the priest watches from the bushes instead. Then, a cardboard version of her husband joins her in an even more direct visual nod to Kefka, plus, the angel of the child they never had occasionally spins out to send a saw blade along the ground to damage you, on top of everything else. Then, for the bows, only the priest and nun appear, the baby never having had a real role, and the husband being dead. This entire fight's premise is just one of my favorites. Even before talking about gameplay, the setting and the way it ties its secret path into the game is incredible. This is my personal favorite secret phase in the game, even though it took me way more tries than I'd like to admit to learn how to reliably get onto those cherubs as Mugman. There are also a ton of great details, like the audience applauding in the foreground or the asbestos safety.
I genuinely did not know that fight had a secret phase.
As I mentioned earlier, the difficulty is the one place the fight lingers. The first and second phases of the fight are very similar, with Sally teleporting away in a parasol to slam down or jumping into the air to either spin towards the player or throw a fan that will linger on the ground for a short time. She also does a slow-blown kiss that exists more.
Wow, I cannot believe that didn't one-shot, to be honest.
Parries than as an actual threat. When she evolves to the second phase, she stops throwing the fan and starts generating these mice toys that crawl along the edges of the screen before dropping back on the player once they're above them. It does work really well to keep the stage busier, but it's still pretty simple compared to a lot of the other bosses in Aisle 3 that utilize unique mechanics to differentiate themselves. The third phase is probably the one that suffers the worst from the difficulty. She either spawns lightning that a player needs to dodge around, or spawns a meteor followed by a big wave. The meteor can be broken over.
I always get a counter those 2 grass tiles, dude, every single time.
But if the player equips Smoke Dash, they can just go through the big wave instead, meaning the only attack that the player ever needs to react to is lightning. In the fourth phase, hitting Sally can be occasionally frustrating. Her location in Aisle 3 often leads to her being one of the last bosses in the game, which means despite the fact that she's flying around the top of the arena while roses fall and the umbrella spins, it's still pretty easy to find a weapon that works well against her. Even with that disappointing difficulty, I still adore this fight. I also want to give a shout out to her song. Just after 2 minutes of music, of course, Christopher Madigan provides an extended series of drum solos to a tap dancer, and it's incredible. This jazz tap solo makes this one of my favorite tracks.
Watch this NPC right here get in the way.
And it is a absolute
Oh, wow.
tragedy that most players will just never reach.
Pleasantly surprised.
Though I do wish she was tougher, I cannot give Sally lower than an S grade. This fight is just
Really?
so charming to me with so
Fair
many
enough.
details and jokes in the background.
I mean, I really don't care that
I
much,
think my
but
favorite quote goes to
it's
phase
just
3
frick off,
because
Walrein.
it forces the rhyme so hard in such an endearing way. Good riddance, go away.
Oh my
Time
gosh!
for my soliloquy.
Frick
Of course,
off,
without
Walrein!
pronouncing words
What the
correctly,
heck?
you should be pronouncing it as good riddance, go away. It's time for my soliloquy. The forced rhyme is just so funny.
I'm gonna have to come back for this
Really
trainer. I
matches well
can't
with the ridiculousness of the death picture.
risk it.
The first of 2 evil scientists on Aisle 3, Werner Vermin in Marine Corps, is a Tom and Jerry reference put onto a German mad scientist boasting another absolutely ridiculous series of puns and jokes. Werner rides down in a hollowed-out soup can that, legally, is not Campbell's, shooting pieces of junk from a trebuchet or literal cherry bombs that hit the ground and shoot fireballs along the ground in a straight line. The cherry bombs are one of my favorite attacks to weave around, especially on Expert. Occasionally, he'll charge across the arena, forcing the players to either use parryable springs or the smoke dash. At the end of the phase, Werner moves to the center of the arena trying to set off a rocket that backfires and falls into his soup can, blowing it up, destroying his cigar, and leaving him beaten and scarred. Werner keeps fighting, however, moving between 2 vertical levels and using flamethrowers to cover one of the 2 floors. Bottle caps on the side also spin in at random, with the player dodging around them to position themselves well. Unlike other centrally located bosses, Werner actually still uses the whole stage, allowing players to move under or above him, and sometimes forcing them to when the entire wall of bottle caps decides to spin. Eventually, as Werner's tank breaks again, a giant cat breaks through the wall and eats him. Before I mention the
Yo, let's go. We got the Tanga berry. Who the frick knows what the Tanga berry does, dude? Like, just off the top of your head, I guarantee you nobody knows what the Tanga berry does.
Identified as Austrian and British war medals. which is where the connection between Tom and Jerry was made to a German mouse driving a tank. In World War I, German soldiers were referred to as Jerrys, and British soldiers were referred to as Tommies. On top of that, one of Germany's more well-known tanks in World War II was the, and please pardon my inability to speak German, Panzerkampfwagen Maus. Mouse, of course, is German for mouse. Hence, the German Jerry riding a mouse, a tank, before the Tommy
Lucario
enters the fight near the end. All the bottle caps also refer back to Cuphead's World and parody soda brands. King Cola dances between King Dice, King Kong, and King Cola in a great way, while Inkwell Soda just matches with the vibe of the world. Once the cat, Katzenwagen, which is German for cat cart, a pun that makes sense once you know how the phase ends, breaks through the back wall, he either vibes to the music or alternates between two attacks. He reaches a paw to the side, growing unnaturally.
Mr. Bibe. Mr. Bibe. Yeah, we just fought Mr. Bibe, guys. Let's go.
Attack is very inspired by the Cheshire.
All right, gym time. Let's go. If I can stop getting 50 million encounters in 5 seconds.
Then he occasionally does whatever that was and spawns mice ghosts that throw orbs at the player that explode.
Orbs.
Like the first phase, but this time some of the projectiles are parryable.
All right.
Ghosts can be killed with a little.
Let's see what berries we got available. We got Chesto.
Which can make the entire fight.
Yeah, none of those are useful, so we're gonna go Chesto.
The game refers back to the Cheshire Cat one more time as the cat's face falls off and onto the ground.
But here we go.
G'day. In the case of Werner Vermin, though, it turns out he's still been the boss.
G'day, go. How can we do it a long time ago? Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe? Nice, we didn't have to use a bug buzz on that fight.
Each and every one of Vermin's creations.
Love to see
it.
it.
Doesn't boast the same kind of secret phase detail that Sally does. The scale of the fight and the detail of the shifting backgrounds means, like Sally, I'm able to look past the difficulty and appreciate the charm that exists in this fight.
Nice.
At the end of the day, I am a sucker for a fight that
Fire Blast. Heck yes, I will take that.
Werner Vermin feels like a Tom and Jerry storyline as this mouse keeps
all right,
more and more
gym leader, let's go.
to try and come out on top. I think he earns another S grade. The deathline goes to his second phase, mostly because I look at it and I hear it being screamed by an Austin Powers villain.
Oh, frick off!
You will not win. Accents manifested in text via
They're poison.
My favorite writing tropes, and this line gives me more evil scientist vibes than the actual evil scientist that we'll be looking at next.
Well, that just guaranteed us losing, so that's great.
There's
a 1 poison. This is absolutely amazing game. Thank you. That's actually the second time in a row I've lost to the gym leader because of poison. I'm not even joking. Literally in the earlier stream, I lost to poison because I got poisoned on the very first Pokemon or the very first trainer. Well, actually, it might have been the first Pokemon of the first trainer. I don't remember. But what the frick are the odds of that? Of dying to poison in the first gym twice in a row? That's ridiculous.
Making a screen-wide laser until that generator is parried.
I just want to beat the first gym leader. Is that too much to ask? Can I just get a PB in this stream today? That'd be great. Well, a PB for the day anyway.
And once they're defeated, they'll switch
huge power is illegal.
Continues to overlap with the other surviving attacks, or any attacks that you've already adjusted. Once the antenna is destroyed, the robot tilts its head.
Wow, why did that do like nothing? I have huge freaking power. What? How did that do so little? Dude, Wolverine has to have like the best defense in the entire universe in order for that to not have done that. For it to have done that little. Like, what in the world, bro?
Towards it, or arms that cut through the center of the screen, pulling back and releasing vertical energy bullets out. The retracting arms are much more of a problem, namely because there's no warning when the vertical bullets shoot out, meaning that they'll cut the player's space in half and then often prove hard to avoid when combined with other attacks. Finally, when the bottom compartment breaks, large bombs home towards the player incredibly accurately. The player will need to destroy these eventually, which explode with a long lingering radius, or it will hit the player. Interestingly, the health of the bombs are actually increased in simple mode, making it harder to accidentally blow up the bombs. Once all 3 of the pieces are destroyed, the automation's heart is revealed, forcing the player to deal with all 3.
Oh, we're not gonna win this fight.
At this point, only
guarantee you that.
But it also has a great visual that it begins to get burnt and covered with ash once its health has been reduced by about half. I love how the entire first phase.
He'll need to hit himself like 50 million consecutive times in order for me to win.
Using the bomb to spread damage between 2 health bars, and the fact that every threat the robot offers feels like it needs to be taken seriously, goes a long way to make this phase feel like it belongs on the culmination.
Just kill me. I don't know. I'm making this fight going longer than I need to.
The robot breaks apart and the head rockets off screen. It begins to fly back and forth, with more of those bombs spawning with each cross of the screen. The issue is that the head moves fast enough that you spend most of the fight with the head either to the left of the player, and thus not interactable, or off screen. Having a super can skip most of the fight, which does help a lot, mostly because then you don't have to interact with this phase at all. Not because it's particularly challenging, but it's just really boring. His final phase,
You're
of course,
boring.
is somewhat
Wow, that was rude.
glorious.
I know.
Dr. Call starts to pilot his robot and embodies his inner Dr. Eggman, pulling out huge gemstones that shoot projectiles and spinning.
All right, left
projectiles
game.
are variable the entire screen.
Ugh,
Absolutely.
the worst
With
option.
only a few small moments of reprieve between barrages to recover. Now the pellets on their own would be too challenging, but they also combine with moving walls that force the player into a small portion of the screen, especially on expert, which leaves effectively no space to squeeze through. There is a satisfying rhythm to be found within the pellet.
Oh,
Keeping the pressure
I
on.
thought Focus Punch was.
First is one
Never
of the
mind.
most satisfying phases to pull off once you know it.
I knew if I got hit, I would flinch or whatever, but I couldn't remember if it attacked the next turn or the same turn. I couldn't remember.
It looks cool, but it blocks visibility a lot. And when you combine a tight space with hard to predict bullets and remove the player's ability to see, that has the potential.
This fight, I think, was the fight that took me the longest to beat, but I don't think it's the hardest. Like consistency-wise, I think the Devil is the hardest boss fight, in my opinion.
Once you know what to expect, it is still technically dodgeable, and the great moveset can start to shine again. But the lack of visibility just
Like once you get the pattern down, it's really not that bad.
It also uses its music incredibly effectively. Junkyard Jive is an intentionally repetitive piece of music, but that ends up meshing with the fight really well, especially in the third phase where the player is fully drawn into dodging a single attack. The repeating melody of dun 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 really helps to keep the tension of the fight at an absolute peak. I absolutely adore the first phase, and I think the third phase is one of the most satisfying challenges the game presents. But that lackluster second phase and frustrating visibility in the third means I can't give it the highest honors, so he instead sits within the A grade. For the best death line, I have to go with, "I have the perfect equation to hinder your evasion." Not because it's particularly great, but because the others are just the robot talking, and that's not as entertaining to me as things like Briny Beard's chip laughing maniacally. Like with Cagney Carnation and Grim Matchstick, Isle 3 presents a boss clearly designed to be the last obstacle before entering Inkwell Hell and taking down the final two bosses, being the Phantom Express and Railroad Wrath. And this is another fight.
I'd give you $1 million if I win this fight.
With an evolving move set like most of the bosses in Cuphead, the Phantom Express ends up more similar to the Root Pack. Each phase is a different ghost riding the express, with the player moving their way up the train as they beat each phase. Throughout the entire fight, the player is on a small platform on an adjacent track, and by parrying the wheels on either side, they're able to move left to right. The fight complicates this with flying minions.
There's no freaking way.
And ghosts in the third.
Oh, how in the world did I win that? Literally, how did I win that?
Over one of the wheels, forcing your cart to move.
I cannot believe that I won that. That's ridiculous. He got like 1 million he just kept spamming Destiny Bond. What the frick is wrong with him? Give me my money.
The first phase immediately benefits from this unique.
No. I was hoping no one was in here. No.
With the ghost taking up a third of the screen.
All right, what's your pen count?
And with the eyes coming out of his hand near the middle of the screen, the player usually wants to stay to the far left, meaning they have to handle the pumpkins alongside dealing with the barrage of enemies and keeping pressure on the boss.
Dude, I only said I'll give you guys $1 million to win this fight because I genuinely was like, I thought that it would be impossible. My moves are inaccurate. My super slow. Slow King is like way better than Cellos. And he just spammed Destiny Bond and got paralyzed the whole entire time. He didn't do a single damage to me. Not only did I win, but he didn't do a single hit point of damage. You cannot make this up. You cannot make. Ooh, Glalie with stab ice punch. I like that. I like that. We're gonna go try to get that Glalie.
Can provide the players huge windows. When the player is in control, the boss feels completely unthreatening. But as soon as the player loses control, it feels like there is nowhere safe to stand. That's a design concept carried on to the third.
Carry on my wayward son.
Spheres. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what these are supposed to be, but two of them burst out of the cars on the train and start dancing. This phase swaps the pumpkins for ghosts, which combine in a really threatening way with the plate's main attack. Breathing
that took like forever.
Small length away from the wall and forces a player to the far side if they aren't hiding in that small space between where the attack starts and the wall. However, if the player is standing there, they'll find the ghosts particularly threatening, as it ends up very hard to get rid of the ghosts early enough without risking accidentally moving your platform directly into the lightning. Those plates don't have much health, especially if the player uses spread or crackshot supers to take one of them completely out of the picture right away. Like the conductor, this phase goes from absolutely fine to out of control really quickly in a really satisfying way.
Oh, I kind of like this Mon. I actually kind of like him. Stab Ice Punch is really, really hot. I'm not gonna lie. No pun intended. Doesn't even make sense. I'm gonna run this Glalie for the YOLOs. It's just rare I get to run a Mon with such a great stab move.
On Expert, the pumpkins do return here, but the only attack that the train uses is spitting out a circle of bones that will go downwards until it reaches the same vertical level as the player, and then
Ability what is it? Doubles evasion when confused? I mean, that's not horrible. Oh, frick off with your frickin' earthquake, dude. Really? Wow. Of course you have nature power.
I love the progression of this
Frickin' jerk.
Way up the train and facing the ghosts along the way, combined with the scale of all the bosses, makes the Express feel like a major threat, even if the movesets excel through their simplicity. The platform interacts really well with every single phase, and the
oh, it's nature? Oh, I didn't even notice it's nature, honestly. Honestly, I don't even pay attention to the nature. I just pay attention to the stats, because it's like, the nature's whatever. Doesn't really, the nature doesn't ultimately matter in terms of like what the stats are, because if you think about it, the stats could have been the same with a different nature. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm not really sure if you understand what I'm trying to say, but the point is, I really care about the stats, not the nature. Sometimes sure, the nature can be unideal, but again, you can't really like control it. Neither can you control the stats either. Like, you can have a bad nature on a good mon and it still be amazing, and you can have a good nature on a bad mon and it still be bad. So it's like, I don't, because the stats are completely random. So
the only two bosses that are built up in any way prior to their fights in the base game are King Dice and the Devil, and they both pay off pretty well. This is the longest fight in the game by a major margin, so long that it's balanced around the player getting healed throughout the fight. Rather than facing King Dice, the player lands in the middle of a game, rolling dice via parrying to advance 1, 2, or 3 spaces, and the player can control the timing of the dice once they've figured it out. Each number on the board represents a different.
Yo, we're gonna self-destruct.
Required before the player eventually reaches King Dice. On top of that, a random one of the 3 bosses within each section has a
shit, water spout. I didn't even need to finish seeing that in order to know that at one shot.
Overswear, but that doesn't respawn any mini bosses, meaning the player still has a safe path throughout, assuming they can correctly control the dice. The boss rush vibe of this encounter also makes this a great penultimate moment, making King Dice feel like an absolute scumbag as he confidently mocks the player while throwing minion after minion after them. It makes King Dice and the Devil feel like they're providing massively different, completely unique threats. So now it's time to run through King Dice's court. The first boss is also the only boss I can't reliably no-hit among the 9, the Tipsy Truth. I've heard most people find this boss easy, but my brain just refuses to operate here. There are 3 drinks named by the art book as
got like, oh, it's glass cannon though.
Jeanette clones the green olive on her tooth.
No special moves, which is really bad.
Around, occasionally shooting
we need a freeze here in order to win.
Falls over, covering the bottom of the screen with damage that needs to be jumped over. Well, Romulus will occasionally
no, even if we got the freeze, we still would have lost.
None of these moves are hard to dodge in a vacuum, but the challenge I've always found is that the tells for the attack aren't near where Cuphead is. So I need to watch the troop, but that means I
used to like Shift Tree, but the longer I've played Pokemon, the less I've come to like it. Its typing's awful. It's kind of ugly if you think about it. And its moveset's
Chips is constantly whooping and yee-hawing as he bounces up and down. I love the intro to this fight of King Dice stacking Chips into existence. It really helps King Dice feel present in the encounter. Only Chips' face here takes damage, but he takes long enough between attacks that it's pretty easy to punish. After bouncing for a short time, Chips spreads out and moves across the arena, with the player needing to dodge through the gaps.
I never have Pure Power, honestly.
This actually poses is pretty RNG dependent. Some patterns barely require the player to jump, whereas others require a couple of precise jumps and dodges.
I did like nothing. How did I do more damage?
Though there can be bouts of bad luck.
I can't believe I got to the lab, honestly.
I go for in the first set if I didn't bring the smoke dash. The final of the first.
Well, I'm gonna have fun not being able to run away from anything.
Go for it if I did have that smoke dash equipped. since that charm gets rid of the most significant threat that he presents. Mr. Wheezy's fight takes place in 2 ashtrays with a pit between them, and has another great intro with King Dice lighting him up. He sits in one of the ashtrays, spitting a few spinning
Escape.
predicted first, but move pretty slowly, and they even have blind spots where the player can
Literally everybody gets that right, so it's like,
After
oh, look at that 60%.
pop up in the other tray, forcing the player to leap over. Devil's cigarettes fly up in the middle of the screen.
I need to control my
jumping through can be fairly precise in the short window the player has to get away from Mr.
Oh, I can't run away.
Unless,
What
of
is
course,
that?
you have the smoke dash, in which case the fireballs are the only thing that
Nothing
pose any kind of
remarkable in that
threat.
route.
Once he goes down, he also has my favorite death animation of the bunch, as King Dice puts him out with his heat.
My game's
It's
gonna
also
crash
one of my
again,
favorite
isn't it?
stages to make use of your
Game's
death
kinda
vulnerability,
laggy.
because you can duck behind the boot stomp or you can bounce in the fire as you
If
wait.
it does, I'm not
Starting
gonna
off the
cry
second
about
set
it.
of bosses is Pip and Dot, a domino duet riding a swing with the top sporting a stovepipe hat and the one on the bottom wearing heels. They shoot each other a flirty glance before they start their machine pulled straight from Saw up. The floor constantly pulls towards a wall of spikes, with huge sections of that floor
Takes it straight from Saw, like the
player
movie?
is pretty restricted in terms of movement, especially when 2 long spike sections spawn back to back, though it never has the chance to feel as unusually precise as Chip's hat
Yep,
potential.
cool.
On top of that, Pip will occasionally raise his hat, spawning a domino bird thing that flies around the edge
A
of the
domino
closing the
bird
space
thing.
or both open their surprisingly toothy maw to spit out D20s that bounce across
Aw,
the table.
what the heck is maw?
It all works together to really make the player feel. Though the fight's intimidating for a new player, it's actually pretty simple overall once you stay calm. This fight usually ends up being the battle in the second set that I play through. Next up is Hoppus Pocus, who boasts the most groan-worthy pun for a name among King Dice's court in the best way possible. King Dice is back for this intro before
Oh, Mr. King Dice.
completely changes the difficulty level of this.
I don't feel like yelling.
Hoppus summons rabbit skulls that spin around the player, stopping with a single opening as they press.
Dunsparce.
Directions are perfectly fine to dodge. The diagonal downward
I like
paths
Dunsparce.
are the challenge comes
I
from.
love Dunsparce, actually. One of my favorite Pokemon.
With the smoke dash, however,
Unfortunately, it's not good in Kaizo,
direction of the other.
because the
It's
moves
just to
are
press
randomized
threat
into the abilities
Other
and
than
the,
that, Hoppus summons bubble card suits at
stats.
the top or bottom of the screen, with the card suit always being
So-
parried. If the bubbles are at the bottom of the screen, it's simple to land on a parry, but jumping up into parries has always been a much tighter task. On top of that, this boss fight is an absolute
Go see what the
nightmare
lake encounters are.
who parries by dashing
Hopefully they're not
horizontally.
just
I haven't personally
absolutely
fought
awful.
bosses in this chalice, but since the player can't parry these, I imagine a perfectly timed invincibility roll is the only way to get through damageless. The sixth and final of the second
Big
set
Roth
of bosses
isn't
is
awful,
Fear, who
actually.
also serves as one of the 2 plain mini-bosses among the court. Fear
Yeah,
is a
ball,
skeleton
I
horse
guess.
watching a horse race below him,
Woke up,
with his name being a reference
Steel
to
Wing?
Farlap, an Australian racehorse
Could be,
from the late
could be
1920s.
pretty
Woke up
promising.
racers will rise up
Camera
to
up
the
is
player
just,
and defeat
ew.
you, and Fear will regularly
Honestly, I'd take either of these. Whichever level 6 I find first, I'll catch.
Of horseshoes. This is also a theory, but the horse movement in the race
It's
feels like
ethereal. Get it?
the 18th
Setup moves are actually really broken in Platinum for some reason. If you don't have a setup move, you're pretty much like way less likely to get anywhere.
Projectiles all have a very predictable pattern, and
So ideally, I get Vigoroth.
Though I like Dr. Call more, I think this is the better use of a busy foreground. Personally, I think the second set of 3 bosses is the most challenging, as there aren't any completely free bosses among them like in the other sets. And I think the middle of these 3
And if
sets
it's
is the
bad, I'll
hardest.
just try to get past the first few trainers and then pivot again with the fishing rod.
Confrontation with the king. Starting the final set is Pure Roulette, whose name and death screen combine really well. She's a roulette wheel that dances, specifically pirouetting as she moves across the screen.
Premier Ball is actually like kind of perfect for Vigoroth. Tell me it's not. Literally has the like same exact color scheme.
With roulette attack being a collection of projectiles with a single one missing, which implies an empty chamber. Very clever.
Hey, there we go.
Outside of that raining projectile attack, Pure Roulette dances back and forth across the
All right, have a good
With
attack.
smoke dash, the
Oh
player
wow, your
uses
attack is your worst stat.
attack is a balancing act of flipping these parryable
All right, yeah,
punches.
we're gonna have to pivot with this thing.
Chips don't stay flipped for long.
At least it's got good
Pure
speed, I
Roulette
guess.
delay moving across the
Yo,
stage.
what's going on, Shadow?
It's satisfying, though smoke bomb being so
You have a
near
Pokemon
is
rarer than a
somewhat
shiny?
impressive when you have it. But
1
the
out of 3.
main boss
Oh my
is-
gosh.
well, I don't know how to describe him. Some
Ha
bosses
ha ha,
are so
very funny.
impressive, so
That
overwhelming,
that
they're
Spinda is very
there are so many attacks that are already
interesting.
insane to learn, and then you imagine adding minions
It got me out of the lab though, so I honestly can't
It's
complain.
absolutely brutal. Thankfully,
I
Mango's
honestly
team is
cannot
not that
complain.
way, though he holds a similar
All right, let's try to
arc
get past
to
these trainers so I can go pivot again.
tags of their game. With that said, I can say pretty definitively, Mangosteen is harder than Miss Noble, so he's got that going for him. He watches the player for a while, then shoots a single tracking projectile that's pretty.
Wait, honestly, should I go for
Sharp
Skuntank?
blocks that jump across the screen in an
Skuntank's
arc,
not bad.
sometimes the player might even need to
Got a
keep
good typing anyway.
Compared to even Isle 1 bosses,
Yeah, let's try
Mangosteen
to go for
is
Skuntank.
quite simple, and feels honestly out of place as one of the final
I didn't even know
bosses.
Skuntank was in
That
this
said, I
round.
usually fight him on my runs because it's pretty easy and
Better
there's
than
no-
risking
especially
getting
guys
past those
like
trainers just to get
Pike.
another pivot, so.
Also, why does he have teeth?
And plus, if the Skuntank's bad, I could just do the same exact thing. Just get past the trainers to pivot. I mean, there's literally no reason not to get the Skuntank.
Cuphead is a game defined by fast, snappy combat, and Mr. Chimes goes against every part of that. The final plane mini-boss, Mr. Chimes moves around the screen like a DVD logo, which means there are a lot of times
Need to find the level 6.
and thus can't be damaged. The player just has to dodge and wait until he's moved somewhere that the player can hit again. On top of that, Mr. Chimes is invincible on top of memory game. The player has to match 2 cards, then Mr. Chimes becomes damageable and starts clapping his cymbals to release some damaging magic notes until he hits a health gate. Then you'll need to play memory again, and if you mess up, he starts to speed up and can figure it out. This gameplay loop makes this fight take absurdly.
Come on, where's this level 6? Ah, blah, blah, blah.
It is an absolute mess. Took almost 2 minutes to get through the mini boss. The actual fight against King Dice proper on this same attempt took
that's the
30
longest
seconds.
mini
Mr.
boss
Chimes
of
brings
all
the
the
entire boss
King
fight
Dice.
to a screeching halt, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone who intentionally chooses to fight Mr. Chimes when they reach King Dice. After getting to the end of the board, the player finally faces King Dice.
I think speedrunners do actually, because there's a glitch that makes you beat him pretty much like instantly.
Jazz singer who was rotoscoped dancing and singing into a couple of animation classics. The song Heidi Ho Man is why King Dice says Heidi Ho in his death screen. His Smash Bros. Spirit picture is just a Cab Calloway picture, and he even recreates some of the famous dances one-to-one in the animated show. Not only does King Dice have a jazz number he sings at the end of each aisle, performed by the extraordinary Alana Bridgewater. She kills the absolute hell out of that song, by the way. But his attacks have his gloved hands on the ground and will dance, exactly mimicking classic Cab Calloway dances. In terms of the actual attack, it's a parade of cards coming out of those dancing hands, now reduced to only spades and hearts.
Dear Lord, I've seen 10 Skuntank, not a single one is level 6. What the frick?
Going parryable card to parryable card, before getting a moment to rest and doing the whole thing again. On release, all 4 suits appeared, but I'm assuming they removed diamonds, so
thank you. Oh my gosh.
Parryable, but then they wanted there to be just one of each suit. The phase is difficult to execute at first, but it's incredibly satisfying. There's no tricks or surprises here. It's just
Honestly, it's taking me so long to find it. Just catch it, please.
King Dice is an incredibly successful villain. The combination of his
I gotta run. I can't risk it.
strong design and the entire build of
Iron Tail Fire Blast, not bad moves though, honestly.
I'm not gonna hold it against his grade.
Ash raid, yo, we're getting raided?
A lot less satisfying with Miss Chow.
Hold up. Welcome in, everybody. Oh. Yo, is this Ash that just came in, the one that is raiding me? I think so. Awesome. Dude, thanks for the raid. Guys, go sub to Ash if you haven't. Welcome in. We're doing some KAIZO IRONMON. What were you guys streaming? What was y'all streaming? Thanks for the raid. I appreciate it, dude. Let's get it. Right now we're looking for a level 6 Skuntank, and it's taking me like 50 million years. That's what we're doing right now. I found one, but it almost killed me. So I can switch to and play Mario Kart World with viewers. Nice, dude. I'm so glad you got a Switch 2. Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun grinding out the free roam in that game for the past few days. Yeah, I really enjoy Mario Kart World for sure. I'm glad you got the Switch 2 though. That's awesome. Are you planning on getting Legend ZA when it comes out? I already pre-ordered it whenever I went to GameStop to get my Switch 2. You did? Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, dude, I'm super excited. I hope it's good. I'm on the fence. It looks, there's some parts of it that I'm excited for, and there's other parts of it I'm not super excited for. So we'll just see how it turns out, I guess. All right, I'm gonna play the video back. We're watching YouTube videos while I'm playing this because
But it doesn't have the same rhythm as using
why not?
Parry.
I'm not monetized. What is YouTube gonna do? Destroy my channel or something like that?
If I had to rank the mini bosses, it would go Mr. Chimes.
Okay, mixed attacker. Honestly, not bad. BRB, no problem. Honestly, I don't mind running this thing. Decent moveset.
I think I have to give the award to who's also my least favorite boss, Mr. Chimes. Monkey See, Monkey Doom.
Monkey See, Monkey Doom. That's actually pretty good.
In today's video, we have the final battle with the devil in one hell.
Wait, what ranking did he give it? S? Okay, yeah, I'm not shocked.
And finishing up the base game and today's video, we have the final battle with the devil in one hell of a time. Like King Dice, the devil is pretty well set up as the game's final threat. The thin and gaunt design, inspired by the Hell's Bells short from Disney's Silly Symphonies, manages to land right in that golden zone between
tail glow?
And
okay, no reason to freak out.
Devil running a casino. Right off the bat, the 3D effect as he leans forward and the scream from Cuphead or Mugman feels great.
Dear Lord.
This cements that this is the final challenge you need to overcome, especially since both boss themes,
I don't see a scenario where I win this, unless he just misses like a bunch. I don't know.
The first phase features the
This is
devil
not looking
sitting on
good.
his throne,
We need you to miss like
regularly
3 times in a row.
fragile devils that'll run
Frick.
across the arena, warning you which side they're about to pop out of in the background. Even if the player is pretty close to the edge, directing their attack to where the devil spawns can clear the threat pretty quickly. The devil himself is fairly high up and only takes damage on his pretty small head, and he cycles between 2 types of attacks. First are summoned projectiles, one of which is always parryable. 4 bubbles that start bouncing around the arena is often the easiest to dodge. Since they take a moment to start moving, you can occasionally even get rid of the parryable bubble right off the top if it spawned at the bottom. The next creates 6 fireballs that shoot towards the player one after the other, staying in a straight line from their original shot. This does force the player towards the edge of the arena really well, which makes it both hard to keep pressure on the devil, while also not being overwhelming if you're playing defensive.
Chuckle, unironically, is actually kind of good in
attack to handle in this first phase. 5 flames spawn with the middle
KAIZO.
parry. The 4 outside form a square that rotates on itself while moving back and forth. Keeping pressure on the devil here is even harder than it was on the 6 flames, and the attack goes on long enough that it remains a consistent challenge to dodge for the.
I need like a million crits in a row in order to win this fight.
Pretty early on, it becomes an absolute nightmare. On top of those summoned, the devil also has 3 thematic transformations.
Not to mention I can't miss.
Moves together and forcing the player to stall in the air through either a well-timed dash or stalling with an EX move, or turns into a snake that weaves across the stage.
That's so funny. Chuckle has defend order. That's actually kind of amazing for Chuckle. Like for if it, you know, it had regular stats, which it doesn't in this game. But
that just slams near the player. The spider head keeping its hurt box does keep the attack engaging, even if it loses the theme, and the visual of the spider does seem inspired by the spider in Hell's Bells. Overall, the first phase is very chaotic, and I've always personally found it to be the hardest part of the boss fight.
yeah, first phase is the devil is definitely the hardest for sure. 1,000,000% agree.
As flames close off the arena above. I particularly enjoy the fact that his trident seems to also lose its bones and slough onto the ground with his skin. The player lands on a series of 5 floating platforms, moving up and down.
Alright, give me a licky runner, please. With return, sword stand. No, return, dragon dance, earthquake, shadow ball. Give it to me.
Poker chips fall, making one of the platforms dangerous and forcing the player to move. The chips start on either the far left or far right, and then move across the screen, looping around at the end. The rest of the second phase is
gonna get bronze on, man.
compared to other late game bosses. The attacks all have long pauses between them, and they're all pretty simple. The 2 eyes merge together, creating a small axe that spins out in progressively larger circles, or he turns his head to the side, creating a parryable bomb that comes out of his ear and explodes a few moments later, covering almost
Ouch.
At the end of the day, though, there's usually only one thing the player needs to worry about.
Yo, we're about to get to the year that the
platforms and how best to position
Declaration of
himself,
Independence is signed. Let's go.
From the first phase is chaos. The third phase is the biggest challenge within this environment. The outside platforms fall away, making the falling chips more of a recurring threat. The platforms also start to move up and down faster and with more extreme, getting more and more vertically out of sync with each other. Because of this, dodging the chips can become even more of a risk on top of the frequency, because now you actually have to jump instead of just dashing. The rest of the attacks here are all minion-based. Purple minions dropped on either side that shoot skulls, making dodging the chips even more complicated, or these little flies pressed out of his forehead that come spinning down towards the player. Taking the time to kill the minions makes the phase much safer, because this phase can get really busy. But after you've prioritized the minions, he's not
You
able
can
to
put us to
provide
sleep,
a threat
right?
until he
No,
resets.
it's just confused.
The
It's not
final
worth it
phase
then.
drops away another set of platforms, leaving the player on just a single one as the devil begins to cry and scream. Tears
I actually might
fall
win
on
this
each
one.
side as poker chips keep falling on this one place, forcing the player to jump
Wow,
off
barely.
the platform, maneuver around the tiers and the chips. On regular, that's not too demanding.
Mind reader,
The tiers are falling ridiculously fast on
or
expert,
forget
to the
Thrash.
point using invincibility's super art is often
I like no speaker defenses. If I'm able to pivot, it'll be
I've never
nothing
found
short
it
of a
particularly
miracle.
satisfying phase, especially since the death screen doesn't change between any of these 3 final phases. Though it's an amazing fight, it does fall short of the best in my opinion. It feels like a final boss and the scale is larger, but the simplicity of the second half of the fight does hold it back somewhat. The breakdown is great, but the phase that joins it has never clicked for me, though it does work a lot better when playing as Miss Chalice with her double jump. Overall, I think I'd give it an A grade. It's a great boss, just not one of my personal favorites. The death quotes are also some of the most disappointing in the game, but the art of the second one really carries it. Anyone who opposes me will be destroyed. It's pretty straightforward, but it does decently well. Unless, of course, he was just having a breakdown, in which case it seems pretty out of place to go from him crying and screaming to anyone who opposes me will be destroyed. And with that, that is all 19 of the bosses in the base game of Cuphead analyzed. That said, we're not done. We still need to take a taste of the delicious last course, which boasts another 6 bosses and 6 mini-bosses, all of whom we'll be breaking down next time in a slightly shorter video. Originally, this was all just going to be one video, but even just the recording of session of this
Did you ever
has
do
taken
that?
almost 3.5 hours, and the script is 55 pages. So I
Doesn't seem
figured
like it.
I should get this out because it's been over a month. But thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the delicious last course.
All right, let's find the next video. My watch later playlist. Where in the world is my watch later playlist section? There you go. Off now. All right, next video we're gonna put on let's watch which captures can beat Mario
Odyssey.
Yeah.
The literal answer to this question is 0. The game isn't programmed to ever let a Goomba, or any other capture for that matter, make it from the start of Cap Kingdom to the end of Moon Kingdom. So I'm going to have to test this question in a slightly different manner. I'm going to let every capture start at the beginning of every kingdom from Cap to Moon. If that capture can collect 124 moons across every kingdom, it is considered a winner. Now, before we get started, I want to set some ground rules. All captures must start from roughly the same spot in front of the Odyssey on a fresh save file of the kingdom. Uncapturing is illegal.
Oh, that's why. That's how I can see the things. I have to hover over it and I click it.
Loading new areas. As an example, when I enter Shiveria as the Goomba, I'll fall into the room as Mario. This is considered fine as long as I recapture the Goomba before doing anything else. Lastly,
oh yeah, I forgot. Relicanth is like unnecessarily hard to catch for some reason.
I want to find a winner. To do this, each capture is going to receive 2 scores, one being how many moons the capture can collect entirely on its own, while the other is how many moons the capture can collect with assistance from 2-player mode Cappy. Each category will have a
talk about a glass.
with a definitive
Yeah, I'm
best
just kidding.
capture being determined by combining the 2
To be honest, this thing is the opposite of a glass cannon. Should I use it? Kind of slow, but it's decently bulky in that moveset though. It's just insane. Well,
now, before we get started,
it's alright, I guess. Got Stab Crab Hammer. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, I'll try running it.
Like if you put the pole capture at the Odyssey,
I really just caught it because it was faster than Wingle, but
this list generally includes things that
actually not horrible.
Things that can only move in a small area around their spawn, sorry Cactus fans, and captures that are hard-coded in weird ways where you just can't place them at the Odyssey and have the game work. The full list is on screen now if you're curious and want to pause. I've also included my reasoning for every capture in the description in case you want some extra reading. This leaves us with 28 competitors. I'm honestly not confident in a lot of these, and I'm unsure of who will actually be able to get the most moons, so to make things a bit more interesting, I'm going to be testing them in order based on my personal predictions. If you want to make your own, feel free to pause the video and leave a comment with your guesses, whether it be a full list or just your top 3. Without further ado, my prediction for the worst capture in Super Mario Odyssey is... Part of what screws over the Podoboo is the format. If every capture has to start at the Odyssey in roughly the same spot, and you're a capture...
The only reason I keep beat up is for
anything but lava, it is impossible to collect a moon. Even if you're in a kingdom that has lava, you can't reach it without dying as you spawn in. You might think this is unfair, but even if I were to place the Podoboo in lava in Luncheon, all I'd be able to do is collect one moon and then die. But third, you say, what about this moon? Or I'm sure you could get that moon with 2-player mode. Well, the thing is, there's not a lava path from the area by the Odyssey to reach.
Those comments actually not horrible. My defenses are really good, so.
It does eventually open up, but that would require me to get a ton of story moons on land, and we already know that isn't going to work. The Podoboo earns a final score of 0 moons in single player and 0 moons in co-op.
What a shock.
Again, if you think I'm being unfair by not placing it in lava and Luncheon, you can give both of these a 1. Conceptually, the RC car is a really funny capture to try and beat Mario Odyssey with. Like, it's not gonna work, it is super buggy, but it's still awesome. Now, the reason I'm giving this capture the worst prediction out of all the captures that can't jump is because of how short it is. There are not many moons that just sit on the ground. The ones that do often exist later in the story, and I'll be honest, I don't think an RC car is going to be able to beat Spewart or even get that far in the first place. I started the run in Cap Kingdom and met what will be the first major stoppage for mini captures in Mario Odyssey, stairs. It's just stairs. So, to no one's surprise, an RC car cannot beat Cap Kingdom.
What?
Unfortunately, in Cascade Kingdom, we run into a similar issue. The RC car can make it to the first moon rock, but has no way of breaking it to collect the actual moon inside. I was optimistic for a moment when I learned the RC car could push the chain chomp directly into the rock, but that doesn't actually break it and instead just causes the chomp to clip through. Sand Kingdom is where things start to get interesting, and for good reason.
Ooh, Ross is
A
picking.
huge open area should be easier for most captures to navigate, so hypothetically Sand is probably the best kingdom for the worst captures. I tested the obvious things first, but the RC car can't fit into the employees only room, and there's an invisible wall preventing it from going on poison, so it can't do the Jaxie driving sub area either. This left me with the Sheep Moon, which should be doable for just about every worthless capture in this challenge because most of them can scare sheep just like Mario. However, the RC car is a bit weird. This could get a moon, but I don't think it will.
I hate how
There's a
inaccurate
chance
crabhammer
it
is.
might not.
Why is Zatu so
Oh
friggin'
my God,
bulky?
I
What the
pushed the
crap?
So to give a technical explanation for what's going on, captures aren't actually what scares the sheep. It's the Mario actor that is invisible and following you when you're in a capture. With the RC car, the Mario actor doesn't actually follow the RC car itself. It follows the man controlling it, who's at the Odyssey. So instead of scaring the sheep,
That's
I have
hilarious.
to slowly push them inch by inch until they're inside the pen. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes pushing sheep unless the RC car can actually grab the moon after it spawns. So I cheated and used Mario to push the sheep and did some quick testing where it became pretty obvious the RC car could not reach the moon. Unfortunate, but at least it saved me some time. I'd exhausted basically every possible moon at this point, so I decided it was time to bust out two-player mode and
Just
see
close
if I could
combat
at least
all these
get some
1.1
grab.
trainers, because why the frick not?
This doesn't work.
Crabhammer misses,
Not
so I
because
don't
the
want
moons
to
are
mess
too
with that.
high, but because two-player mode Cappy has his movement restricted to a circle around Mario, who we already mentioned earlier is technically at the RC car driver. No matter how far I drive,
Fake out's
Cappy can
pretty
go
good,
no
but
further
again,
than the area around
we need
the
beat up for
Odyssey.
Shedinja.
This is really unfortunate.
And really just
Continue
ghost
to create
types. It
problems
could be
as I try
troublesome.
out more kingdoms. Like on the Lakeshore is a moon that would 100%
Which really sucks, because
be
I
possible
think it would
if
be pretty
Cappy
nice,
followed the
but we
RC
need
car.
double kick for
But he
consistency, we
doesn't,
need
so he
crabhammer
can't
for power,
spawn
we need
in
close
the
combat
first
for
place.
power,
Another sign of hope
and we
was
need
the
beat up for
gravity of the
Shedinja.
footage. I can spawn
Plus
this
ghost
way, but
types.
unfortunately it's impossible to get
So,
away
as much as I'd love fake out, I
Rolling around is the opposite.
realistically
The
cannot
game
take it.
just isn't programmed to let the RC
Not
car
risking
hit
the
rocks,
entire run.
You can't even spawn it in. These are some of the only points in the run where I had a chance to be optimistic. Most of the time I just had to try things I knew wouldn't work because there was
We need Dragon
literally
Dance, that's what we
nothing
need.
else I could do. Alright, can the RC car beat Cloud Kingdom? Let's find out. Give it a sec. Give
Alright.
it a sec. Gotta line myself up. No! But stuff like this is honestly preferable to the sheer number of moons that are just barely out of reach. So I guess being stuck at the beginning of Metro isn't so bad. As I headed into Snow Kingdom with 0 moons, it was pretty obvious I wasn't going to be able to get any more here. But there's an additional question I want to answer for every single capture. Can it do Snowdram? If you aren't familiar with the trick, it's just getting to the painting island by doing a difficult jump from the Odyssey. So, can it do Snowdram? Well, no. It's actually really funny though, because you can get surprisingly close by driving up the side of the cliff. It's just the walls are barely too steep around the platform to reach the top. Up next was Seaside, which was a kingdom I felt optimistic about because the RC car can drive through water. Unfortunately, there's more random invisible walls that
protein.
restrict you to the starting area, so that's awesome. Luncheon, you can drive on lava, but you can't get any moons. Ruined, you're stuck at the start. Bowser's, you're stuck at the start. And Moon, you're stuck at the start. I'm not entirely surprised we can't get any moons with the RC car, but I am disappointed. Like, you'd think there'd be something somewhere, but being unable to jump with such a small hitbox is so comically bad that there's literally nothing if you're starting from a fresh save in every kingdom. My expectations for the MYAA is that it'll basically be able to go anywhere the RC car went, with the exception being that it can actually grab moons and use two-player mode. Wow! In Cap and Cascade Kingdom, we don't see any real difference in the run, so I'm gonna skip right into Sand Kingdom where things get interesting. First thing I decided to try was the Bird Moon, but unfortunately, even with the extra height, it's still just out of reach. The Seed Moons presented a similar issue. I could get the Town Seed and Ruin Seed into the pots, but the MYAA is just barely too short to collect the moons. It seemed like there wasn't much of anything I'd be able to get exclusively as the MYAA besides the Sheep Moon, so I got that and switched into two-player mode to start collecting ground pound moons. I got Top of a Dune, Where the Birds Gather, and Lost in the Luggage. I was also lucky enough to get the Traveling Bird Moon because hitting it with Cappy drops it low enough for the MYAA to collect. From there, I did a few last checks over sub-areas because I could access those with 2-player, but unsurprisingly nothing was possible, so I headed to the next kingdom. Here's the thing though.
That sounds funny.
I was
Unsurprisingly,
actually
nothing was
wrong.
possible.
So before we look at Lake, there's a couple more moons I need to add to Moai's total. The first is done solo by taking this sand spout and leading a bullet bill to a rock. For the next, I can grab the nearby checkpoint in 2-player, warp there, and walk deeper into the ruins to collect the Alcove Moon. With that corrected, we can look back at the stream where I was now in Lake Kingdom. This location is going to prove a very unfavorable kingdom.
Porygon,
As you may know, Mario out of most captures if you try to.
I'm hoping what we lack in speed we make up for in
The only
bulk.
possible moon here is on the lakeshore using 2-player mode. Next was Wooded, which is also a pretty unforgiving kingdom because captures cannot talk to NPCs. This includes the Sphinx that blocks over half the kingdom. Unless it captures a way to climb up walls or fly over gaps.
I had no idea there was a grass patch here.
By the Odyssey. For low-tier captures, including
That's weird. Why? I never realized there's you could actually even walk down there, much less that there's grass patches down there.
Now, I wish I had more to talk about this run, but the Moai is unable to collect any more moons in future kingdoms, putting its final score at 4 moons solo and 10 moons in 2-player. This isn't that surprising given its capture that can't jump. I mean, the Moai is pretty blatantly designed to be able to see invisible platforms, and that's it. So, yeah, no shit, it can't do Snowdram or anything else, really. But what surprises a lot of people are some technicalities that make moons you think would be easy with the Moai impossible. The first comes in Seaside Kingdom, where we're stuck in the starting area. But hey, there is a pipe on the ground, why not go in there and get the ground pound moon using 2-player mode? Well, under my rules, the flow of gameplay is as soon as I load into a room, I must become the capture within a reasonable area of where I spawned in, and after that, can't uncapture for any reason. The rule is set up like this so I can enter new rooms in the capture, and even though I'll start the next room as Mario, I can recapture and still consider it valid. This also applies to boss arenas because they work similarly to loading zones where you respawn out of the capture. The thing with pipes is they're weird. Walking into them uncaptures you before you enter the loading zone, making it invalid under my rules. You could say I'm being pedantic because I kind of am, but for me, this was the preferred way to pursue the challenge. Another weird moon comes up in Bowser's Kingdom. Like, sure, you're stuck on the starting island, that much is obvious, but the moon behind the Odyssey you get for spinning Cappy on a Bowser statue doesn't work. Even in 2-player mode, because the second Cappy touches the head, you're forced out of the capture. Again, because I have to uncapture to get the moon, it's considered invalid. This is a big deal because it means every single moon that requires you to spin Cappy on something or enter a pipe is impossible for every single capture. Like, I knew this was going to be a tough challenge, but dang, hitting 124 moons on anything might be tight.
No Mario letters.
The Mario letters on paper are basically just the Moai again, but I'm giving them a higher prediction because they should be buggier, which could invite random opportunities for unexpected moons. Like every capture so far, the journey is cut short before reaching the bridge in Cap Kingdom, and the first moon in Cascade is also impossible. Once I reached Sand, I decided to start again with the Seed Moons, which unfortunately didn't work on account of the hitboxes. And trust me,
that freaking hurt.
Every letter. The Bird Moon was possible without Cappy this time, giving the letters a slight edge over the Moai. After that, I finished off the solo moons collecting sheep in Hard Rock once again. I swapped to 2-player mode, collected the 3 ground pound moons, and used Cappy in the ruins to grab the checkpoint and get the Alcove Moon just like I did with Moai. What's really interesting though is a rare trait the letter capture has, which is poison immunity. As it turns out, the game doesn't let everything die by default, and poison
shot. I'd rather die.
Weird, but
oh, we're going to the gym later. Let's go.
A lot of things like the letter should never interact with poison to begin with. This helps in Sand Kingdom by letting them enter the Jackson.
Oh dear lord. Seriously?
And while reaching the moon at the end isn't possible, the notes moon halfway through.
Yeah, repels are gonna be like mandatory.
One last point before leaving the kingdom. Lake Kingdom is another repeat, with On the Lakeshore being the only possible moon. But in Wooded, things get a bit weird. In the solo run, we can get the Rabbit Moon like normal, but letters aren't programmed to hit rocks, so this is the only solo.
Got Petra Rost.
That's not the most interesting thing about the letters.
Go with Rost.
For some reason, the letter.
No, let's go with Pet. No, let's go with Rost.
The edge of the kingdom, meaning it's our first capture with access to deep woods. This doesn't open up as many moons as you'd expect because the dinosaur won't attack the letters, blocking off the hidden ground pound moons. However, I can still use 2-player to get the rolling rock here, as well as the one in the overworld before leaving the kingdom. Like the MYAA, the letters would continue to struggle throughout the rest of the game, only getting one lucky break and lost where I could poison walk to the moon under the bridge. I was actually surprised that
I hate that I had these two close comments there, but
Once
why
you're
was
at the point
Jolteon so
where you're
freaking
stuck,
bulky?
So moons like this that you think would be possible just aren't. Under the bridge would be the last moon I collected with the letters. Even though certain kingdoms like Snow felt close,
Alright, Generator time.
to make it in Chiveria using co-op, I couldn't do anything once inside. The doors to its are too small to enter.
Well,
even
this is a
if the
crappy
plan is
Pokemon to start with.
One thing I do want to mention before I head on
Yeah,
to
I'm
the
about to
next
die.
episode
There's
is
no
the
way I
Snowdram
win.
attempt. Snowdram, so here's the problem.
Oh, we made it to the year 1776. Let's go.
Huh? Yeah, it sort of just clips into the ground because we start falling too fast, and there seems to be no way around it, which is really funny even if it's not helpful. The final score for the Mario letters was 5 Moon Solo and 13 in 2-player, setting a new high score in both categories.
Lakitu's gonna be interesting.
Lakitu has the potential to be a really interesting capture for the sole reason it floats, meaning stuff like poison walking will be baked in. But I also imagine it'll get stuck on a lot of walls.
Give you guys $1 million if I win this fight.
Lakitu is literally designed to be stuck in a small fishing area. Like, the genuine reason I predicted this guy...
Wow, I just got 5 brain play, dude.
I expect his performance to pretty much equal the letters, except places like the Seed Moons, where the extra height should provide an advantage. I started the run, and it quickly became obvious I was wrong about Lakitu. Alright, well, can he climb the steps? What? Oh my god! This is the furthest this is the furthest the capture's ever made it. So technically speaking, this isn't a jump, but it's pretty much as good as one, meaning I made a bad prediction and we are in for a run that will likely outperform several of the upcoming competitors. But looking back at
Give me 2 mil. Hey, I didn't win yet. I didn't win yet.
See, like Spin Your Hat Moons, we cannot pull levers without uncapturing. So for something to beat...
Oh my gosh. What the frick? I only say I'll give you guys $1 million on fights that I absolutely do not think I will win and then proceed to win.
Honestly,
What is going on? Maybe I should just say I'm gonna give you guys $1 million every time. Apparently I'll always win. It's great. What the frick, man? Why do they just spam useless moves? How's damage from fire moves and birds? That actually helped me out in the fight there. What? Literally though, I only win whenever I say that.
Wait, this is insane. Come on.
I don't know what in the world is going on.
Oh, come on.
Should I run this Crobat? It's actually not awful.
Yes.
Moves are eh.
Gonna work. Our first
Ooh, Tangrowth is kind of cool, but it doesn't get that many moves.
And now since we've already noticed weird...
Yeah, we're gonna try to run it.
Maybe, just maybe, I can fish out ground pound moons. I doubt that's the case. I feel like people would know, but I'm willing to try. What? Why?
Wow, you can.
Nobody ever told me. While these features aren't a huge help for Lakitu's total combined score because ground pound moons and seed moons are possible with 2-player, it was cool to see a capture so self-sufficient. I quickly got the 2 other ground pound moons, followed it up with sheep, and traveled into the ruins to get Alcove. It felt nice to move through the kingdom so easily, unlike previous captures, though I can't say fishing the second seed all the way back to town was fun. In the end, I was able to collect every single moon.
Imagine we went on attempt 1776. That would be insane.
And taking notes,
Should name this thing America.
all possible playing solo, excluding the
or USA. USA.
I headed into Lake Kingdom and grabbed On the Lakeshore solo this time before trying to see if the nearby Taking Notes moon would be possible. I spent a while here, but ultimately determined that it was not happening due to Cappy's restricted movement underwater. I even tried an assist mode, which does increase the duration of the timer, but it still wasn't enough to get every note. In Wooded, I was able to collect the Rabbit Moon, but to my surprise, Lakitu can't hit rocks, so that one would have to be saved for later when I went into 2-player mode. I dropped down into Deep Woods, where this time, the dinosaur
Okay, wow, he did like nothing.
unlocking 2 extra
Cool.
moons. At this point, there wasn't anything left in Wooded that I could manage on my own, so I hopped into co-op, collected both the Rolling Rock Moons, and left for Cloud Kingdom.
I like our HP stats, not super high. Yeah, this thing is probably one of the most well-rounded Pokemon I've ever used ever.
What's unfortunate is captures aren't programmed to be able to wear Bowser's hat. The only way this fight is going to work on any capture is if there's weird programming to let them damage Bowser, or some exception that lets a specific capture wear the hat. Chances are, nothing in the game
It's a Mewtwo.
regular Mario can beat Bowser. Maybe you're thinking I'm
Or actually
wrong,
outspeeds me,
so
that's
order
insane.
reviews like Bowser mode.
How in the
but all those
world?
Challenges use custom code to make impossible things possible. This challenge, on the other hand, uses none of that. We are viewing every capture in their rawest form, meaning if Nintendo didn't program it,
I hate the
capture
mythical
won't be
Pokemon give you like
good.
no
But
experience.
hey,
That doesn't make
we've
any
played
sense.
weird things already, so there's always a chance something insane happens later. But until then, it's time to take Lakitu into Lost Kingdom. I want you to think about how the letters performed here. Now imagine if they could actually climb up small ledges. That's basically Lost Lakitu. The capture doesn't get stuck in the poison and can actually reach moons like the key at the beginning or the island moon. I collected these along with Under the Bridge before I started exploring the rest of the kingdom. What's really cool about Lakitu and Lost is that because I'm not technically touching the ground, Klepto doesn't trigger anywhere. This perk isn't all that helpful because of some bigger ledges on the road up the level, but I did manage to fish up this checkpoint
Grudge?
with the 3D wall.
Really?
Unfortunately, after warping, I found
My
Lakitu
moveset's awful and you give me
far
Grudge?
from the nearby moon. Next, I decided moon shards might be possible in 2-player, but once I spawned the moon in, it seemed impossible to reach from the poison. However, to my surprise, Lakitu's fishing pole can just barely touch it. I tried this strategy on a few other unlikely moons, but nothing was working, so I eventually settled on leaving the kingdom and going to Metro. Can Lakitu make the impossible jump? Here we go. You know, it made it closer than I thought it would. 2-player get the checkpoint. Yeah, honestly, you might be right. The
Oh, my screen just went black for some reason.
in Night Metro is the one by the wire. There is not a checkpoint.
Bro, why is he so physically bulky? What the
So
crud?
you have to hit that one.
That Togekiss was thick.
I got
Thick a
it!
kiss. Toga thick.
The first capture that can make it to the island with the assistance of 2-player mode. Does this unlock you any moons though? Probably not. But dang, it feels good. Is this really where we lose? Cool to see a capture as unassuming as Lakitu make it to the mainland in Metro Kingdom, but that made it all the more sad to get stuck at the beginning. I did try to see if there was something weird I could do with checkpoints again, but everything was.
Yeah, let's go. We got the green shard. This is the best shard in the game.
Kingdom to find out once and for all, can Lakitu do Snowdram? Yes.
Ooh, Moo Moo, nice.
Climb up the wall, but unfortunately we need 2-player mode to get the moon. This isn't a huge deal because when I traveled into Shiveria, I found out Lakitu is too big to enter any sub-areas. So it's not like he's going to be able to get any solo moons regardless. What was surprising though is how close I got to the Shiveria entrance moon. By carefully carving out boxes in 2-player mode, I could build steps.
If I don't get a good move at level 17, I'm probably screwed.
Close to hitting the moon.
Like, that's just how it
This
is.
was the absolute highest the
Movesets
strategy
make half the
Lakitu,
Pokemon
which again, painfully close, but
in
I was
Kaizo.
hoping I could at least prove the moon was impossible. Traveling to Seaside, I ran into a lot of moons that you think would be possible, but aren't because one of the ledges you need to climb is just too high. Fortunately, I was still able to fish up what the waves left
Lava
behind,
Plain,
and even
bro.
the Notes moon was just barely possible with assist mode. But what I didn't find out until after the stream was that Lakitu as a capture doesn't die in water. Normally this doesn't matter because you just float on it, but if I grab a checkpoint in 2-player and warp, suddenly I have a whole new part of the kingdom to explore. This glitch sounds like a huge buff to Lakitu, but in reality, it only meant 6 extra moons.
Oh, I wasn't supposed to
It's a
Here yet.
shortcut,
Oops.
ocean trench,
I
dangerous
blanked
ceiling,
out.
nesting
I can't be
spot,
making
and
mistakes like that.
reaches. Everything else, like Merci Dori, was too far out of reach.
Oh,
Glitching
crap.
Kingdom, I was
I'm
stuck
gonna
at the
lose.
beginning, ruined, I got the chest move.
Come on!
At the beginning, and Moon, also nothing.
Yeah, I might lose this fight, guys. Like, legit.
Lakitu has set an incredible new high
Oh, I
score.
landed Will, so I have a
19
chance.
Solo and 31 2-player moons. I definitely underestimated this capture and have no doubt this was probably one of my worst predictions. That being said, I'm excited to see what other unexpected.
If I didn't land that
things
burn, I would have
might be able to do going
probably
forward.
lost. I'm glad Lugia likes throwing. Assist?
Jizo is the first
I
ever
literally cannot use that. Yeah, this run's probably screwed.
It's not a
Well, I
good
do get one more move for the gym leader, so who knows?
Worse than Lakitu's flow,
But-
this is the order I predicted things. So I'm just
This
going to have
moveset's
to deal with it.
garbage.
I started in cap like normal,
Only one of my
but I was
moves
quickly
is
able to
100%
learn
accurate, and it's
how to
freaking
use
Spike
the
Cannon,
Shell
bruh.
Shot. They're enough to make it up the railing and onto the first step, but can't go any further, even if I try to jump on the boxes. Cascade Kingdom, we again see another capture that can't break the first moon rock. I know that Jizo had a chance to be glitchy, so I spent some time hopping around the rock, hoping to clip inside. The worst part about that clip is that one wouldn't have even helped me. So yeah, I could clip into the floor, but not the rock, meaning the moon was likely impossible. Par for the course in Cascade, so time to move on to sand. I immediately went for the seed moons, quickly discovering that even with the hop, Jizo is too short to collect them. This wasn't too surprising, but it definitely was disappointing given just how close I could get. After, I left town and headed up towards the dunes to test my next idea. I think he might ground pound stuff. Yup. So that's good. That really only helps the 1-player score over the 2-player though. At the time, I didn't realize how accurate of a statement this was, but as I played through the kingdom, I learned the Jizo collected the exact same moons as the Moai, but entirely on its own, and gets nothing extra from 2-player. The statue does get incredibly close to an extra moon in the Jaxi driving sub-area, but falls short on account of its mediocre jump. There was also a weird instance where I managed to randomly clip through the floor. Get another.
Why are all this Pokemon so physically bulky, dude?
Make you jump higher.
Like literally all of them.
What just happened? No! This could hint at the employees only moon being possible, but after 20 minutes of bouncing into a wall trying to replicate the clip, I decided it wasn't worth the time and would be okay if somebody else came and proved it in the future. While I'm trying to get as many moons as humanly possible, I understand this game has.
I have to use a potion. Oh no, he has to recharge. Never mind. We should be fine. Once he gets a crit, we should be fine.
But it'd be narcissistic to think I'm going to find and prove 100% of everything. I
really need a good stab move right now, or just a good move, honestly. Literally anything that's not a normal or fire type move, I need really bad.
Where I got the ground pound moon, and wooded where I couldn't reach deep woods, but could still get the rock and rabbit. It wasn't until Lost where things got particularly interesting because that poison walking trait helped this capture get the key moon, the island, and under the bridge. Those 3 moons would be the last Jizo statue collected. This isn't surprising given how similar this capture's performance was to things like the letters, but it's still disappointing to find out I was wrong about how useful the small jump would be. I might be able to make this actually. No, that wasn't even close. At least, that's if we're only talking about 2-player, because of the 13 moons the statue collected, all were done in single player thanks to
Why am I like never missing Magma Storm? Like literally I'm never missing it. I don't know why. I'm just getting really lucky, I guess. I really don't know.
It's just sad that 13 is such a weak score. Also, no, it couldn't do Snowdram.
Alright, the whole entire run's practically riding on what move I get here.
Originally, I wasn't gonna test this guy, but when I started these streams, him and Bonsai Bill were the only exclusions that felt.
It's a fire type move, but it's actually pretty freaking good.
Had an incredibly limited run
to
capture, creating
I guess I forget Will-Wisp.
weird gameplay loop with the rules I set. But in retrospect,
I'll take it. I will take it, honestly. I know it's a fire type move, but I will take it. I just needed another 100% accurate move.
Like I would have loved to rank it lower, but I think it'd be unfair to rank something new under anything I already finished. Ultimately, I don't know if that would have been correct, but that's what.
So those run's not dead yet. The run's not dead yet.
Make it in Cap Kingdom.
We got a shot.
Wow, the worst one yet. In spite of this capture being so predictably garbage for the challenge, it seems like in Cascade, there's an actual chance I'll be able to collect the first moon. I can pretty easily fly over to the rock and break it, but the problem is I am now no longer the Bullet Bill capture and have to reload to my last checkpoint. Fortunately, the story progress saves, so if the Bullet Bill is tall enough, the moon should be possible. I think... That's so sad. I feel like a lot of people would just quit here, but I am so close, and given the ground does have some small slopes, I think there's a chance I can make this work. All right, let's break the rock first. Rewarp. Come on. We got it! That was awesome! Maybe the low expectations for the Bullet Bill were misguided. I mean, being the first capture to collect the first moon is a cool accomplishment, even if it's the only one it can get in the kingdom. Sand as a whole ended up being a lot more disappointing and brought me back to reality on how bad.
Brought me back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, no, blabbity, my nose habity.
either
I'm
too
sorry,
far
you guys had
away
to hear
or
that.
not the right height. I left pretty quickly, but later had the insane realization that the seed moon might be possible. I eventually
You know what sounds really freaking good right now? Fritos, of all things.
And after that, it
Like,
was
get this man some Fritos, bruh.
height I needed to collect.
It's actually really freaking good. I actually mean to use that during the gym later.
This was followed by Wooded, where the only possible moon was Hoppin'. I continued on with the game, where my expectations were again.
Should I save the X accuracy for the first gym leader or Gardenia? I think I should save it for Gardenia because Gardenia sucks.
A new spawn once I exploded. From there, I went for the.
And plus, if I can't get past the first gym leader, it just never was meant to be anyway, I guess.
The notes while still being high enough to get the moon once it spawned. From there, I warped back to the Odyssey, flew over to the Rolling Canyon checkpoint, and used 2-player mode to get a second.
We do have really good heals. Ooh, Ross, nice. Actually, no, never mind. It's okay to get burned. It just damages less. But
the rest of the run, like normal, was pretty uneventful.
I don't know. I'll think about it. I might use X accuracy. I might. It's kind of tempting, actually. Yeah, I think I will, because I'm really just tired of not being able to get past Rourke. So, but we'll see. We'll see.
While the Bonsai Bill does have a much bigger body, which could be annoying for certain moons, it should vastly outperform the Bullet Bill because of how much longer it survives before exploding. I don't know how many moons this will end up translating to, especially given how much 2 players seem to mix things up.
Lugia.
Either way, this is definitely going to be an interesting run, even if it'll probably.
I'm gonna mark up special defense on Lugia. What the frick? Lugia's so thick. Lugia, why is so thick, bro?
That's awesome. Reaching the door itself isn't
useful
if you can't.
Our defense, special defense is already good enough.
To see what was technically a new high score for the kingdom.
It was iron. I would have used it, but it's not, so I won't.
The first moon, just like I did with the Bullet Bill. I spent some extra time trying to fly around the kingdom looking for a.
All right, gym leader time. The 3rd time getting gym leader this stream, and the 5th time in total, I think.
So I headed into Sand Kingdom. The first moon I wanted to try and get was the bird traveling the desert. This one felt really obvious because each time I respawned at the Odyssey, it'd be close by. This ended up being a bit harder than you'd think, but it did give me a good chance to learn more about the capture. I don't know the specifics, but it became pretty apparent that the more I boosted, the less time I had before Bonsai Bill would explode. This meant to get the moon,
with Ross, I guess.
So I didn't explode too early, but also still made it far enough to catch the bird. Nailing the trick perfectly took some time, and I had a lot of close calls. Come on. Gosh dang it. But eventually, I managed to get it. Come on. No. Yes.
Of course, it's raining.
Oh my god, it pushed me up. The ledge. I don't know if that mattered. All right, that is our first moon in Sand Kingdom. I decided to follow that moon up with overlooking the desert town, which I thought would be difficult because Bonsai Bill.
Okay, good. I'm glad I can one-shot it with lava plume.
Poke your nose in at the moon and collect literal frames.
All right, gym leader time.
Respawning back at the Odyssey, I flew to the ruins where, to my surprise, I could hit the checkpoint. This was really useful because having places I can respawn.
All right, let's go. I'm gonna wait till I get a
because of this, I immediately went for the
weaker Pokemon like Curlia. Now I'll use X accuracy.
Giving me a potential third starting location.
Oh, you lowered my speed, you jerk face.
I decided to test the waters on the sheep. Like, sure, this probably won't be a solo moon, but it was impressive that I could at least get one into the pin. Back at the ruins, I used a mound of sand to get high enough and grab a leaning pillar. As I exploded, I started to wonder if there was a
Brave Bird did a crap ton of damage. Should we Moo here?
More moons. I tried gaining height using the hills by the oasis, but
yeah, I think we should Moo. Yo, what's going on in Washington? Looking. I made the Iron Man is difficult to put the Pokemon together. What? Oh, Blorb? Yo, wait, Blorb? We got Blorb in chat. I didn't even realize it was you, Blorb. Crit! Brave Bird from a hollow!
I also tried using it to get the Archway moon, but because the checkpoint itself wasn't high enough, I had to turn around, gain a little height on another dude, and rush back towards the moon.
That was my first, like realistic chance of getting past the first gym later.
Bonsai Bill's success as a solo capture. Like, it probably won't do as well as other kingdoms, but it's actually insane how much the dunes of Sand Kingdom enabled this guy. However, I was very clearly reaching the end of what was possible alone. I was still able to collect inside a block because Bonsai Bill can break certain rocks without exploding, as well as the secret of Jaxie ruins because this trait can also apply to chests for some reason. But anyways, that was it. I tried other things like the Oasis notes, but my efforts made it clear I needed to swap to 2-player if I wanted to make more progress. The first thing I did was grab the
wow, look at that amazing speed right there.
See if I could push the seed in the pot like I did with
mysteriously disappeared from months on end. Well, so did I, so it's alright.
This didn't didn't mean the moon would be impossible, just that I needed to use Cappy to hit it.
Lit.
I came up with a strategy where I would fly Bonsai Bill.
Wait, I actually lived?
Of the fountain to delay my explosion,
Brr.
maneuvering
I didn't live there though.
to hit the seed into the pot.
1778.
Come on!
I'm not.
No! This was painfully difficult.
On
but
Crobat,
I'm glad
Jolteon, and
I
Kingdra
started
the
it
most?
possible. About
Okay.
10 minutes later,
Good for
I
me.
managed to find a strat that
Come
let
on.
me get the
Sure.
bullet bill stuck, which turned all of my prior struggles into a joke. I got the moon shortly after and started following it up with the ground pound moons, collecting top of a dune, where birds gather, and lost in the luggage relatively easily. At this point, it didn't feel like there were many moons left to get, but then I remembered the sheep moon from earlier and how I might be able to use Cappy to knock the remaining sheep towards
Stop the
pit.
cap,
I spawned
eat.
in at the ruins and decided to give it a few attempts. Most of these weren't getting the sheep far, but I was making enough.
I'd rather
progress
take
where I
Plusle than
figured I
Typhlosion,
could
so.
give it some more time. Before doing that, though, I collected the other easier sheep before.
Like, I'd rather lose the Typhlosion than take Typhlosion.
No! After this attempt, I was certain that the moon was possible. I just needed to play perfectly. Even if this would likely be one of the single most annoying moons in the entire challenge, I wanted it and would make sure it happened. There we go! While this was the last moon I'd collect in the kingdom, I was shocked to be leading Sand with 8 moons solo and 13 in 2-player. That's better than Lakitu, and while I doubt it'll be able to keep up in future kingdoms, it'll be interesting to see what's possible.
Good attempt will be 1812. It's gonna be a while.
I could collect the bunny
I don't even know if I'm gonna get to 1812 in this
Before
stream.
leaving the kingdom, I
Probably
managed
not.
to fly around the back and made it to another checkpoint, but this didn't open up any more moons. I mainly wanted to
Vaporegon, wow, that,
finally
wow.
get somewhere
Tell me
new.
you're a glass cannon without telling me you're a glass cannon. The frick?
One moon solo. But as I flew around the back of the kingdom,
Vaporegon, bow.
fortunately, as I explored the level, I realized below the cliff's edge was just the right height to fit. After this, I swapped into 2-player to grab the checkpoint by the 2D roll, which put me at the right height to grab the nearby moon I missed earlier,
Oh, frick you,
along with
heal order.
moon charge, which was incredibly silly to get as Bonsai Bill. Before leaving,
Both use
I
the
tried
major
some
events
other
to
moves,
use
like
history.
under the bridge,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
During
I see what
Metro,
you're
figured
saying.
I might be the right height for at least one moon, but that didn't work
This fight
out
might take a
because
while.
one player for a checkpoint wasn't doing any good either. Given how weird Bonsai
Protect and
Bill
heal
was
order
making
is
some
just a
kingdoms so far,
brutal
I
combo
assumed
right there.
Might be a chance it could fly up the wall for Snowdram, but it just explodes, so 0 moons here too. Fortunately, I got a break in Seaside where I was able to collect the same moons Bullet Bill did. Unfortunately, this time the Notes moon was 2-player only due to some weird hitboxes, but hey, I'll take it. Luncheon was another quick kingdom where moons like Pillar Shadow weren't possible because
I'm gonna
of
wait for it
Bonsai
to
Bill's
use,
size.
run out of heal
Fortunately,
orders
I
and
could
protect,
at
I
least
guess,
get Island
until.
Assault in 2-player. Ruined and Bowser's gave 0 moons, but once I made it into Moon Kingdom, I collected Cliffside.
I wonder if it can even attack me. Like, I don't know why it's not attacking me. They usually, AI almost always attacks you if it
I'm
can.
genuinely surprised to see Bonsai Bill in 2nd place for the co-op category so far.
I'm not really sure what's going on.
Bad at first, but is absolutely carried by its ability to fly.
Going on
That being
here.
said,
All right,
I
what are you
don't
gonna
think
use
this build
now?
will be too hard to beat,
Break, break.
especially with the
Why
capability of
why did he
captures
avoid
quickly
trying to attack me for so long? He could have just like 3-shot me the whole entire time. What's wrong with him?
Charge and Chuck is a capture that should have the same utility that both the Bills have, where it can break stronger objects like the first Moon Rock, but with the added bonus he doesn't have to die to accomplish it. I am slightly doubting my initial prediction, however. Chuck doesn't have a jump, so if I can't get him anywhere where the utility is actually useful, he probably won't beat Bonsai Bill. But hey, I can't say that for sure until I try. I started my run in Cap Kingdom, where we're back to a good old-fashioned capture that can't climb.
Wow,
steps.
Magikarp, guys. You think I can get out of the lab with Magikarp?
Weird code that prevents Chuck from breaking the
Better
first
than
Moon Rock.
Caterpie,
Fortunately,
and I got
this
another
wasn't the case, and it
live
does
with a Caterpie, so
letting Chuck become the 3rd capture to collect the first.
suppose anything's possible.
Unfortunately, the rest of the kingdom didn't go as smoothly. I can't jump, so passing the bridge to the rest of the level is impossible. Entering into Sand, I started with the obvious stuff like the Seed Moons. Charging Chuck is actually too small to grab him normally, but if you start charging, his hitbox becomes tall.
Got a lot closer than I thought I would,
It's kind
honestly.
of funny that makes the difference, but hey, I'm not complaining about 2 easy moons. I used this knowledge to get the bird as it cut through the oasis, and then followed that up with sheep and hard rock. I thought I was out of moons to get and was ready to.
That sucks I can't auto-pick my name.
Remembered the cactus moon at the edge of the kingdom.
Save me a
Surprisingly,
couple of
Charge and Chuck can't break cactus,
milliseconds
making
every
this
attempt.
moon impossible. I finally decided to swap into 2-player, where I wanted to try out some sub areas. Oh, just barely not too big. You can like squeeze through. But yeah, we're not gonna get a moon in here. That much is obvious. How did I make it through that door? What the heck? Is it because it was on a slope? Honestly, this isn't even.
Bellsprout versus Regirock. I wonder who's gonna win.
Chuck, but I guess he can only enter some sub areas, which may affect his final score. Since it didn't seem like I'd be getting any weird 2-player moons, I just collected the 3 ground pound moons in Alcove before leaving the kingdom. Charging Chuck proceeds to make 0 interesting ground in the mid game, collecting the 2-player moon in Lake, 2 moons in Wooded, and absolutely nothing in Cloud and Metro. Snow Kingdom, on the other hand. Come on! Oh no! He almost fell all the way, but he hasn't yet. Gosh, it's so close. It just gets so steep. Wait, come on. Come on. Come on! No! Oh, I was so close! Wait, I think I can make this one.
I got the worst of the 3 options.
Let's go! Charging Chuck and do Snowdram! And he can get the moon with 2-player mode. That's the only moon Charging Chuck would collect in Snow Kingdom, and it's not for the reasons you'd think. Wait, what? Wait, why did he die? What? Huh? Apparently, some captures just randomly die when you try to enter Shiveria. I have no idea why this happens. Like, why can Lakitu enter Shiveria, but Chuck can't? It's strange, but rules are rules, so I left the kingdom. The last moon I managed to collect in the run was the chest moon in Ruined using 2-player. This moon has been a struggle to get for a lot of captures because they just fall straight down with no air control. Fortunately, Chuck's boost gets around this by letting me turn while falling off the edge to reach the platform. This is surprisingly difficult, but it was cool to see a capture besides Lakitu reach this moon. Charging Chuck finished the run with a final score of 8 moon solo and 15 in 2-player. I'd say this is a pretty average score for a low tier capture, indicating I clearly overrated Chuck in my initial prediction. As it turns out, having something that's utility is really only useful if and only if you have decent movement to back it up. With that in mind, I think it's safe to say my next prediction is even worse.
I have no idea why they didn't do any damage. Yeah, frick that. I'm not gonna waste the next 2 minutes of my life fighting that.
The Sherm, also known as the tank, has the same utility as the Charging Chuck capture, but with worse movement. The reason I initially ranked it higher was because you can break and interact with stuff at a range. This sounds useful on paper, but if your movement only lets you reach like 10 moons, that's not gonna matter. This run started the same as Chuck's, getting stuck at the stairs and collecting the first moon. But what surprised me is what happened after. It's time to finally see, can it hit checkpoints? No, it cannot. What? Unfortunately, it could not climb up the second step, but it did make me realize there was a chance the tank might be able to reach some interesting spots. I started with the seed moons, but was too short, followed it up by trying to reach hard rock, but was too slow, so I eventually caved and just went for sheep, which is practically guaranteed for every capture, but on my way there, I learned something new. Tank and ground pound since when? Huh?
Word stands.
After the sheep moon, I used this newfound knowledge to get the remaining 2 ground pound moons along with Bird traveling the desert, which I was only able to get thanks to a tank shot.
Well, that Swords Dance would be good if it wasn't for the fact that I only have 1 physical move and it's 80% accurate and 50% power. Like, bro.
Moon. Given the tank wasn't programmed to rank cactuses either, it seemed like the only way I'd get more moons here was with 2-player. I used this in the ruins to grab a checkpoint with Cappy that let me reach.
Oh my gosh, what the frick is going on?
In Lake Kingdom, I grabbed the guaranteed moon every run seems to get, while in Wooded, I got Rabbit and Rock.
I was extremely unlucky.
I was hoping there'd maybe be a way to get into deep woods with some glitchy wall climb, but as expected, nothing worked. Surprisingly, these were the last 2 moons I collected with the tank. The movement was just so unbelievably bad, I could not go anywhere. Like, you'd think maybe I could finesse my way up the wall for Snowdram like the other captures, but no, I can't even reach the wall because my movement is just so horrible. The tank had a final score of 9 moon solo and 11 in 2-player, clearly cementing itself as one of the worst captures. Cheep Cheep is a really funny capture for this challenge because after spawning,
you suck, NPC.
Unless it can reach water. So most kingdoms, 0 expectations. However, Lake and Seaside could go crazy, hence my prediction being as high as it is. Here we go. How far can the Cheep Cheep get in Cap Kingdom? Not very far. This is how most of the run is going to go, but fortunately in Sand Kingdom, the 10 seconds is just barely enough to hit the first checkpoint in town using 2-player. Respawning at the checkpoint gives me just enough time to use 2-player again to push the seed into the pond.
But I just did that.
Grabbing the moon after
No, I went to go get the item and then I ran back. I'm an idiot.
Difficult. I'm just barely fast enough to reach the pot and can only grab the moon in time if I reveal it with Cappy beforehand. After attempting this for about 25 minutes, I finally got the trick and could move on to the next kingdom. Lake, I started off by immediately getting the Notes moon. After, I tried jumping out of the starting area, which didn't seem possible. This was really concerning given Lake is one of the 2 kingdoms I was expecting to actually collect moons. In defeat, I decided to swap into 2-player, grab the Lakeshore moon, and see if I could use Cappy to do anything weird. This eventually brought me and Twitch chat back to an old glitch I'd never done before. If I swim under this island and ground pound it with Cappy, I can clip out of bounds and reach the rest of the kingdom. While all of these moons would unfortunately be considered 2-player mode because of this, it was really exciting to have Lake not be a complete failure. I was able to collect 5 more moons swimming through the kingdom. Generally speaking, these were all pretty basic and hardly worth talking about. Though something I did learn that I wasn't aware of prior was the moon I'm at a Lake Cheep Cheep just doesn't work until you beat Rango, in spite of the lock lady still having the dialogue beckoning for a fish. So yeah.
I guess we'll go check the lake encounters, and if there's nothing good there, then I guess we'll try to pivot to the fishing.
Can we get it? No, but yeah, it genuinely was just the limit. I had to go to Wooded next where
really
I
low
tried to see if I could
BST.
reach the red
Ow.
in time.
Yeah, that was super effective, and it really didn't do that much. I know I'm really physically bulky, but still, that should have done more.
I decided to shift my focus towards deep woods as a last-ditch effort for a
Thank you.
moon. If
Alright,
I didn't
we're gonna have to just try to run with
very
this thing until we can
time,
pivot.
So I skipped ahead to see if this trick was even worth attempting. It was pretty obvious from the deep woods spawn that I was wasting my time. None of the moons down here would be anywhere near close enough to collect in 10 seconds. I left the kingdom and was expecting mid-game to be a complete failure all the way up until Seaside, but something surprising happened and Lost. Alright, do Cheep Cheeps die in poison? Probably, but we gotta find out. What? Wait, that's gonna be a moon. That's gonna get us a moon. Wait, am I even gonna have time? I'm kind of afraid. Come on. Yeah, let's go.
Oh, that didn't even do half, really? Especially, I know a special attack is awful, but like, bruh.
The kingdom is too far to reach, but I'm still more than happy with the results here. In Metro, the rain doesn't save you from the 10-second rule, in case you were wondering. However, in Snow Kingdom, a normal Cheep Cheep can swim in the cold water. As a matter of fact, this is the reason I'm not testing the Snow Cheep Cheep. The two should function in exactly the same way, and as a result, should get the exact same score. Anyways, I spent some time trying to climb the Painting Moon for Snowdram, but that clearly wasn't going to work.
Wait, could I actually, because of Crush Claw, could I actually, did I accidentally turn this thing into a runner?
There's a chance if Cheep Cheep can go down.
It's kind of tempting, actually. Swords Dance is just such a good move, but I'm kind of slow. It's like,
Alright, here we go.
I don't know.
Cheep get the moon on top of the boxes. Not in single
player. Oh yeah, I'll try running it. Screw it. Why not? I don't like pivoting that much anyway, so.
Yeah, no! It died the easy, wow. Okay. I was a bit worried in Seaside that the Cheep Cheep wouldn't be able to make it to the water in under 10 seconds, but fortunately the Odyssey is just barely close enough for it to be possible. Now it was time to get every possible underwater move. I got Glass Palace Treasure Chest, It's a Shortcut, Under a Dangerous Ceiling, Mercy Dory, Northern Reaches, Ocean Trench, Nesting Spot, Underwater Highway Tunnel, and Looking Back in the Dark Waterway, all for what was essentially free. But there were still more possible moves. I was shown a clip that's actually done in any percent speedruns where you use this chest to go out of bounds. I've done Odyssey speedruns, but that was before the community knew about this glitch, so I had to spend a fair bit of time trying to learn the trick. Basically, the way it works is if you bonk against the wall in the right spot, spin and swim forward, you will clip. It's a bit harder than that, but that's my general understanding of it. The first time I clipped, I used it to go underneath the lava on Hot
Jaboka!
The Story Moon. I clipped again to reach the Capulus Moon Shards Moon, and then clipped
Go
one
out, let's
last
go.
time with Sphinx Underwater Vault. Finally, before getting some 2-player moons, I collected notes, because apparently I forgot to do that. With 2-player, I ground pounded to get What the Waves Left Behind, wriggling on the sandy bottom, and then use Cappy to open the chest for Treasure Trap. Throughout the rest of the run, there was no
Normally I wouldn't bother going get items, but we're lower. We're kind
kind
of low level-ish, and we don't have like any heals, so.
6 in 2-player. It's kind of funny to think 23 of 26 moons were in Lake and Seaside, but honestly, it makes the capture's performance all the more entertaining.
I cannot believe Cheep Cheep is doing second best so far. That's insane.
The Tropical Wiggler doesn't have a jump, but does have a stretch. so I should be able to climb up some ledges if there's a nearby slope. This was my logic for ranking the capture so high, but given it's the 12th capture I'd be playing through Odyssey with, my intuition was saying this was a bad prediction. Movement has been king thus far, and the perk the Wiggler gets for stretching probably won't be able to do much. Now that I think about it, Cap Kingdom
Wish Crash Claw had more than 10 power points. It's pretty sad.
Look, we didn't make it again, except the Wiggler's in. I think that's as far as it's getting. Obviously, Wiggler was not beating Cap, so I headed into the next kingdom. You go in a circle and run into a wall, you can gain height as Wiggler. Really? I don't know how true that is, but I'll try. Okay, so people say random garbage in Twitch chat all the time. That isn't true, but this didn't feel like that. A couple minutes later, I was sent this clip done by CatJAM, a well-known member of the Min Mario community. It was 100% real, and I had to figure out how it worked. I spent a while trying to get it in Cascade, then in Sand, but it wasn't working. I actually decided my best course of action would be to give up and skip the capture for now. I didn't want to leave the trick out of my score, but trying to learn it live on stream wasn't getting me anywhere. As I started my next run and left Cap Kingdom, however, I got an interesting message. It was like, oh, you're here now. Was I shaking in the wall to start off? I think I tried. Oh, gosh dang it, now I want to try it more. Not only did this give me motivation to go back to the Wiggler, it was the key bit of information I was missing. The trick only works if you start stretching with a controller shake. I didn't fully understand that at first, and it didn't help that the way you rub against the wall had to be very particular. Push too hard and you'll fall back to the ground. After a long stretch of practice, I would finally climb a wall for the first time. Chat, this might be my first success. We're figuring it out. We can do the Wiggler run today. I did it! I spent a bit longer practicing to make sure I was ready before restarting the Wiggler run. The trick doesn't help in Cap or Cascade, so I immediately went to Sand where things would be more open. The first moon I wanted were the seed moons, but to my surprise, the Wiggler can't push them. That's okay though, because with my new strategy, I can climb the buildings of Sand. Just really, really slowly. I'm having trouble getting this last bit. There we go. In total, it took me 6 minutes to get this moon. Let me stress that. 6 minutes for this moon. God, this run is gonna be hell.
I didn't mean to go in there.
Plays only, where surprisingly, the Wiggler could stretch inside to collect the moon. This actually makes it the first capture to collect this one, which is kind of crazy. I'd use the glitch again to collect the bird as it traveled through the oasis, and then stretch my way to the treetops to get taking notes jump on the palm. The capabilities of this capture were honestly comical. Oh, the moon's too high? Yeah, not on my watch. Wiggler really is just built different. The main downside to this is if something doesn't work, it could genuinely take a long time for me to figure that out.
Wow, that's still didn't one shot.
Is the leaning pillar moon. At 59:04 into the run, I looked off at the moon and said, I think it's too tall, which is the sad thing. Only after 15 minutes did I finally give up and deem the moon impossible. I think it's like maybe if you try really, really hard, position in the exact right spot, but I don't think it's worth it. And even then, you can tell I'm still in denial. I want to keep trying, but like, no, the moon is too high. You're gonna be here for 8 hours if you don't stop. I decided it'd probably be a good idea to get at least one easy moon out of the way before wasting more time, so I collected Alcove in the Ruins and
being slow.
Next moon on my radar was on top of the stone archway. I climbed up the nearby icicle and tried to scale the wall like normal, but I pretty quickly noticed
Wake up!
This plan. There's small edges on the arch that are impossible to climb up.
Wake up! Oh my
I
gosh!
need to try something else. On one side of the archway, there's a second taller icicle I can climb up using the Wiggler. It's a bit tough to nail the trick and literally took me 20 minutes to finally get, but slow and painful moons are what I've come to expect from this capture. With that in mind, want to know what I did for the next hour?
Oh my gosh, just land a rock tomb.
I figured there'd be a chance I could get this moon, even if it forced me to use 2-player, but no. Every moment I thought I was getting close, something was just barely out of reach, and I never made it high enough for Cappy to be able to grab the checkpoint on his own. Before actually focusing on the co-op moons, I had one last thing to get, from a crate in the ruins. This one was only possible because the wall leading up to where the moon spawns was flat, even though it didn't look that way. With that done, I was ready to officially tackle 2-player mode and started with the ground pound moons like always. I thought this was just going to be easy, but I move the seed all the way over there and gain height on it. Sure, I'll try, why not? Here, first let me see if I can just gain height on the seed to begin with. It looks like the answer is yes. All right, let's worked. It was enough. The other two were fortunately much easier. When it came to sub areas, everything was pretty straightforward. Climb up a wall, collect a moon. Climb up the wall again.
Ominous wind.
In the invisible maze, I hardly had to even do that. All that was left now were the seed moons, which I slowly collected by hitting them.
Honestly, Hydra Cannon's been more useful.
3 hours and 38 minutes, I could finally leave Sand Kingdom with a score of 9 moons solo in 17 in 2-player.
It's tempting because
I thought I was wrong about my prediction, but I assumed Wiggler was
because of Rock Tomb's just so awful, but
I would have never thought
we need the power points, and at least it gets buffed by Swords Dance.
But before we move on, I got told after this stream there was a moon I missed. GamesJam, the same person from earlier, proved you could stretch across to this statue, glitch up to the tiny awning, and then use 2-player to grab the checkpoint. This is incredibly difficult, but brings the total up to 18 moons in 2-player, which is just absurd. With that sorted, I traveled into Lake where I immediately wanted to see if it was possible to get deeper into the kingdom. All right, first things first, I will at least try to see if I can get up there. I don't think I'll be able to. I think it's slightly too far, but you never know. Oh, I can't even reach here. Okay, yeah, we're not getting up there. I took the free ground pound moon in 2-player and left for Wooded. I got the bunny with ease and was pretty happy to see the Wiggler could hit rocks as well. After collecting those 2 moons, I glitched onto the outer wall.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was like no special defense apparently.
Back here, there were 2 potential nut moons if Wiggler could stretch far enough. So, a bit reluctantly, here we go again. Anyway, we gotta change the music again.
Here we go again.
I like that this song exists. You want to hear this in the video? I don't know if it'll make it into the video. Maybe I can make a note for my editor. Maybe we don't. Oh, no! How am I still on Tropical Wiggler? I feel like it's pretty obvious if you're watching the stream. If you just look at what I'm doing, it's like, maybe that's why it's taken 4 hours. Is he gaining height? Heck yeah, I am. Come on. We're so close. I think I might technically be touching it, but I think we need to use 2-player. Yeah, we need to use 2-player, but that's fine. Because if we can get the moon! Come on! We're so close. I'm so... There it is! Alright, no more. Back to normal music. I did the same for the nut in the cave before heading into Deep Woods, where I collected the second rock solo and both the ground pound moons in 2-player. Like normal, nothing interesting happened in Cloud, so I went straight into Lost Kingdom. The first thing I did here was collect the key moon. This moon is literally designed with the Tropical Wiggler in mind, so it's not surprising it works. Now, something that's really cool about the Wiggler is it can kind of poison walk. A well-timed stretch while walking up the edge will suspend you in the air temporarily. The catch is each subsequent stretch, your height lowers. This means it's impossible to take more than a few steps on a flat surface before dying. I tried to use this glitch to make it towards the island, but it was unfortunately too far. Even if I made it though, doing the glitch to climb walls is impossible while poison walking because doing the trick contorts the Wiggler's body in a way that always makes contact with the poison, killing it. This made the strategy useless when collecting moons, but I still wanted to mention it because it's cool. Before leaving the kingdom, I messed with a few ideas to see if getting deeper in the kingdom was possible without running into Klepto, but nothing worked. The only thing I managed to get was peeking out from under the bridge, which again makes sense because the moon was designed with the Wiggler in mind. Can it do Snowdram? The answer might actually, I think it's just no, because I don't think Wiggler can reach the outskirts here. Wait. And now. We're back. Come on, Wiggler, you can do it. Chat, I think the Tropical Wiggler can do Snowdram. That's 2. There it is! It can do Snowdram! This is a 2-player moon, however, so we'll have to come back and get this later. Inside Chiveria, I immediately
I was just fast forward. Well, I guess I technically did, but
in here were hard, but as expected, they could randomly be a time sink. Like the icicle barrier took around 25 minutes, while the ice wall barrier only took about 3. I brought the Wiggler into the remaining 2 sub-areas, but unfortunately the Rango room was too tall to climb, while the end of the...
It'd be nice if I could have gotten to level 22 before I got into the gym, but alright.
I collected the ground pound moon that was in my range and finished up the kingdom by using Cappy to open the Snowdram chest. In Seaside, I wasn't very optimistic about getting mini moons, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't try.
Fourth time this stream, 6th time today. I'm getting to the first gym later.
So I instead tried doing the wall climb glitch at the entrance to the Ride the Jetstream moon. I nearly made it up.
You need sleep. Fair enough.
My next idea was to stretch over to the back canyon where I'd climb the hill and make it to the first story moon. This was a little
If I
annoying
wanted
because I had to
to
manage the wall climb glitch while spike balls were being shot at me, but given I got the moon, it was all worth it.
Think you're gonna do that? Sounds good.
I was already out of solo moon, so I swapped to 2-player and decided this time I'd start with the most annoying moon first. What the waves left
Yeah,
behind
I'll stick with the
would be
Jaboka berry
possible if
first.
I wait out the agonizingly long
Good night,
moon
Blorb.
cycle.
Thanks for being here, dude. I
It was
appreciate
only
it.
3 minutes, but dang, it felt worse. I stretched onto her back, waited some more, and stretched over to the rocks, letting me get the ground pound moon. Also, before anyone asks, no, riding Dory further will not let me get any additional moons. Finally, I did one last stretch to reach the back.
Oh,
cave and
frick
exit.
you, Reg
This
Ice.
capture has by
Actually,
far been
frick
the most
off.
Exhausting yet. Like, it's been 6.5 hours, and I really just want a break.
I don't have any way to heal it, so I'm just gonna have to
Wait, you can reach? Can you reach
Power my way.
Stewart?
power my way through this gym with paralysis. I always get the worst luck when it comes to being in the first freaking.
Is the joke stale yet?
Oh, of course I don't even one shot.
I was not getting that break, and damn, I could feel it. I regretfully started off the kingdom by collecting piled on the salt and lurking.
Yeah, it's gonna be a miracle if I beat this fight. I'm gonna have to use like all my heals, and even then,
Minutes. Next, I beat Stewart using 2-player. The fight was pretty much
even then, I don't know.
really easy moon. The downside is this did mean any moon after this point would be considered a part of the 2-player category. You may have noticed I normally
gonna
like
get
to sub
confused.
area as a last thing before leaving the kingdom. However, I was tired of climbing walls, and the magma swamp sub area would require.
I need to set up all 3 sword stances here.
Simple moon hidden behind the start and some easy moon shards.
All right, I don't want to get confused, so we're gonna go ahead and attack it.
Is this an ingredient too? And then another minute of climbing for overlooking a bunch of ingredients.
If it'll let me.
Column in a row was surprisingly possible without the glitch, but that's a
Frick off!
I need to spend several more minutes climbing to the other side of the kingdom so I can stretch onto the volcano to walk all the way across to surrounded by tall mountains. Unfortunately, I still wasn't done and needed to climb one last mountain, which took another 6 minutes, by the way. Thank God this would be the last moon I collected in Legend Kingdom.
Petal
That didn't
dance.
stop me from spending
Wow, what a great
45
move.
minutes trying forks, trying to get the Isle of Salt moon, and seeing if I could poison walk across the lava over to a far-off island. None of these things ended up.
Oh, frick off with your
But it just goes
reflect.
to show how obnoxious of a capture this is, because I have to check literally everything, or else I'll miss a weird glitch that gets a moon. Fortunately, I was reaching the end of the run.
Why couldn't it have been the one that heals me?
2-player, got the rabbit and rock and moon, and used 2-player one last time to collect taking notes on the moon's surface. The run finished after 8 hours, 12 minutes, and 44 seconds.
Why do you not give me the one that heals me?
This
You
is an
jerk face.
unbelievable score, breaking both the solo and co-op record. I would have never expected it going into this stream, but
How many Pokemon does he have left? 3?
I'm happy I'll never have to do it again.
Heal me. Frick off. This is the most bullcrap gym fight I've ever experienced in my entire life.
But it's happening for real now. My expectations for the Taifu can be
I literally would have won too if I didn't get paralyzed. I literally would have
I
won.
don't know how much
Just because of the one paralysis at the stupid freaking trainer, I lose. That's the whole reason I lost there.
But as expected, this capture runs
My
into the
luck
same problem
in the
as
first gym is just absolutely garbage.
If I was lower, it's not like I'd fit. Cascade Kingdom is
I've
run
lost twice
albeit only a little.
today
The Taifu can't
because I get poisoned, and then I lose now because I get paralyzed. I literally cannot get past the first freaking gym. That's literally all I want, bro.
moment. I tried this on the first
I don't think I'm asking for too much here. I don't think I'm asking for too much.
Be very beneficial later. Before leaving, I wanted to spend some time.
My luck, and then I freaking lose another attempt because I get freaking crit because a Ho-Oh happened to have Brave Bird. Like seriously? Like you can't make this crap up. Statistically I should have won at least one of the many gym fights I've had today, but no, I haven't won a single one. I don't know why I'm getting so unlucky.
Now than it was with the bonsai bill. Like, it was genuinely really nice to just fly around and not worry about dying. There was a downside, however. The Taifu doesn't preserve the height it gains from climbing up slopes. This became pretty apparent when I flew over to the oasis, and instead of floating over, I immediately dropped in. This creates a problem. I use slopes a ton as the bonsai bill to gain height and fly over to moons. Now the only way I can do that as a Taifu is with checkpoints. There's always a chance this won't be a big deal, but I'm definitely a little concerned about whether or not I can still beat bonsai bill. I respawned at the Oasis checkpoint to set my height, and while I would be trapped in this area, I wanted to see if it was possible to blow my hitbox into the notes, but they were just barely too far.
Why am I kind of tempted to run this Larvitar? It's got stab special mob on.
Didn't match up either. I flew towards the
Take forever to evolve. There's no way on this planet Earth that I would be able to survive long enough to evolve it. And even then, it would be an awful type or awful Pokemon, and that probably would have to evolve again. So
yeah. So I could have just got enough here to begin with. I felt a bit defeated that the strat hadn't been useful yet, so I took a quick break to see if I could scare the sheep into the pen. Miraculously, I was close enough to the ground to make it work. All right, we can spawn the moon, but can we touch it? That is so sad. Wait, we got it! Let's go! After I traveled back to the ruins where I'd use another sand pillar to climb up to my next checkpoint. I immediately wanted to see if this opened up any more rooms, so I warped to set my height to the new spawn. With it, I could now reach the top of Jaxi Ruins, but with no way to open chests, I'd have to save the moon here for 2
have to go for the level 6, obviously.
Lone pillar, which was a bit high, but fortunately still close enough to hit with a blow. I tried the same thing on Stone Archway, but that moon was actually too far inland to reach. This is when I realized my new height might let me reach the notes in Oasis, which worked well and got me an extra moon. I tried a few last things.
Ooh, Dust Noir is good too.
The Ruins height or the Alcove moon from Odyssey height. Neither of these worked, but they were good things to check before attempting co-op. I
prefer the Porygon Z, but I'll take whatever level 6 I find first. I don't really care that much.
More moons, including Alcove in the Ruins, the Jaxi Ruins chest, all 3 ground pound moons, along with both the seeds most captured.
Frick off! Found a level 6 of both of the Pokemon I'm not trying to find.
A lot of those seemingly obvious moons, like overlooking the town or creating.
I mean, Dust Noir is guaranteed to be a level 5, so it's fine.
I'm trapped in the beginning. But what's surprising
Please.
is even with assist mode, I don't have enough time to get notes. This is actually the same issue Lactu ran into, but
this
a bit more exaggerated. Because we're floating high above the water, Cappy actually moves slower inside of it. Mario's distance to water affecting Cappy's movement is such a specific mechanic that it's unsurprising I didn't know it existed until this challenge. Regardless, it means I'm only getting the ground pound moon in Lake Kingdom. Just like Bonsai Bell, in Wooded I'm able to fly around the back half of the kingdom, but it's completely useless. As a matter of fact, the only moon Taifu can get here is the rock. The bunny is too low, and there's not a single checkpoint I can reach that does anything useful. Now I'm gonna be honest with you. The rest of this run is really boring and provides no new interesting content. All I'm doing is checking what moons are available at the height I spawn in solo, and what moons are available at different checkpoint heights in 2-player. Like, I was right, this run is basically just a better Bonsai Bill, but that also means it's a more boring Bonsai Bill.
Wow, of course the Metagross is Flash Cannon, bro. What?
A lightning round. In Lost, I got these 2 moons solo and was able to get 4 extra in co-op. Metro, I got this moon solo. Snow, I was able to do Snowdram with 2-player, but that's it. Seaside got these 6 moons in co-op, and in Luncheon, I collected this moon solo and was able to get 1 extra in co-op. That is the Taifu run, taking 2 hours and 56 minutes while collecting 10 moon solo and 31 in co-op. I was a bit surprised to see the co-op score beat Bonsai Bill by 7, but not having a time limit was a huge bump for far out moons or things that just took long like Seeds in Sand Kingdom. Not to mention, the weird blowing hitboxes came in handy a couple of times to get extra moons.
No speed whatsoever.
After all this time, I finally get to play as a capture with a real jump. Given how some competitors have performed so far, I definitely
Yo, Fearsome, welcome in, dude.
But it's too late.
Thank you for joining. Dude, I have had the absolute worst luck today. Literally the absolute worst luck. I've gotten to the gym leader. Well, not the gym leader, but I've gotten to the gym 6 times today, and I haven't beat the gym leader a single time. I died twice to poison, 1 to paralysis, and 1 to a ho-oh that happened to get a crit with Brave Bird. My luck is just so awful today. I don't know what is going on. But I cannot for the life of me get past the gym leader, ever. Like, wow, Blaziken with Levitate? That's actually kind of insane.
That man is ecstatic. There's not any more moves.
But seriously, though, I'm like, bro, I'm losing my mind right now.
Coin Coffer has the solo world record for moons in Cascade Kingdom. For now. Back in Sand Kingdom, it was time to go through the motions once again. Generally speaking, I was able to get all the basic moons you'd expect from a grounded capture with the extra addition of stuff like overlooking the desert town and taking notes. The main things worth mentioning are...
have you gotten a Switch 2 and or Mario Kart World? I mean, I don't really see any reason to get a Nintendo Switch 2 yet unless you're gonna get Mario Kart World.
This time, we're back
Also for the new Pokemon game too, I guess. But
maze, my jump wasn't high enough to maneuver further in the room, while in the invisible maze, it was more than possible to reach the moon at the end. As I started wooded, it was kind of nice to be back to a normal capture. Sure, this meant I wouldn't be getting a particularly high score, but it also meant I wouldn't be missing the rabbit moon like Typhoo did.
Physical attacking a Snubble here.
Here I could collect the other rolling rock, swap to 2-player, and collect both the hit and ground pound moons, leaving me at a score of 3-5 for the kingdom. I would consider this to be the standard wooded score. If your capture can walk around, hit rocks, and jump, that's probably what it'll get. There are only 7 moons accessible.
We're gonna wait. Yeah, fair enough.
To the back half of the kingdom, and 2
guys, Legends ZA isn't even gonna come out for
for a better score, you need something to reach the nuts, like the Wiggler who got a 3-7.
Few more months.
To fly to the back half of
Come out later this year, right?
I
Yes, I gotta come out for a few more months, and then even then, you wouldn't even need to get the Switch 2 in order for the new Pokemon game because it's coming out on Switch, the regular Switch 2, I believe. Not the regular Switch 2, the regular Nintendo Switch as well.
Having no movement options to platform around Klepto, and too weak of a jump to get the under the bridge.
Impon can be good.
Okay, but what about
Mixed Attacker, Blast Cannon, Calm Mine.
Alright, that's gonna be another 0-0. Maybe.
Please.
Alright, can the coin coffer.
You suck!
This is definitely
seriously? That one was actually kind of good. And you have freaking Mach Vacuum Wave? Might as well have Mach Punch, it doesn't matter. Either way, it's a priority freaking fighting type move that you just so happen to have. Just like how I got a Swampert and my rival just so happened to have a grass type move. It's like ridiculous. It's like they freaking know. What the frick? Of course they have a priority fighting type move. The only Pokemon type that I am weak to.
Instead, I'm leaving with that was shockingly collected without 2-player.
I'm losing my mind over here, dude.
I figured at least a couple moons would be possible, but unless you can jump high or swim out over water, the only available moons are found past this deep, treacherous cleft that screams into the earth. Unfortunately, this obstacle would be too much for our hero, who instead opted to spend his time relaxing on the beach before moving to the
Never mind what I said to Lord earlier. I might actually get to attempt 1812 because freaking I can't get past the rival even now. Much less past the gym leader.
Gets a break by becoming the first capture to collect a moon in the kingdom without using 2-player. Funny how that niche ability to open chests is actually letting this capture do things that are unique. This was the last moon collected by the coin coffer, putting it at a final score of 15 moon solo and 22 in 2-player. I definitely overrated this capture on my prediction, but it was cool to see a couple new solo moons throughout the run. The Goomba is a lot like the coin coffer, and while it can't break stuff, it does have a few distinct advantages that should give it a slight edge in the competition. Firstly, its jump is much better because it can carry extra momentum from slopes and even do some minor bunny hopping. Second, it gets the utility to interact with the Lady Goombas for moons, and lastly, it can also interact with Goomba switches. Over the course of the run, these 3 things should make it more than easy for Goomba to beat the coin coffer. However, this is not how the run started. Because the Goomba can't beat Cap or Cascade, it experiences an early deficit to the coin coffer, who actually has utility for this part of the run. In the next 6 kingdoms, from Sand all the way up to Metro, the Goomba's performance exactly ties the coin coffer. The better jumps are never enough to reach new locations of value, and we can't make it far enough into the story for any Lady Goomba or Goomba stacking moons to appear. By the time we're entering Snow, the Goomba's score is 11-8 compared to the coin coffer's.
All of Bro's stats go into his HP and special defense.
It doesn't force an uncapture when entering Shiveria, giving it a chance to catch up. My first thought was to check the entrance to Shiveria, and while the jump is too high solo, I'm definitely coming back to this one later to carve away some boxes with Cappy. Next, I went to the Poison Typhoo room. I wasn't super optimistic about this.
At least we got past the rival, I guess. Yay.
Might be possible. We'll come back to that. Even if I made the jump, both the moons in this room would require 2.
One reason to learn Psywave over Bite is because at least Psywave can do damage without taking damage.
Not to mention, the rest of the level isn't hard either. I just
but it's still practically
towards the moon. Next, I went into the Bifrost area where I was able to collect all 5 moon shards with relative ease, along with the moon itself. At this point, I had exhausted all of my options in single player mode, so I swapped to co-op and went back to the start where I could now now use Cappy to reach the entrance moon. After, it was back to the poison room where I was finally ready to start grinding out that ridiculous jump. This time, instead of trying to build up speed on my own, I'd be attempting to carry it from the push block. What the heck was that? I did it! Oh my god! There we go! Now here's the problem. Hypothetically, what if I kept gaining speed and then jumped from here to there?
I'm gonna run from a chikorita half my level, seriously? I mean, I know I'm slow, but like, bruh.
Whether or not it would be possible, but I knew for a fact that if it was, I could do it. Here, what if I do like a normal jump into a big jump? Because that, if I land here, big jump, you know. Come on! Oh, if I didn't lose as much speed as I did on that second jump, I think that was it. Oh, now I think it's possible.
I think it's possible. I think it's possible.
It's so close yet so far, man. Yes!
Bernie?
Let's go!
With flamethrower?
There it is. All that for one moon.
Dear Lord, please let me run.
Two-player Snowdram.
Yo, if we could get a Infernape with flamethrower, bro. And I have heat proof, so that's why I did so little damage too. So this thing actually might be an absolute beast. I really, really want to catch this thing so bad.
First Lady Goomba Moon. I spent some time after exploring the kingdom, and it became pretty obvious that Cappy was the only way I was going to collect any more.
Yes, please, please, please let me catch this thing, please. Frick.
This is an interesting moon
Please.
for Goomba, because normally it can't make the jump over to the necessary rock. However, if we wait long enough, Dory arrives to
absolutely clutch, bro.
No!
Wow, it's only got fire type moves.
This trick, it would take about 5 minutes for me to get another attempt.
That's kind of scary. If we run into a Pokemon with Flash Fire, we're literally fricked.
Yeah, I don't think I need to explain why this was really.
But Flamethrower on Infernape is kind of perfect.
Okay, I think we're gonna wait until we're over there. It seems.
I have like no choice but to run this thing and hope that I don't run into any Flash Fires. Ooh, there's a Blissey in this route too. But I never encountered it, so don't care. Seriously, how fast is this freaking Blissey? What the frick? I have 17 freaking speed, and I can't run away from a Blissey one level lower than me, dude.
The same issue of being stuck at the kingdom spawn. However, the main difference is there's a Lady Goomba here, letting it collect one total moon. In Ruined, we can reach the chest again, but it requires 2-player. And Bowser's, we can stack 10 Goombas, but the moon is still
Let me run.
While in Moon,
thank
the
you.
jump is good enough to reach deeper into the kingdom. This only results in us getting Rolling Rock on the moon, but that still gives it an extra point advantage over the coin coffer. By the end of the run, Goomba was able to collect 17 moon solo and 31 in 2-player, a notable improvement.
Please don't kill me.
1822 score achieved by
Thank God.
I'm honestly a bit
I've been really mad if that killed me.
Because of how absurd the Goomba's movement can get, but the problem
Frost Poison. Yes, that's a non-fire type move. I will take it all the way to Sunday. Not only is it a non-fire type move, but it's a good non-fire type move.
Literally the only kingdoms we aren't stuck at the beginning. Honestly, I'd be willing to predict
this might be the best Pokemon I've gotten today.
More advanced movement. The final scores are going to
not to like jinx it or anything, but like this, I think this is probably the best Pokemon I've gotten today. All grass types shall fear me.
When it comes to making an accurate prediction, the T-Rex is difficult because of its many uncertainties. It can probably climb some ledges, it might not die in water, and I'm pretty sure it can poison walk. The only thing I'm actually confident about
I can't believe they didn't one-shot. What the heck? It must have great special defense.
So lenient that it'll never be an issue. What do all these things amount to with a score?
Revenge? That's stab. That's stab. Do we want to learn that over Magma Storm or Flare Blitz? Over Magma Storm, I think is better.
Too big. Like, there's a part of me that thinks I'll be able to make this, but it's
nice that Revenge is stab, but the only problem is it's negative priority, which sucks. So it's only going to be useful in very certain scenarios, but it's still like coverage, so I'll take it. And not only is it coverage, but it's stab coverage. You'll love to see that.
This wasn't necessary, just something funny I wanted to note. I was pretty easily able to walk further into the kingdom.
Yo, what's going on, Mario the Gray? Welcome in. Are you streaming another stream in the upper right? Is this like having Subway Surfers underneath the short? Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much what it's like. It's just, I don't get that many viewers on my streams, so I get really bored just playing this game by myself with like nothing to watch. So I'm just watching YouTube while I stream. because, like I said, no one is really in here. So if I don't have anyone in chat to interact with, then I just get really bored. So
the last thing I tried before leaving was testing if I could hit the painting island checkpoint using 2-player. Like, Cappy's height seemed to line up perfectly when I stood on top of the skull, so I had to give it a try. Unfortunately, when I ran forward, Cappy didn't even get close and dropped straight to the ground with me. I gave it another attempt, but
is it hard to play with yourself for hours?
the idea was never going to work. And was clearly dead on arrival. I moved on.
I mean, I've done it before, multiple times actually, but
overlooking the town moon.
I find it humorous.
Get up to.
I mean, I'll also interact with you guys. I just
Oh my god.
there's a lot of time in this stream where I don't interact with anybody, so.
Please let me go somewhere, anywhere.
Ooh, super potion, nice.
What an awesome start to the kingdom. Yeah, this is gonna be a weird playthrough. I started roaming around the kingdom.
I hear what you mean, yeah, for sure.
First,
Great ball. Not really sure if I need that. Do you know the rules for KAIZO IRONMON?
To the edge of the desert for the cactus moon. As it turns out, the dinosaur can't destroy it either. At this point, I have to assume the only thing in the game with
how in the world did that not kill?
But since that isn't a capture, I doubt any future playthroughs will collect this moon. I'm still going to keep trying, but for now, it's time to enter the Toast Terrain of Ruins as a dinosaur. This sure is something, all right. All right, get this moon. All right, that's two. All right, can I make the jump?
Ooh, crap ton experience for that fight.
You're kidding. That felt like it should have hit, man. Come on! Yes! I climbed back into the ruins with hopes.
I'm watching it for a while. I don't know crap about Platinum, but
the ledge up seemed to be at the limit of what the dinosaur could
I
climb.
don't know crap about Platinum, but I don't know watching this one.
The occasional weird jitter or slight bump upward.
I mean, the rules for KAIZO IRONMON is the same in this game as they are for any other game.
Oh, there we go!
Oh, you don't mind watching this one? Oh, okay.
I
was confused what you meant there.
The only moon this could help
I've only ever beaten KAIZO IRONMON in Emerald. I've never beaten it in any other game. I got really close a couple times in Firewood Leaf Green,
moments like this where I was
but
just completely stuck for no good reason. I moved on, found out poison walking did in fact work, and tried to make my way into the Jaxie sub area, but again, too big. I tried some other things like taking notes.
the furthest I've ever gotten in this game is the double battle on Route 20,
I could only ever hit the seed once, and the notes were too far out of reach.
which is after Gardenia, and I've only gotten past Gardenia like very little amount of times, like 2 or 3 maybe, out of these almost 1,800 attempts.
The first thing I did was go back for the seed in town before doing a quick test on the ruin seed.
Steel Wing?
Ooh.
I really don't want to mess with recoil, so I think I'll forget Flare Blitz.
3 ground pound moons along with notes. Since it was obvious I wasn't going to be making it into any sub areas, I had 2 last ideas before leaving.
Pretty impressive though. Platinum has a hard XP curve. It very much so does have a hard XP curve. There's no doubt about it. This is kind of scary. Should
I can use Cappy to open the crate.
Should I super here?
The moon was proving to be an issue. You can get impressively close, but it's never enough
Should
to
I-
actually hit the moon. Even if this didn't work.
Should I just regular potion or should I use my super potion?
That was weird. My foot stuck. What was that? I moved on to Lake Kingdom where it was time.
Maybe
to
I
test if the
outspeed.
capture actually has water immunity, and it does.
It did, but I used a negative priority move, so it was guaranteed outspeed anyway. So I don't know if it outspeeds or not.
Only applied to shallow water. This wouldn't be a huge perk in Lake Kingdom. Like the only extra thing it gets the dinosaur
I'm gonna
is notes. But come seaside,
heal with the
this would be
potion.
huge. I grabbed the ground pound moon with Cappy.
Okay, that doesn't help me.
Here we have another classic 3-5 performance by the dinosaur. You've seen how that goes already, so we're skipping ahead to loss. Since we've already established poison walking will
I'm gonna risk
work,
it.
the limits of this
I don't
game
want to, but I'm gonna risk
down to
it.
the dinosaur's size. Moons like soaring over
Yeah, I lived on 3 HP. Oh my gosh, that was so scary.
Too deep in the wall to collect.
Oh, that was so scary. That was so scary. Oh my gosh.
But it actually makes sense. All the trees around
I almost
the
lost my best chance at getting past the first gym leader today.
It's just simple flat terrain. I ran towards the back of the kingdom.
To be fair, I was pretty unlucky that it hit all 3 times, but
starting moon shards.
that was really scary.
4 out of 5 shards and then swapped to 2.
If it got a crit, I would have died.
After that moon, I spent some time checking whether or not I could reach the Swamp Hill checkpoint by Klepto, but with my current height, Cappy couldn't jump up. Unfortunate, but 4 moons and lost isn't the worst score. Our next kingdom note was snow, where I finally got to answer that all-important question once again. Alright, can it do...
Brass whistle? No, I'm good.
This is already not looking promising at all. Wait! Oh my god!
I'm genuinely shocked that Revenge didn't one-shot, honestly.
But it cannot open the chest.
It's
on
stab
its own, so that's,
and super
we'll have to
effective,
get
but
back later for that.
I mean, it doesn't
After
Arceus, I guess.
Shiveria, I began
Oh.
my quest for more moons. Entrance to Shiveria was the obvious place to start, and after a bit of finessing, I managed to collect the moon. It was clear I wasn't going to be making it into any sub areas, and I figured Snowdram would be the only other moon. But then this happened. All right, do you bounce on these like normal? Oh my god!
Ooh, hyper potion, nice. We're doing good with heals right now.
Wait. No, don't fall, don't fall. I'm not taking my chances of
I'm
having
just
to do
duping
this
the
again.
BS. Oh,
Open
that's
it.
100%
All right,
a
please.
fact.
Grab it. Just grab it. Just grab it. I can't even tell what's happening. No! Yes! Oh my god!
We'll get one more move before the gym leader. I hope it's good. Hopefully it's like Brick Break or
So I went back to get the Snow
I don't know.
Moon with 2-player and left for Seaside.
Nothing.
This kingdom is the dinosaur's wild card. It's our second capture, excluding the Cheep that can go underwater. When Lakitu did this, its score was 2-8. I don't know if the dinosaur will be able to beat that, but it'll be interesting to see if its massive size helps or hurts it here. The first thing I wanted to try was nodes. This was easy for Lakitu because he can float on water, but for the dinosaur, all right, come on, wait, it's gonna be too high. Oh no. Well, I'm definitely not getting that moon in single.
Oh, that didn't
player,
one-shot?
that's for sure. The dinosaurs
I mean, I'm not that surprised, but
huge roll on what moons were possible.
Whatever.
The capture was tall enough to reach Mercy Dory, but too big for slip through the nesting spot. And I
Blizz
tried
Chicken.
to think through the wall as a backup, but we're too small.
Don't get me wrong, I love me Infernape,
Awesome. It's
but
kinda
Blizzkin
comical how
is the
worth
best
the dinosaur
firefighting
ends
starter.
up being as a solo capture in this kingdom. I tried other things like the Back Canyon Story Moon or Underwater Highway Tunnel, but every single time size gets in the way. Eventually, I gave up and started using 2-player to collect moons. Some obvious things were working.
I mean, if
like
I'm slum streaming at
reaches, but for other ground
Park
pound
Shop,
moons
gonna
like
sleep here for the night, so
ceiling,
you're on
I was
test.
still too big.
Entertainment while I get bundled up.
Canyon Story
Wait, you're
Moon is
you're
not
streaming at a truck stop?
now using the checkpoint.
Or did you, was that a typo you meant
Searching
sleeping?
Back Canyon excavate, but coming up with any further ideas was a struggle. I eventually had the
Here's one of my favorite starters I've never legit used. That's funny. You've never played through any of the Gen 4 games?
Ridiculous as this idea was,
Never played through any Sinnoh games? Not even BDSP or anything? Sleeping while watching a stream? Okay, I figured that's what you meant.
Wait, we actually got it. I actually didn't think I'd be able to do that. With this moon, it was safe to say I was done with Seaside. The 1-5.
There was my last one of the Sword Shield go. Ooh, you're not getting the legit Pokemon experience then, because Sword and Shield are just okay.
It helped, like this moon and luncheon, but generally it seemed to hurt a lot more. As a matter of fact, this moon would be the last one the dinosaur collected, leaving it with a final score of 15 moon solo and 30 in 2-player. Not the worst score by any means, but it does lose to the Goomba in both categories.
Riolu.
I think that's pretty funny.
Sword sucked bad. I mean, I thought they were alright. They just... like, by themselves, they're okay. The games are okay by themselves. But compared to other Pokemon games, they're like, they're not that...
This is the first capture that should
They're not
genuinely good.
They're not great compared to other... Or they're not good compared to other Pokemon games, but by themselves, they're alright.
Water in every kingdom. This was a very dumb assumption.
As well as hunting terrorist pirates. Oh, yep. Well,
My water
that'll do it, that's for sure.
Area, my water refreshes.
And I imagine you can't really... You don't really have much time for video games if you're on the road all the time.
Suffice to say, I underrated.
Ooh, Max Elixir.
I am expecting this run to blow my initial
Love to see it.
completely out of the water. I began in Cap Kingdom and slowly waddled my way over to the bridge. All right.
Ooh, and an elixir. Oof, we're doing good on the PP scoring stuff.
To make it.
Really good for dungeons.
Wait. Hold.
Oh no, he can't enter the door.
Into the tower. All right.
Oh no, he could. He just had to use all the water. Okay, I was like, what?
The door and inch up towards the topper boss fight. I already had to use 2-player to open the door and make my way up here, so there was no reason to not just do the entire fight as Cappy. That being said,
Arcanine. Okay, please, good move. Ice Skull Spear?
Was a bit weird. If he's spinning on the ground,
honestly, no, I'm good.
Not sure what this means for future.
I think all my current moves are better than that.
The rest of the fight with Cappy. When all is said and done,
Game Boys disappear easily, so usually only use a laptop game in my downtime. Oh, if you can laptop game, you can definitely play other Pokemon games if you don't mind not being the most honest person ever.
Well, here's the thing. In Mario Odyssey, players can revisit certain kingdoms for extra moons before beating the game. Since I'm letting every capture visit every kingdom,
unless you own the games outside, in which case
only be allowed if the
it's ethically okay.
Kingdom. This could mean defeating a boss or collecting enough moons to leave.
Which I
For now,
do.
decided my
I own
regular
every
team
single
would have
Pokemon
to
game
reach and
legally,
defeat
so
the
I
gains access to the
don't
previous
feel
one.
bad
This
about
means instead of leaving, it's time to see what moons
playing
are
these.
available in Cap for the Gushin. Since it's
Security
the first
clearance,
year,
that's
I started
fair.
by flying around the kingdom looking for moons. There's a couple that are just
But I
really
own
unique,
every
like
Pokemon game out like legit, so I think I'm good ethically.
From there, I started going into the
Okay.
suburbs.
We don't have
Collecting
any
all
berries,
the
seriously?
moon shards along with the secret moon. Next, I went for the waves of poison sub area. This one was a bit
We don't really have any
more,
items
but
so we can
given
hold.
moon shards stay collected between
All right, we're gonna pause
teams,
the stream or the video that I'm watching because I need to focus up really hard on this gym fight because I've not. This is my 7th time at the gym today, and I've not gotten past a single time. I need to win this gym fight. I don't feel bad about it anymore. Nintendo doesn't roll their games anymore. Yeah. All right, we go Steel Wing here. Okay, we get a kill. Good. This Snorunt, we go for Flamethrower. There's no point risking missing. All right, first trainer down, no damage taken. Next, Willfish. I'll resist all removes. We go Flamethrower. Torment's fine. Okay. Got past the first 2 trainers, no damage taken. Please, man, please. Okay, Mamoswine's fine. Go Flamethrower. First one down. Next is Pelipper. We want to cross poison. Do we have any? Okay, we don't have any X items. Attack this content. Okay, we need to go for cross poison here. It doesn't. Okay, we got a crit. Perfect. Next is Slowbro. We need to go for cross poison again. We got another crit. Oh my gosh, we're coming. Those crits are coming in so clutch. Okay. Kabutops. I think we Steel Wing because I don't want a negative priority. Okay. He went for. Okay, yeah, Revenge was the call there. Okay, Regirock, we want to Steel Wing. Oh, he outspeeds. Okay, that's fine. I think this is his last Pokemon. Oh my gosh, okay. Finally! Finally! We finally freaking beat the freaking gym leader. Frick. Oh my gosh.
both moons here.
I never thought I'd live to see the freaking day.
I think the problem here is through the sub area.
Oh my gosh, that took way too long. All right, good TM. Bullet Punch.
No!
That's actually kind of tempting. Can I even learn that though? Wait, I guess we'll find out.
Because I think it's too hard.
We can't. Okay, doesn't matter. Our moveset's already pretty good. Finally, we got past work. I never thought I'd live to see the freaking day.
Yeah. This isn't a bad attempt, but I think I'm slightly.
All right, we want to get out our Persian now because we got in a teacher Rock Smash.
Poor timing.
Dude, nice. Finally. All right. Let me pull up the guide.
Don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. Yes, yes. Okay. Get it.
Okay, we beat the gym leader.
Yes. All right.
Next, we want to go through Orberg Mine, and we got 2 items to get. Actually, only 1 item. One of them's a TM, so it doesn't count.
And fool around the kingdom looking for any more possible moons. Unfortunately, a lot of things you'd expect to be there don't show up until you reach post-game. As a matter of fact, the only 3 moons left are Captain Toad, Shop, and
I think I got both of the trainers in this cave. Yeah, okay. Oh, I forgot about repels. It's fine. I can get repels in the next stream. Or the next stream. The next town.
Because of that 2-player Cappy rule I mentioned earlier. If you've forgotten what that is, as a reminder, you cannot stay in a capture if Cappy is on anything. This includes stakes, spires, strapedals, or literally anything Cappy can attach to or spin on. Yes, it's redundant.
Red Shard, wow, what a great item there.
Suggesting it anyways, so here's the second reminder. With a perfect 2-player score of 8 in Cap, it was time to finally tackle Cascade. Given how strong the capture has proven itself to be already, it's not a surprise I was able to fly all around.
Have you seen much of Super Kaizo? That is insanity. I have not seen anyone play Super Kaizo. I haven't read the rules for Super Kaizo. I'm not touching Super Kaizo. Regular Kaizo is already difficult enough. I do not want to imagine a harder version of that. No, thank you. I will stick with regular Kaizo. Thank you very much.
Power moon and chomp through the rocks. The 2 moons hit an unbreakable
like 14k into it and runs it at base speed. Oh my lord. What is wrong with him? Like literally mentally, what is wrong with him?
Not to mention, this was all done in single player.
All right,
because
if
the
I remember
Gushing
correctly,
Spike
30 repels
was
is enough until we get super repels. So
that's cool too. With these 4 moons collected, the
I like super because Giga Drain is
Gushing
legal.
Spike
Oh,
score completely
that is
solved.
nice.
The only reason I'm considering
And other
this
healing
more
moves too, I'm
is because
assuming.
I don't think
What
the
game was he
Gushing
playing
Spike
Super
has
Kaizo on?
reach and defeat the Madam Brutal boss fight. There is technically one more moon in the kingdom to consider, but it's in a 2D section, which 0 captures can access. Yes, that includes Bowser the Pipe and Escape is special. So yeah, 4 is kind of an underwhelming amount of moons to be a perfect score, but that's just the way things go, so it's time to move on.
And Emerald, okay.
Given how good the Gushion's movement is,
I can watch it all, but
plucked a ton of
I
moons
watched you
just
guys who
by
have several
flying
Kaizo
around,
wins.
and being able to shrink myself by depleting water was helping too. All right, what about this? Can I fit in here?
Fair enough, fair enough.
Let's go! We
I will be honest, I would rather play Kaizo than watch Kaizo.
I could probably only 5 minutes into exploring.
Every time I watch someone play Kaizo, it just makes me want to play Kaizo.
As a matter of fact,
Every single time.
very first capture to
It's
clock
just
this moon.
there's just
While it may
something
seem
just so like
unimportant, this is a story
gravitational, I guess,
that
about it.
unlocks an
Even though it
really easy moon that just buffs
POs me
the
all the
story.
time,
As I traveled through the kingdom, I was running
I still find myself crawling back to it every now and then.
Some things didn't work, like the Jaxie sub area, but others did. Oh wait, it did work. Oh my gosh. All right,
HP up. I don't really like using HP ups. We'll skip that for now. All right, so we're gonna skip these trainers if possible. Well,
Hey, let's go.
like if I can is what I mean, because we can just come back for them.
16 moons in single player as the Gushing. As my options died down, I
Alright, she has 2 Pokemon. Flamethrower, first one.
Treasure, but my favorite has to be the 3rd seed moon.
Sunlight Strong, that's
Might
nice.
just be the only capture where
I'm
a
glad
human
Lexray has,
player can
Drought.
juggle the
Nice.
seed midair.
Alright, we want to skip
Yo,
you.
first try! After practice. This, along with the other 2 seeds, brought me up to
Alright.
20 moons. But I wasn't done because I still had to check the inverted.
We want
pyramid.
to. Oh wait, that's a
Entering the
TM.
intended entrance is
Whatever.
useless.
Man, it took me like 3 days for my first attempt to. That's because I evo to go over the Lab got a cracked Dragonite with thick fat, dude.
Fight would be 2-player only, so I took a quick detour inside the top to collect a hidden room.
Wow, that's insane.
Before starting the fight. I'm hoping by some miracle.
Is that for regular Kaizo or
Can I hit the big bomb?
for Super Kaizo?
Nope. Can I hit the little bomb?
Alright, so there's a double battle in that route that we just went through, but we want to save it until after we do the
Can I jump on Harriet?
or no, till right before we do the
Entirely
galactic
which is
hideout
fine.
thing.
I finished the final
That's what I
20 moon and
used to do,
progressed the story.
and that's what I'm
Since
gonna
this fight was only
continue
possible in
doing.
2-player, any moons that became available because of story progress will be counted as 2-player, even if they themselves don't require Cappy. Instead of starting with the new stuff, I decided to
Green
collect
special
the moons
tag, T-Bolt,
first,
sensory,
those
bubble
with
beam, nightshade. Oh my
the
gosh, that's
main
just
moon in
absolutely
the
crazy,
maze,
bro.
and both moons in the Bullet Bill maze. I contemplated going for the post-Harriet fight moons next, but I had an idea that
You
I
got
really wanted to explore.
thick
Flying to
defense.
the Sand Kingdom Painting Island. It's too far for the Gushing to reach on its own, but with Cappy, I was getting eerily close. Alright, as soon as I fall...
Sorry, Mr. Christian Burr trying to remember
Did I hit
the
it?
last move. Oh yeah, I said, did you get, you said 300 your first attempt. Was that for Kaizo or Super Kaizo?
Is it up? I did manage to get Cappy on the island, but because the
All right, so in Floroma, we want to go into this shop because we get a free berry.
Save resources, which is usually great, but right now it could be fatal.
All right.
Yes, there we go. There it is.
Next in Valley Windworks, we want to
31 moons.
go this way.
2-player moon.
We want to get
Finally,
the
I tackled the
item
newly available
here,
moons.
and then we want to fight this grunt.
Guided Bill to the cage, pretty simple. Next, I headed into the underground where I was able to fly straight forward and get Goomba.
Oh, okay, you got flash fire. That's good to know.
I traveled deeper into the cave where with simple movement I was able to collect underground treasure chest.
Write
The
that
last
down.
thing to check before leaving was the Knuckle-Tech boss fight. This is another one of those
There,
moments
just so I know
where
it has flash fire
technically can't
from
do
now on.
anything, but honestly, who cares? A score of 2134 for a single kingdom is absolutely insane. I think I made a very obvious
Kerchunk.
mistake when I placed this capture around 10.
I was like with just Bubble Beam Nightshade till I got the gym TMs at Erica Koga. Wow. It was regular Kaizo. No heavy trainer having smart AI. Fair enough. That's crazy. That's a crazy rule.
My first thought was to reach the painting island, which was pretty easy. I followed that up by flying over to
But
the
yeah, that's you got really good TMs.
Everything else.
All right, now that we beat that guy, we got 2 battles up here, back to back.
Disappointing.
Go and do
Jumping on
those
top
real
of earlier
quick.
made me optimistic about future bosses, so finding out it was just a weird exception sucked. Out of options, I used Cappy to beat Rengo and started tracking down the other two.
Don't paralyze me, thank
The
you.
first one I got was taking notes, dive, and swim. I followed that up with the only accessible sub-area. Given my movement, this section was incredibly underwhelming and led to 2 more easy moons. Next, I wanted to see if the Gushing could survive underwater like Lakitu. It makes sense given how
I love
regularly
Luxray's
it
cry so
interacts
much.
with water. But after using Cappy to reach the underwater plaza, it became apparent the Cappy
One of my favorite cries of all time.
this was
Just gives me
fairly
chills.
crazy,
Ooh.
because it was my last option besides on the lakeshore. I collected that moon and left. In Wooded, there is yet to be.
All right, now that we did that, we're expected to do Valley Windworks, but I'm gonna do the double battle first. I always do the double battle first because
I started with the red like normal and then went for the rock.
I've lost a lot of runs to Mars. Mars is ridiculously hard, and so we need every bit of experience that we can get.
I thought a water capture dying underwater was weird, but having something that can open chests on its own but not break rocks is such a weird combination. It does make sense given there's chests in Seaside, but god, the Gushing has a very unique set of rules for what it can interact with. That being said, this is only going to affect the solo score by a small amount, so I'm not
All right, there we go.
Because this meant there would be no possible.
Yeah, no, I need every like tiny baby bit of experience that I can get for Mars, because Mars has killed like at least like a dozen of my runs. At least. So I always get nervous.
As I made my way back
This
down,
part.
I also collected.
All right, let's see what berries I have available real quick.
This is a rather significant
Just the spear. All right. That's fine.
Can't do a traditional
All right, I want to skip the first trainer if I can to fight the 1717, and then I'll go to the 20. Oops, I almost closed out of OBS. That would have sucked. I would have just lost the entire stream. I was saved by my heals early game and just laser everything after Koga. I ran across like 2 mods that live, B2, stupid thick Snorlax. All right, pausing the video here so I could focus. I want to get past this guy if I can. Let me slow down the game so I can time it perfectly. Okay, wait for him to turn again. Frick off! Whatever. I don't like fighting him first if I could help it. What did he go for? I don't know. I'm gonna play it 2 times speed, just a little bit. Actually, no, I'm gonna play it regular speed here because I need to focus. Hate spinners, I know. So annoying. I didn't lose enough battle, or I didn't lose enough health. I think I could take this trainer now. Right on. I got Steel Wing. 1 shot, good. Bronzor, weaken, flamethrower. Good. Level up here, please. Dang it. Would have been really nice if I could get to level 29 before Mars. You need to. I'm here for it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. I'm really freaking nervous. I'm really freaking nervous. Mars kills so many of my runs. Come on, Mars. Don't be a heck. Uh-oh. This could be bad, actually. Okay, we lived. This is not good. Weather Ball. Could I learn Weather Ball? Go and say no. We need to heal here, no doubt. Like 1000% we need to heal. Do I hyper? I'm just gonna super. I have 2 of them. String shot's fine. We did it. We did it. We only needed to use 1 super potion. Dude, that Arceus is a B word and is going to continue to be a B word throughout this entire run. Oh my gosh. It sucks that my special defense is so low, but it's like even if it wasn't that low, if it got a crit, I would die. Like for real. All right, we need to save right now.
Rare, and honestly, it just makes it even
All right, next we got this whole entire freaking route. So let's go take on that route.
With how well everything was going, I felt invincible as this capture.
Okay, just making sure to deposited Persian. Probably gotta avoid it in the Elite Four for sure. Yeah. I need a non-negative priority fighting type move is what I need. All right, I'm gonna avoid the spinner because they have a level 21. I'd rather fight a trainer with a bunch of low-level Pokemon than 1 high-level Pokemon.
Continued to be a joke for the Gushing. All 3 moons leading up to Spewart were free and posed no real challenge to the capture.
Alright, can put the speed back up.
The end of what was possible. Given I couldn't damage Wrangler's Lake,
I wish fighting moves get shafted. Yeah, for sure. They absolutely do.
Was unfortunately correct. However, before swapping to
Makar go fast.
one last crazy idea. All right, so
Belly drum.
It's
kind of scary.
I can't get any moons in deep woods.
Thank God it has Truant.
All right, so what if? Now hear me out. Hear me out. What if we can?
I'm gonna write down that has Truant because that means I could set up on it later. But man, that's so good that it had Truant. Because I could have just lost my run right then and there because of non-Truant. That was the base walk speed that kills me. Yeah, that's true. All right, we fought him. There's a two level 18 Pokemon trainer up here. Go fight them next.
Because of the story progress, I now had access to some tanks by the rock wall. If I positioned the Gushing correctly, I could get one of them to blow it up and reveal the moon. Next, I decided to tackle
and that's the last multiple low level Pokemon trainer in this route. Charbok. Have I gotta have accuracy? Yeah, that's. I just slow down every time it's a dungeon or gym leader or gym battle because
at this point, all that was left to attempt were these
they are terrifying, especially if you lose to them often.
The Gushing could defeat this mini boss. As a backup, I also tried to see if there was some way I could.
I hope I get a good move at level 33.
That wasn't possible either. Even if I somehow did manage this glitch, before leaving the kingdom, I checked if the Gushing could damage Torque Drift, which it couldn't. I left the kingdom, but wasn't disappointed. 1224.
I like that we have Flame Body. That's really nice.
And destroys every prior performance in the kingdom. Given the weird programming of the water stream, I was somewhat hopeful that Gushing could be an exception.
Better clutch ups to slow down is completely justified.
The capture was
dude, from my experience, Platinum is like 2 times harder than Fire Red Leaf Green. Like, in my honest, humble opinion, it is really freaking hard. All right, we fought all those trainers. We got those items. Next trainer we want to fight is you.
Along the way, I collected the
It's a weirdly balanced stat spread. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like it. I mean, it's got me this far, so
I took another detour to see if
I like it.
Top of the island, but this was another.
All right, next trainer we want to fight is up here.
There was still plenty of kingdom left to explore, so I collected the.
We want to skip this jogger up ahead if we can.
To trick the game into removing the steel Cappy zone, and then continued my quest for more moons.
Because they have a level 23.
Of the mountain, I now had unrestricted access to the entire kingdom. This let me collect over the fuzzies above the swamp, all 5 moon shards, including the one in the tree. Let's go!
All right, we fight you now.
He's insane.
But I have so many roadblocks, and and it's less linear, so there's more potential to mess up routing. You know, that's fair.
I tried a few other things like using water to activate flowers or desperately trying to clip out of bounds by flying into a corner, but it was obvious that
I think, yeah, this lady in here heals us, and it's not illegal to heal here because it's not like a dungeon or anything like that. All right, fought every trainer except for this jogger right here.
Everything was either too far to reach or forced an uncapture. However, because Lost is a 10-moon kingdom, and we passed that marker using 2-player, that means I qualify for the revisit.
All right.
Lost is one of the few kingdoms.
We got Eternal Forest. Okay, so hold on, pause it because I got to read the guide here for a second. Greeted by Cheryl, team up with you until you get to exit. You'll still be healed by Cheryl after single battles if you opt to do them instead of doubles. No experience is lost by doing double battles with an NPC, but it's riskier choice. Yeah, you always do the single battles if you can help it. But it's really nice that you're allowed to use Cheryl's free heals.
Why this only appears on revisit.
They probably only allowed you to use it because you kind of have to.
By giving us 1 extra 2-player moon on the Gushing score.
Like, you don't really have much of a choice. But this is a dungeon, I'm pretty sure. So we can't go back.
It doesn't, but I think prior levels
like, to be honest, why would we need to?
Answer was irrelevant.
There's less chance for Paraslong. Oh yeah, Paraslong is like, yee. No, thank you.
Reaching every moon available at this point in the story.
All right, so we want to fight the trainer on the right first because they have 3 lower level Pokemon. I'm going to use my repels because I have them. No reason in not using my repels here.
What about the painting island? It's not there. I checked. Before leaving, I did a quick check to see if there was some way the Gushing could damage MechaWiggler.
Oh, actually, this is actually the only double battle in the entire force that we're forced to do. Forgot. I think it's the only one, I'm pretty sure anyway.
That can likely beat MechaWiggler is the tank, but because the tank fails to reach the boss fight, I'm going to consider Gushing's 4-4 run a Metro to be a.
We want to attack the Whalmer because it's the highest level.
To prove me otherwise, but until then, it's time for Snow Kingdom.
Oh no, we got poisoned. Okay, no, we're fine. It's fine. That doesn't mean anything. We get healed after the battle anyway.
Let's not even. We know it can do Snow Stream. That's not even a question. That's the easiest moon of the Gushion's life right there.
That was the highest level Pokemon too, so it's all downhill from here. Okay, yeah, we should be fine. Okay, that's a little scary. A little scary, but we're good. This is why I hate double battles, because it's so stressful. There's so many, like, things that can go wrong.
You know, a bit of an easy sub-area, if you say so.
Yeah, free heal came in clutch there for sure, because I don't have a poison heal. Alright, we want to do these two trainers now.
Like the Typhoo run, where things are becoming so formulaic and easy to the point where mentioning every moon feels like a waste of time. So here are the highlights of Snow. I got close to figuring out a way to clip through the wall and collect the Goomba Stack moon, but the Gushon was too big to
Loudred.
bounds. Other than that, I was able to collect these.
Can your move be good?
By flying around and
Sharpen?
The only thing worth mentioning is
I kind of like having a setup move, but I don't know what I would forget. I like Steel Wing for coverage. I like Cross Poison because it's 100% accurate, and I like Revenge because it's stab. And Flamethrower is an absolute must. There's no way on planet Earth I will ever get rid of Flamethrower, so it's got to be one of these three. I don't know, dude. I'm thinking I get rid of Revenge. I know it's great coverage, but that negative priority, man, is gonna eventually bite me in the dust. Or bite me in the butt. And it's got low power points anyway. I think I gotta get rid of Revenge. I think I gotta do it. Can't drop Flamethrower, no. I drop Revenge too. What are you gonna lose by dropping it? Just coverage. I just lose coverage. Well, here's another thing I gotta consider though. Revenge is the only thing that's gotten me past that Arceus, and if I run into it again, I might be screwed. Revenge is the only thing that's got me past Arceus. But if Arceus isn't the first Pokemon, then I can still set up. It sucks because it's not only is it good coverage, but it's stab. The only problem is it's negative priority, and that in a negative priority in a challenge like KAIZO IRONMON is brutal. You don't want negative priority. Another thing to consider though, Sharpen doesn't even be better than taking a hit. Yeah. I think I'm gonna do it. Just rip off the band-aid. Bye-bye, Revenge. Let's hope it doesn't eventually bite me in the butt. But then again, I feel like Revenge also would eventually bite me in the butt. So it's like, it's kind of, I don't know. Let's just see where it gets me, I guess. Alright, we're gonna fight you next.
I can get so many moons here. It's time to get all the Gushon moons that have been just out of reach this entire time. This was a really easy kingdom, and it literally only took 5 minutes for me to collect all 7 moons I was expecting solo, which even included Secret Path to Bub Lane. But remember that seed stuff I did in sand? I think I might be able to do that here.
Better play
This is about this.
to set up 1 or 2 Sharpens and sweep, yeah.
I'm awesome.
I agree.
No. Okay, we're good. That actually, yeah, that wasn't that bad.
That did a lot of freaking damage. I'm gonna mark you high in special attack. That was scary.
Alright, let's just see how hard this is first. Well, it's hard to get it to go the way.
Okay, Kyogre might be an actual menace later on. We need to set up for Kyogre from now on.
Look at me go, man. To my surprise, this was an easy trick, and let me hit 9 moons solo.
Okay, we got a burn heal.
Unfortunately, even with
Alright, we got these 2 trainers up here.
The switches and progress through the story, we're never able to get far enough to start the boss fight. That doesn't mean 2-player doesn't unlock a few extra moons. I can now collect both moons in the Narrow Valley sub-area, as well as the 2 ground pound moons. 4 extra isn't a huge buff for the co-op score, but it's to be expected given a lot of the moons here are either trapped underwater or designed to be cleared as the Gushon. We are 2 moons away from witnessing the first capture that can accomplish the goal of this video.
Alright, next is, I only think there's 1 more item. I think we got all the trainers. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna save. I'm gonna save. I've made a lot of progress. There's no reason I should risk losing my progress now.
All right, well, that's 124. You can pay out the prediction. I'm just like this sometimes. I'm sorry, but the uncaring reaction does kind of make sense.
All right, and we're gonna make save
This video
states
isn't
too.
just about finding which
Okay.
captures can collect 124
I'm gonna
moons.
write down
It's
also what
about
ROM this is, just in case.
champion of single player, a capture that can collect the most moons entirely on its own, in the King of
ROM
Capture that can
52
collect the most
and
moons with Cappy's help.
Burnape.
Well,
And I'm just writing it down in case I get past Gardenia, and that way
captures
I know which
can
ROM
collect.
to continue
This
it from
battle
for the
is
next stream.
not over.
'Cause
Next obvious
win or
move
lose,
is Spewart, but we already know the
we're
guy
gonna
who
do
lost, but
Gardenia
that
in the stream.
just creates a weird conundrum
I'm gonna
where it can't progress in the story,
I'm going
but
to
still has
take
the
on
ability to
Gardenia,
pass the boss and into town.
and I'm gonna end
So,
stream either
here's the
if
question.
I either win or
Moons are
lose.
available
I just
before beating Spewart.
want to
To start, we have the two moons I
do
already
Gardenia
collected,
today, 'cause
Assault and Lurking
Gardenia
in
is a
Chest.
butt
As I
face.
flew into town, the next moon I noticed was atop the jetting crag. After I got that, I became curious if
All right,
the first
here,
small people were sitting inside the pot.
we
In
get
this
2
case,
items.
I was smart enough to lock that
Avoid the
but I didn't lock
fisherman.
story progression, so I flew back to town and collected is this an ingredient too. I
Let's
kept
go play.
searching,
All right,
but
cool.
Everything else I found required 2-player mode, excluding one last taking notes moon.
Netball. All right. All right. So we want to take on these trainers next. We want to do you
That
first,
might be a bit hard.
because he's got a bunch of Pokemon, but they're low level.
Oh yeah, that is 100%. I only missed one there, pretty much. Yes, let's go.
Ow, I don't like how much damage that
that's
did.
so hard. All right, well, are we out of 2-player or 1-player moons?
Wah,
now?
Buffett.
The were, in fact, out.
More like Waba dead. Get it?
Them from attempting to fly
Bruh.
the Painting Island at least once.
I'm
I
sorry.
went back to beat Spewart with Cappy and was finally ready to start my 2-player journey. The first thing I went for was the Moon Shard sub-area right next to the Spewart arena. Both the moon hidden at the beginning and the 5 shards are relatively easy to collect, given I can just fly around.
I don't like how much Licky Licky did with Wing Attack, especially considering how good my defense is. That's really genuinely scary.
Fixed. The next thing I wanted to try was the lava bubble.
I should have marked Licky Licky up in attack, probably.
The moons, but the level is built in just the right way where it's super easy to fly through and get both.
Okay, I couldn't remember if Dragon resists poison or not. It does
I
not.
wanted to at least see if there would be a weird way I could get the second story moon. I tried flying into it, or
Yeah, that was a bit scary. Yeah, I don't know. I think Licky Licky just genuinely just has a lot of attack stat. I'll have to try to remember that for next time I encounter it.
Surrounded by tall mountains and atop a column in a row.
Absolutely know that it is not a setup mon. Not a mon I want to set up against. All right. Next we want to. What do we want to do next?
I could only collect the chest moon with my
We want to get.
reaching the ruined dragon being
What is there a hidden item up
in
here?
Bowser's, however,
I don't
it looked like
remember.
a capture finally had a chance to
Anyway,
collect the moon.
there's a hidden item next to the statue. That's what we want to do next. I don't think we can.
Let's see, can we get high
Yeah,
enough and
we
far
can't get
enough?
up there without using cut.
Maybe 2-player. I think 2-player can make that work.
Gotta start marking some out. I can mark it on the tracker. I just forgot to.
I was so
There's an item up there, but we can't get it till we get cut. Okay, we got a burn heal. That's completely useless for my fire type, but alright.
It popped up for a second there.
Alright, so over here we want to
What? You're right. It's
we
not
got some items and some trainers to fight. So we want to get this item up here.
Maybe it is.
Then we want to fight you.
Yeah, it's a lot more water, huh? That's not even fair, man. That's not even fair.
Ooh, Bliss is gonna be some
Alright,
thick
can we make
experience.
Oh, so close. I think I can do.
Alright, we want to go here, fight you.
Let's go. About to do an easy.
I'm really
notice.
glad all my moves have really high power points, except for flamethrower, I guess.
think
But
everything past this might be too.
oh, we gotta go get Urchamon to
All right.
fight that trainer.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how much.
I don't like to have my Hmon in my party unless I absolutely need to, because I don't want it to I don't want it to get swapped out into and just waste of experience, and especially more importantly might cost me the battle. Got some good power points, yeah, for sure, because I'm gonna need it. You definitely. I forgot to do what I literally went to go do. I forgot to do what I literally left the town in order to do, or the route, I guess. But yeah, good power points is very important for KAIZO IRONMON for sure.
Thankfully, this was pretty easy, and I was able to start backtracking through the level. The most important thing for this section was to conserve water, because even if assist mode gives me a lot, Mooncave is a big area with few opportunities to refill. Fortunately, there is one in the form of a heart by the Charge and Chuck section, so I made sure to grab that before flying over to the PepePls. This was a massive gap to cross and didn't leave
Usually
me with a lot
bulk up
of
while you try to
fun,
waste
but now if I
time
die,
swapping
I
your
think the game
Gemon
will
around
respawn
throwing
me here with
balls.
a cool tank. Oh no, the checkpoint's here.
Ooh, okay, you're thick. We're gonna mark up high in defense here.
Fly straight to where the moon is in 2-player mode. Oh, what if I just fly straight to that moon? Wait, why did I do that? Now I gotta die again. The idea worked, and I could just fly directly to the moon. Since this refreshed my water, I figured it'd be the best shot I had at reaching the chest moon.
I need to heal.
I didn't get anywhere near close enough, but hey, this is just one of those things you gotta try. Before leaving Moon Cave, I quickly grabbed on top of the cannon and 2-player.
I can't heal my poison.
Even though I still had to go back to the chapel and collect up in the rafters.
I think oh, crap. I think I gotta use.
I
think I gotta use my hyper.
After over 5 hours, I was done.
I gotta use it.
Sure,
There's no way around it.
Final boss, but we already established that
That sucks.
That didn't stop me from trying again.
But I had to do it because I would have. Okay. I think I'm actually pretty much at Gardenia. That sucks. I have to use my hyper potion. But here's the thing: if I use my super potion, I would have had to use my hyper potion anyway. I would have died. Well, I guess it's not entirely true. I didn't know what Laron had. I had going for hyper potion was the only non-risk free, or was the only risk-free way of doing it. Well, not risk-free, but
something that would affect scores.
Less likely to lose, I guess.
I think it makes the competition more interesting, but dang, it was an insane buff for the capture.
I don't know though, because you can't die from outside of poison in this game, but it's like, I don't know, man. If I lose to Gardenia, it's because I used the hyper potion, I bet. I'm really upset, but alright, we gotta pause it. We got Gardenia. I'll let up to this. Yeah, I could have done a super, yeah. I wasn't thinking straight. So mad at myself. Now I have like no heals, but whatever. Alright, it all comes down to this. So nervous, dude. Okay, Weedle is fine for the first mon. We want to conserve as many flamethrower power points as we can. So I'm gonna go for Steel Wing and Cross Poison if I think it'll one-shot. We're gonna play at normal speed here though. I gotta lock in. Gotta lock in, chat. Lock in. Slackoth. I think I could take that with a Cross Poison. Okay. Next is Ninkata. I think I could take that with the Steel Wing. Okay. Right on. I have to go for Steel Wing. Okay. Got a crit. Don't know if it mattered or not. Alright. We got one more trainer. No damage taken so far. No flamethrower power points used. Dude, I'm so nervous right now. I'm like genuinely shaking. I never, ever, ever make it past Gardenia. But if there's a Pokemon that's gonna get me past Gardenia, it's gonna be this one. Okay, Meryl. Let's hope Cross Poison one-shots. Oh, good. Okay, we did it. We're at Gardenia. No HP lost. Dude, I'm literally shaking right now. I'm so freaking nervous. I never, ever get past Gardenia. Gardenia is so difficult. I'm so nervous. I'm literally so nervous right now. Okay, I don't have any. I do have a guard spec. Stat reduction. Might use that. We'll see. Shaman. Okay. I don't want to risk setting up against the 600 BST Mon. We're gonna go for flamethrower here. Okay, one shot. Good. This is Executor. Flamethrower. One shot. Good. You love to see it. Electrode. I'm gonna set up one sharp in here. Substitute. Okay, we go for Cross Poison. Substitute faded. Earthquake. Okay, what do you think we go for? Flamethrower or cross poison? Cross poison's contact. So if it has a ability, I could go for another sharpen, but it's also just gonna go for substitute again, probably. I'm gonna go flamethrower. Okay. Flamethrower down, we level up here. Next is Swalot. Okay, we go flamethrower. Oh crap. Okay. He weakened our fire type move, so we're gonna go for another sharpen here. Use super potion, that's fine. Go Steel Wing. He missed Lovely Kiss. Please don't miss. Please don't miss. Okay, Swalot down. Okay, she's got 2 more mons. 2 more mons. Okay. Toxicroak. We go Steel Wing. Lived. Uh-oh. No, no, no. Stop. Don't miss. Don't miss. Don't miss. Don't miss. Don't miss. Don't miss. Okay. 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 Last Pokemon. Last Pokemon. Last Pokemon. Persian. We can take a Persian. We can take a Persian. Yes! Yes! Oh my gosh! I have not beaten Gardenia in like over 1,000 attempts. I'm not even freaking joking. I'm not even freaking joking. I have not gotten past Gardenia in over like 1,000 attempts. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I was so freaking nervous, dude. I was so freaking nervous. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. We did it. We didn't have to use any heals either. Not that I really had any, but. All right, we get a TM. Please be good. Thunderwave? I don't want Thunderwave, but dude, I don't even care, bro. I don't even care that the move was bad. That was a very clean Gardenia gym fight. That was very freaking solid. I am saving right freaking now. I'm saving right freaking now. All right, dude, thanks for being here with me. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream there, and then we'll pick up with this runner in the next Kaizo stream, dude. I'm so freaking excited that I beat Gardenia. I'm so freaking excited. Save state. Dude, solid way to end the stream. Going from losing to the first gym leader 7 times in one day to beating Gardenia. Like, the absolute comeback is real, dude. The absolute comeback is real. Catch you next time. Drop the sub later, bro. Dude, thank you so much for being here. I'm just so freaking excited I beat Gardenia, dude. I'm so hyped for that. Hope you guys have a great night. I will see you guys in the next stream.